2,000 years ago in the mythical age, there lived a man who wiped out the nation of humans, burned down the forest of the spirits, and killed off the gods. He was feared as the Demon King. He took tyranny to its peak, and before his gaze, even reason were obliterated. Who's this Demon King? Sit back and find out. It's been 2 millennia since the Demon King's demise, and in this present year, the founder will awaken, as it is said. A Demon King Academy, Delsgade, an elite constitution tasked with determining the Demon King when he awakens, is created. The incoming class includes members of the generation of chaos, among whom may be the Demon King reincarnated. They believe that when the founder does indeed make his return, the infernal realm will surely be enveloped by cries of joy. It's the examination day at Demon King Academy. A young lady named Misha Nekron is seen walking towards the academy's gate and being hailed and wished well by a man. She looks back and 2 men talking accidentally hit her, and her letter falls off her hand. A guy picks it up and hands it over to her, and she thanks him. The guy's parents are seen shouting at the top of their voice, hailing and wishing him well, as the other man wishes Misha. As they walk towards the academy entrance, Zepis of the Indu family laughs at them for bringing their parents to the exam. They walk past him, and Zepis gets mad for replying to him. The guy tells him his magic power is so weak that he missed it. Zepis gets mad, and he shows his power and flame of darkness, and advises that they beg for their life before he reduces them to skeleton. The guy infuses magic in his breath and kills off the flame. Zepis attempts to move closer, but the guy holds him still with magic that Zepis can't move his body. He tells Zepis to take a timeout until he learns his lesson and walks inside. It's time to begin the entrance exam for practical skills, and the practical skill test is a duel between examinees in which the loser fails. After taking the magic power assessment and the aptitude test, the 5 winners will be admitted to the Demon King Academy. During the test, they'd be permitted to use all kinds of equipment. The match will be decided when one of the examinees is incapacitated or declares that he's giving up. So the practical skills test begins with the guy and Zepis of the Indu family. And Zepis seems to be well known by the people. Well, yeah, they meet again on a clear stage. Zepis tells the guy that he will turn his pompous face into a blubbering mess and make him puke blood. The guy infuses magic in his eyes, but Zepis doesn't fall for it because he wears an anti-demonic armor that can seal any kind of magic power. Zepis tells him that incapacitated means he's allowed to kill him, so he brings out his sword and says, "Magic sword, Ziprid, a relic from the mythical age that was handed down to the Indus family, that can amplify one's magic power more than 10-fold. The guy laughs and tells him that the sword is just 1, so it would only increase by 10. Zepis attempts to attack with his sword, but the guy infuses magic in his breath and kills off the flame. The guy says they shouldn't be facing off against each other in the first place, so he decides to handicap himself. He tells Zepis that he won't move a step from his spot, won't use magic, and won't infuse any magic power into his words or breath. Also, without batting an eyelash and his limbs, he will still defeat him. But Zepis thinks he's making excuses because he can't get past his anti-demonic armor. While Zepis bluffs, his blood overheats and bursts out of every hole in his body. The guy infuses magic in his heart that Zepes overheats, and more blood bursts out till he falls on his knees. Despite all of this, Zepes still talks and tells him to make him give up. Zepes says to him that he's just a bottom feeder who can only use compulsion magic to bend things to his will. The guy finds his idea interesting and quickly kicks Zepes in the face. The guy tells him that if he can surrender without using compulsion magic, Anos wins, but if he can't, then Zepes wins. Zepes says he wants a contract. The guy seals their contract by chanting, "Zek." Zepes then tells him that he'll never give up even if he dies. The guy snaps his hand and Zepes completely bursts out into pieces. The guy doesn't lose this way because they already agreed, so he chants Ingol to resurrect Zepes. Zepes and the people watching their fights are surprised to experience that. The guy asks Zepes if he's ready to give up, but Zepes argues instead, so the guy snaps his hand again and resurrects him. The guy tells him he'll never die in the true sense as long as the root remains. He tells him about the 3 seconds rule that he can use to resurrect him risk-free if he uses Ingol within 3 seconds. 3 seconds later, Zepes alters nothing. Then the guy remembers such a surefire joke that happened 2 millennia ago. He also remembers that Zepes said he'd never give up even if he died. Then, he snaps and resurrects Zepes repeatedly until he kneels and bows, and accepts that he loses. The people are shocked and start asking questions like who is the guy and all sorts. Then, they begin the magic power assessment, where they'd touch a crystal and their energy potency by the numbers shown on a screen. People read their energy, and Misha's shows 100,246. The guy commends that, and he steps forward to read his. He touches the crystal, and it reads 0 on the screen, and the crystal breaks into pieces. Misha confesses that she's never seen that before, but Dominic eyes are her thing. The next is the aptitude test, where they will be evaluated on how they stack up against the Demon King of Tyranny and verify their knowledge of him. Both the guy and Misha get all the questions correct, and then they meet outside after the aptitude test. The guy asks Misha if she can stop by his place to celebrate, and she agrees to follow him home. Misha says she can use flight magic, but the guy tells her that he uses a faster one. She holds his hands and he chants, Gatam, a teleportation magic that was lost during the mythical age that takes them to his house entrance. They walk inside, and his mom asks about the examination, and he answers fine. His mom congratulates him and wonders how smart he can be to pass such an exam just 1 month after being born. His mom asks him what he'd like to have, then he mentions mushroom gratin. However, his mom is aware that he's mentioned that, so she already prepared it. His mom sees Misha and asks him who she is. The guy introduces her as Misha Nekron, and they met at the academy. His mom flies up and yells in the joy that his 1-month-old boy brings home a wife. The guy feels sorry for Misha, and his mom can be quick to jump to conclusions. Moments later, his dad bangs into the room and yells in joy too. While they're having a meal together, his mom asks Misha what she likes about his son, and she answers his kindness because he picked up her letter for her. His mom says that the boy was ready for Dalhade, but he decided to bring herself and his father along so they won't miss him so much. His mom asks both of them which of them made the first move, and the guy answers that he was the one. After the meal, the guy and Misha take a walk outside. The guy feels sorry about his boisterous parents, and he mentions that the lady's father was boisterous, but she tells him that he's not her father, just a guardian. The guy asks about her father, and she replies that they're around, but they're busy. She tells him that he's kind-hearted, but he laughs and tells her that she'd never be the first to say such to him. Instead, they tell him, "You're doing this world no favors by being alive. Devil, demon, fiend, etc." He confesses that he deserved every word and the blame lies within him. She tells him to crouch down a little and touches his head. He stands and says he'd tell his parents that she's his comrade, meaning friend, and she agrees. All of a sudden, a voice chants, Iris, creation magic, and a full fight stage forms around them. It's Zepes, his brother, and some guards. Zepes' brother introduces himself as Demon Lord Leor Indu, and he has come because the guy took care of his brother, Zepes. Zepes laughs and says, hybrids can't beat royalty even. If they have little power in Delsgate and he asks the guy what he thinks it is, well, he answers that they get snuffed out because if they win. He keeps boasting about his brother, and his brother grabs him by the shirt and calls him a shameless loser. Demon Lord Leor burns Zepes with lightning magic. The guy says he thinks he's here to back his little brother, but Demon Lord Leor tells him that it doesn't change the fact that the guy is going to die too. He claims that his family has inherited the nobility of the great Demon King of Tyranny and they can't stand Idla when they are insulted by a mongrel. The guy tells him a Demon King is someone who uses his power to bend everything to his will. Demon Lord Leor brags about what he said, and the guy tells him that he's talking about himself, making light of his great deeds a bad thing. Demon Lord Leor finds it disrespectful, and he claims that such an attitude calls for certain death. Demon Lord Leor and his guards bring their magic circle, and the guy infuses magic in his eyes, which makes the enemy's magic circles get out of control, going berserk. They all try to control it, but they can't, so it booms. He tells Demon Lord Leor that magic power is born from the root deep inside the body, and the root will cause one's magical power to go berserk when fearing opponents it's outclassed by. Demon Lord Leor stands up and vows that he won't allow himself to be defeated by a mongrel, so he shows his forbidden spell, the origin spell, that can only be used by royalty. He chants Juraste and throws it at him, but nothing changes. The guy tells him that origin magic can't affect the origin itself, meaning that it does not affect him. Then, he decides to give Demon Lord Leor one chance. He moves close to Zepes' body, chants Igram, and resurrects him into a zombie. The zombie moves towards his brother in pain, screaming, "It hurts. Why did you have to kill me?" Demon Lord Leor throws his lightning magic at him, but the zombie stops it with its magic. The guy tells him that the zombie acquires devastating magic power, and it burns with hatred for having been killed in exchange. Then it racks with the pain of wounds that will never be healed. The guy tells him to acknowledge his little brother, join forces with him, and take him on together. The zombie makes up power and attacks Demon Lord Leor, and he tells him to call his brother's name. Demon Lord Leor screams his brother's name, and they both get burned. The guy wonders why the bonds between brothers in this era are so flimsy. Everywhere starts to shake like it's going to collapse, and the guy saves everyone with his power. After it's all cleared, Demon Lord Leor, Zepes, and the guards find themselves alive and sitting before the guy. Then, he says he can see that his brethren have weakened significantly in the last 2,000 years. He says he'd be happy to take them on at any time when they come back after they've powered up. Demon Lord Leor asks him who he is. Then he says, "Listen up, my beloved descendant. Your founder has returned. I am the true Demon King of Tyranny. I am Aos Delvia." This begins with Demon King Aos Delvia having a talk with hero Canaan on how to make peace among demons, humans, spirits, and the gods. Demon King Aos Delvia says that between humans and demons can never end unless either the humans or the demons are rooted out for good. He also says that humans are going to make more new enemies like the gods and spirits if the demons get wiped out, and this will make humans turn on each other. Hero Canaan agrees that humans are weak, but he wants to believe in human kindness. Then Demon King Aos Delvia asks him if he believes in demon kindness, but Hero Canaan sighs. Demon King Aos Delvia tells him to trust him for once if he's a hero. He says he'd put up walls between the infernal realm, the human realm, the spirit realm, and the heavenly realm, and install a door that won't open for at least 1,000 years by dying for the sake of peace. He added that he won't be wiped out completely, but he could be reincarnated after 2,000 years from now. Hero Canaan agrees to trust him. Both Demon King Aos Delvia and Hero Canaan never thought they'd see the day when they'd thank each other. Then, they get it done as planned, and Demon King Aos Delvia thanks and tells Hero Canaan that if he ever happens to be reincarnated after 2,000 years, he will be his friend. After 2,000 years, King Aos gets reincarnated, and he shocks his parents when he talks on the first day he is born. He says his name is Aos Delvia. Aos gets his result, and it's written that he's unfit to become a demon lord, so he wonders what has gone wrong. Misha tells him that only the descendants of the founding ancestors are allowed to enroll at the Demon King Academy, and no one from the demon clan has ever been rated as unfit except for Aos, meaning that he's the first misfit. Aos finds it odd because he can't remember himself making any blunders in the aptitude test. So he asks her if she knows the name of the founding ancestors, and Misha answers yes, but they're not supposed to say it. Aos suggests they talk through the mind, so he places his hand on her head, and she says the name Aos Delvia, the Demon King of Tyranny. He asks who Aos is, and she tells him that no one in the Demon King clan doesn't know his name. From this, he could tell that the wrong name had been handed down for the last 2,000 years. He then asks Misha what people say about the Demon King of Tyranny, and Misha replies both ruthless and benevolent, always thinking only of the Demon clan. He fought without any regard for himself. Misha is buttressing the whole stuff when a lady passes by just to check the badge on Anos's dress, and then she leaves. A woman named Amelia Ludowell addresses herself as the homeroom teacher for Class 2 and decides to divide the class into teams. So anyone who wishes to lead a team to announce themselves, but with a condition, which is that the person must be able to wield the troop magic, Guise, which boosts the group's overall combat power. She says that when the leader activates Guise, each member of their team will be assigned one of 7, king, guardian, etc. She added the spellcaster becomes king, and since the king must constantly supply his subordinates with magic power, he is weaker on his own. She also says that she's going to allow the use of Guise in the team competition in a week. People who wish to become leaders start raising their hands, including the lady who interrupted Aos and Misha's discussion. And lastly, Aos raises his hand. Miss Amelia feels sorry and tells him that hybrid students aren't eligible. Then he says all he has to do is prove that hybrids are in no way inferior to demon royalty, so they can seal it with a zect. Miss Amelia tells him that if he fails, he'd have to apologize for his disrespect and drop out of the school. He comes from his space to do it, and he eventually did it. He asks if it was demon royalty who drew the flawed one up. Miss Amelia disagrees and says no flaws have ever been made for the past 2,000 years. He says that he did it before he was reincarnated. He touches the flawed one and it changes like it's being renewed. Miss Amelia seems so surprised and confused, but she agrees with him to be a group leader. The class starts to murmur and Miss Amelia claps to stop the murmuring. Miss Amelia says they should start splitting up into teams and they should run for a leader to introduce themselves. The lady who interrupted Aos and Misha's discussion comes out and introduces herself as Sasha Nekron, the Witch of Destruction, a part of the Nekron family and a direct descendant of Ivis Nekron, one of the 7 elder demon emperors. Aos seems surprised, so Misha tells him that Sasha is her big sister and their parents are the same. If that's the case, Aos asks Misha why she is wearing the white uniform and not the red uniform, and she answers that it was a family decision. Miss Amelia calls on Aos to stand up and introduce himself. He introduces himself as Aos Delvia, the Demon King of Tyranny. He tells them that the name of the Demon King they all believe in is an utter fake. Miss Amelia then tells others to join the leader they wish to serve. Misha decides to be on Anos's team because they're friends. At that moment, Sasha walks towards them and tells Aos that the only teammate he has is a defective little junk doll. She says that Misha is neither a demon nor human, plus she has no life, no soul, no will, and she's just a doll made of odds and ends, animated by magic. Well, Aos replies that if she thinks that enchanted dolls have neither life nor soul, then her grasp of magical concepts is too tenuous. He added that she needs to strain her eyes more and peer into the abyss. Sasha commends Misha for having found an intriguing comrade, but Aos appears to be disrespectful to her. Then, she shows her demonic eyes of destruction, but she feels disappointed as it does not affect Aos instead. The wall of the classroom cracks. Aos stands up and shows her that he can do what she's done, and tells her that her magic level isn't half bad. He sits and asks Sasha if she wants to join his team so that she can get closer to Misha. She replies with demonic eyes that she's never taken Misha as her sister, not even once. While Aos and Misha walk home after class, they meet Sasha on the way, and she asks for a duel in which the loser has to do whatever the winner says. Aos agrees, since he believes that he's going to win. Her demonic eyes of destruction come out when she's worked out, says Misha. Then, it means that she can't control them. A week later, Sasha meets with Aos about their duel, and Aos asks her if she wants to seal it with a zect. She agrees, but she wants Misha to seal it with her, and they do it. Miss Amelia announces the team competition exam between Team Sasha and Team Aos is now underway, and the match will be decided when the king is knocked out, or else unable to maintain guys. Misha asks Aos what their strategy is, and Aos tells her he can't be around the fact that it's just the two of them. Misha says her class is Guardian, and she suggests that barricading themselves with Iris will give them the upper hand. Aos knows that the other team will be expecting them to do it, so he thinks they should outmaneuver them. Misha uses Iris's spell to build 3 castles in their territory, but Sasha knows that 2 of the castles are traps. Plus, she knows that Misha couldn't have built a complete Demon King castle in such a short time. She decides that her team strikes first by sending a vanguard unit into Aos territory. She's about to do that when they find out that Aos is already in front of their castle. Sasha wonders if he gets there via Gautam, but then she orders her team to show him he's confusing strategy with audacity. Aos answers that he's not sure that would happen, and they become surprised that he could hear their leaks. He tells them their encryption spell is too flimsy. Sasha tells her team that Aos can eavesdrop all he wants, but he's just a king working solo at the end of the day. She boasts that Aos can't breach a castle built by such a large force. Multiple layers of anti-demonic magic. Aos could feel that the castle is just a pretty lightweight castle, and tells them they have no clue about battle if all they're guarding with is magic. He breaches their castle, lifts it, and throws it up high in the sky, and he stops the fall of the castle with just his hand. He rolls their castle with the tip of one of his fingers, then he throws the castle a long distance from himself. The castle hits the ground and tumbles. Sasha tells her team that they'd be using GeoGraze, but one of her teammates tells her that the success rate for GeoGraze is too tiny, but she insists that they use it. She believes that that's the only way to defeat Aos. Aos understands the technique behind GeoGraze, so he smiles at them. GeoGraze is a team spell that maximizes each member's unique abilities, while increasing everyone's magic power more than 10-fold. The true power of guys. Sasha's team accumulates their power, and they shoot this enormous intensity of fire at Aos, but he returns a pinch of fire compared to theirs, which cancels out their product, takes off all their shields, and hits their broken castle. Although Sasha escapes before the fire hits them. She lands, and Aos appears right before her. She asks him how possible he was able to use the GeoGraze by himself, but he replies that he uses Grega, the lowest level fire element spell. She falls to her knees, and Aos reminds her of her promise. She tries to use her demonic eyes of destruction but has no effect. She'll never forget this humiliation, and she vows that she'll get stronger someday and kill Aos. Aos laughs and tells her that if killing him was enough to make him, he would have perished 2,000 years ago. He also says that Misha seems to want her big sister on the same team as herself. Misha runs to check her up, but she insists that she's fine. Since Sasha can't go against Zekt and doesn't have a choice, she agrees to work under Aos. But then she reminds Aos, it's just a contract. Nothing more, plus she doesn't mention that she'd be selling her soul to him. Sasha turns to Misha and tells her that she recruited her for her friend's sake. Sasha believes that Misha does this because of her kindness, but Aos added that Misha does this because Sasha's eyes are beautiful because they harbor immense magic power. She's surprised to hear this top. Aos comes home with Sasha and Misha, but his mom only understands that he comes with bride number 2, and his father, who has never had 2 wives, embraces it and they yell in joy like usual. His mom prepares the mushroom gratin, including Sasha. Later that night, Sasha asks Misha if she likes Aos, and she answers that she likes him. Anos' mom makes more gratin for Sasha and Misha to take home. Anos escorts them a bit, and he asks if he could see them home with Gautam, but Sasha seems to be in the mood for a walk, so they both leave. Anos turns to leave, and he meets Sasha in front of him. She thanks him for helping her to make up with Misha. Then she asks him what he would do if his fate is already sealed, and Anos answers that he wouldn't stress about it if it's not a big deal, but he'll change it if he doesn't like it. He sure can change fate. All he'd have to do is destroy it. Then, Sasha tells him to cover closer a second, but he says pass because he doesn't like orders around. She then requested manners if he could come closer, and he did. She holds and kisses him on the lips. Then she says it is a kiss between friends, just to thank him. Anos is quite the first person she'd ever do that with. Anos thanks her for giving him something valuable. Then, he leaves using the Gautam spell. Sasha says she's glad to meet him after he has left. In addition to Sasha and Misha's conversation at Anos' house, Misha asks Sasha if she likes Anos, but she doesn't. She says Anos can look straight into her eyes, and she wonders what he's seen in her face to say her eyes are beautiful. Sasha says they're cursed demonic eyes that try to destroy anything in her sight on their own, and she's never met anyone with eyes like hers before. She reminds Misha that she used to be like Anos. She used to look straight into her eyes. She thanks Misha for she has stopped hurting others. Then, she asks if Misha could forgive her, and she replies that she's not mad at her. On the next day, Misha asks Anos what she can get for Sasha on her birthday, and Anos tells her that her sister will be happy with whatever she gets for her. Then, she thinks clothes would be okay. Sasha comes and sits next to Anos, but Anos says that it's not for her. She refuses because she feels she can sit there to make a team. Then she mentions that her former teammates want to join their team. Well, Anos says that he already turned them down. Anos says just the 3 of them should make for a sufficient force. Sasha says they'd need more than 5 people to take part in the class competition. The Academy invites one of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors to give a special lecture on great magic as the Demon King of Tyranny is expected to awaken the year. Sasha explains that the founding ancestor used his blood to create 7 subordinates 2,000 years ago, the first demon clan to be descended from the founding ancestor. Anos says he remembers that part. Sasha added the Demon King Academy was then created by the 7 Elder Demon Emperor to develop future demon lords. Anos finds it odd that the stewardship of the demons born in the mythical age is too sloppy, even with the fact that they run an academy. He expects that they should know about him if there is nothing else behind it. Miss Amelia warns Anos to mind his manners, and he agrees. Miss Amelia introduces Lord Ivis Nekron of 7 Elder Demon Emperors, and he walks in. As Lord Ivis walks past Sasha, Anos calls the demon by his name, Ivis, and says, "Long time no see." He looks back to see who dares to call him by his name. Then Miss Amelia quickly apologizes to Lord Ivis and says Anos will be expelled with immediate effect. Anos tells him it's been 2,000 years and asks Lord Ives if he can still remember him. Unfortunately, Lord Ives tells him that he had lost his memories from 2,000 years ago, but he could remember his master, the Demon King of Tyranny. Anos feels Lord Ivis should remember him. Then Lord Ivis asks him if he's related to the founding ancestor. Anos touches to make him remember, but seems to be resistant to that memory spell. Lord Ivis asks him who he is, but Anos tells him that they'll pick it up again later. The day's lecture will be on the Nekron family's secret technique, fusion magic. Lord Ivis explains that fusion magic's advantage lies in the fusion of multiple spells. Also, by fusing different types of magic power with varying wavelengths, one can increase the original level of magic power more than tenfold. He introduces the beginner level fusion magic, Jai Gum. As he explains, Sasha whispers that Anos takes notes or saves them to a memory crystal, but Anos says he has it committed to memory. Sasha boasts that she's a direct descendant and that she mastered the fusion magic long ago. Anos asks if she's close to Ivis and if she's a direct descendant. Sasha tells him that the 7 Elder Demon Emperors are like gods, and she has only spoken to Lord Ivis once. After the day's lecture, Anos meets with Lord Ivis. Lord Ivy confesses that he did go back in time 2,000 years. Anos tells him that he rewinds time locally and extracts the memories he'd lost from 2,000 years, but he sees the Demon King of Tyranny as Aos Delvia. It seems like the past itself has been tampered with. Lord Ivis asks him if he's claiming himself as his master, the Demon King of Tyranny, and he says yes. The Demon King of Tyranny's name is Anos Voldegoad, but it was rewritten as Aos Delvia by someone 2,000 years ago. Anos can't tell yet, but he's sure it must be the person that erased Lord Ivis's memories. Lord Ivis asks Anos if he's sure he wasn't who erased them. He says that he can't make light of Anos's word, as he possesses powers that defy time, but he can't dismiss the possibility that Anos is hostile to the Demon King of Tyranny. Lord Ivis says he will remain neutral for the time being, He added that something about Aos brings back memories, and Aos says it'd be helpful if he could do it. Aos Delvia is someone who's passing himself off as Aos Voldigo. Just that moment that he thinks about it, Miss Amelia calls on him to tell him that someone on his team has dropped her badge, and then he asks, who? Miss Amelia says the one who's not Sasha, but Aos finds the way. Miss Amelia oddly put her speech. Well, he collects it and tells her not to worry. Aos finds Misha where she's sitting to give her the badge, and he meets her reading the letter he helped her pick on the day of the entrance exams. Misha tells him that it's a letter from the person who raised her. Aos asks if she's not going to read it, and she says it's her good luck charm. Aos and Misha hear Sasha telling her former teammates that she can't do anything about it. One of them says that the Misfit, Aos, won't even give them the time of day. Another asks Sasha if she's okay with being stuck on the Aos team. They figure he's looking, and they quickly shut their mouth. Sasha scares them by breaking the earth a bit, and then she walks out on them to meet Aos and Misha. It's time for the dungeon exam. According to Miss Amelia, the students will take on the Demon Palace Delsgate. Each team will compete for points by collecting magical tools, weapons, armor, and the like. And then ownership of the acquired items goes to each team leader. Miss Amelia begins the match. Every team has taken their moves, but Anis's team is still behind standing. Aos says if they can get their hands on the scepter on the altar on the lowest level, they'd give them a perfect score. Sasha says none of the teachers have been to the lowest level, and the thing about there being a scepter is folklore. She also says the scepter is said to be the Demon King's staff, created by the founding ancestors. Then Amos heads down there to find out, and Sasha asks him how they're going to do that. Well, he stops and answers, this is his castle. As they walk down the castle, Sasha says they said there'd be monsters at large in this exam, but they've been dealt with by the students who went in first. Aos faces Misha and tells her that he'd get her items in the treasure room on the lowest level, and if any remains, they're hers. Aos asks when her birthday is, and she says the same day as Sasha's. Both Misha and Sasha are twins, and they'd turn 15. Misha's shy, and she says she doesn't want anything, but Aos calms her. Sasha, who has moved far ahead, tells them to walk fast. They get to a secret passageway which he breaks through with no stress, whereas Sasha is still trying to find a door to get through with her demonic eyes. They finally get to an open place that is designed to take in both sunlight and moonlight from outside. They find a door to the altar, and this door's got anti-magic protection that the Geograze level spell can't destroy. Aos uses brute strength to open the door, and they finally meet with the scepter. Aos and Misha enter the treasure room to check for items for their birthday, while they leave Sasha to the scepter. Misha likes the Phoenix robe, an item that grants its wearer the benefit of immoral flames. For Sasha, she wants the lily pad ice ring, a ring that gives off the chill that is said to fill the seven seas with ice, for herself. They get back to meet Sasha to give her her birthday present. She's so thrilled to receive a present, and Aos excuses them so she can try out the Phoenix robe on herself. Sasha opens the door for Aos to come back in there, and he finds Misha dead on the floor with a knife on her chest. He asks Sasha what she has done. Sasha dupes and betrays them, all because of a performance to ensure that she takes first place in the dungeon exam, and she says all her attempts are just to gain access to them. Aos tells her method of betrayal is too tame, and he's not buying it. Aos wants to claim ownership rights as team leader, but Sasha revokes their Zect with the scepter. Sasha says she hates Misha acting all nice, trusting no matter how many times she's been duped. Aos tells her she's not getting away with this. She's done. Then she creates a conditioning magic on Misha that the knife will pierce Misha even deeper if he lays so much as a finger on Sasha. Sasha thinks it will take Aos at least 10 seconds to destroy the magical barrier and heal Misha's wound, so she'd have time to get away. She's elevating, and Aos grabs her hand and at the same time breaks the magical barrier and also heals Misha. She's surprised, but Aos tells her that he heals Misha the moment he sees her lying on the floor, and Sasha seeing after them is an illusion he made. Sasha's demon eyes of destruction activate when her emotions run high, but Aos noticed that she wasn't that joyous when Misha mentioned her birthday, plus it only lit up when she received the lobe, so it can easily be told that she made up her mind to stab Misha that moment. Aos then tells her to spit out how she feels. She uses her demonic eyes on Aos, but no effect as usual. Aos makes her body stand still in the air. Misha begs to let Sasha go, but Aos just wants her to tell them everything. Misha insists he let her go, and then Aos drops her. Misha attempts to help, but she stops her. She picks the scepter and flees. Aos tells Misha to tell him about herself. As Sasha flees, she says she's got 7 hours and 16 hours left to make it. Misha says she's going to disappear at midnight on her 15th birthday. Aos asks her if it has anything to do with Sasha calling her a magic doll, but she answers that magic doll is not the right term because Nekron never existed in this world in the first place, which simply means that Misha was originally Sasha. Aos could tell because Sasha unilaterally destroyed her Zect with Misha, and as a matter of fact, it would have been impossible to do normally. It's a different story if the two parties under contract are the same. Aos tells Misha that a spell was used to separate one person into two 2,000 years ago. He asks if it was Ivis Nekron behind that, and Misha nods and says she received a share of Sasha's soul when she was a fetus, an existence that should not be who she is. Aos asks her if Ivis cast fusion magic on both Sasha and Misha at the same time, although the spell for fusing two sources doesn't last for very long. So having been separated by magic, the same goes for both Sasha and Misha. Eventually they'd go back to being one. Aos says that Ivis must have taken advantage of the two spells' unique features to create a more powerful demon race. Division, fusion, resurrection magic, Dino Jixis, says Misha. Misha says she wants to live a normal life, but her fate is set in stone, so she's going to disappear while Sasha will remain. She wanted some memories, but no one in the demon race would speak to her since she doesn't exist to them. Only Aos speaks to her and becomes her friend, so she considers it a miracle that happened in her lifetime. She feels sorry, but Aos hugs and stops her from apologizing because she has no reason to feel sorry. Aos confesses that there are two things he's never known: regret and impossibility. Aos promises to make Misha's wish come true, and she says she wants to make up with Sasha. Aos requests that Misha promise him to live like she believes there'll be a tomorrow until her final moment, and she promises. Aos suggests they stop Sasha first. Sasha is still within the building, so they manage to find her. Aos dissolves to her what Misha wants, but Sasha calls her a moron and wonders what she wants after all she did to her. Misha says she wants the truth, so she asks Sasha if she truly hates her. Sasha suggests they duel her again, in that she will create a magic circle, and if he can control its magic, then she will answer Misha's question, but if he fails, he will follow her order. Sasha ensures to get it done before Misha disappears, and Aos accepts her challenge. Aos tells her he'd keep his eyes closed until she's done. To be out of consideration for her reckless courage, she creates the magic circles, Zexis and Delt, the magic of her invention. Aos says that Zexis is a spell that sinks the sources, and Sasha immediately interrupts him that Misha only needs to control Zexis. Aos tells her that she doesn't intend to win from the get-go. Well, she replies that it's not like she can control magic circles this huge. Meanwhile, Aos controls it, and it means he wins the duel. Then, Sasha explains that Misha has always been there for her, but because Misha never existed, she was always alone. She has been doing research all the time, hoping there would be a magic to change that. She decides to give Misha the rest of her life. She tries it with Delt to transform Misha into the original, but she mentions that Misha has to reject him to activate it. Well, it doesn't work, and she falls to her knees, cries, and begs Misha to reject her so that she can save her. Misha tells her not to feel bad for her because she never existed in the first place. Sasha doesn't want Misha to disappear on her. She cries out. Misha calms her and promises to always be by her side. Misha faces Aos and tells him the second miracle has happened in her lifetime. Aos says the miracle has not happened yet. Then he reminds them of a question being asked during the aptitude test. Let's say you have a daughter with power but little in the way of Demon King aptitude, and a son with little power but immense Demon King aptitude. If both were on the brink of death, which one should be saved? And tells them his answer to it is that he'd save both of them. All he has to do is change the past. He says originally, both of them were two different demons, but their sources are about to become one. He says he's going to send their sources back in time 15 years using Rivide. If they fuse there, then they'll have been born as twins with their respective sources. Then, they'll be going back in time themselves. To help them, he gives Sasha a share of his magic power via guise, and all she has to do is fix her gaze on the origin with her demonic eyes. After that, there's one more key factor, which is that they have to believe in him, the Demon King's founding ancestor, and not some bogus pretender. They both say that they believe in him. All of a sudden, Lord Ivis lands on the scene and drives a huge sword into Anos' heart. He mentions to Anos that those sisters are to become the vessels for the founding ancestors through Dino Jixis. He also says that his master will then be awakened. Anos looks up and asks Ivis the other master he is expecting when he is already awake. Anos attacks him, tells him he knows Lord Ivis will be coming, and calls him a fool to think that crushing his heart would be enough to kill him. He draws out the sword and throws it against Lord Ivis's face. Then they get to perform the Rivide, and a god, Yugo Laya Raviaz, the guardian god of time, comes barging over from the heavenly realm that controls time. The guardian god of time tells Anos that he shall be punished for disrupting the flow of time and he rewinds Lord Ivis. He grants him the power of the god of time. He's ordered to eliminate Aos. Anos chants Geograze, but Lord Ivis stops time and dodges the fire attack. He claims that he's invincible now, and he tells that Anos' weakness is blatantly obvious. He throws a sword at them, but Anos blocks it with a magic barrier, and then asks Lord Ivis if he has a reason for killing him, even if it means killing the vessel he struggled to create. Lord Ivis isn't interested in Anos' talks. He prefers they get to fight. He begins to hit and penetrate the magic barrier, and eventually has his way again in Anos' heart. He says Anos be swallowed up by eternal time and vanish. Then he laughs uncontrollably at foolish founding ancestors who cannot change the past. He keeps bluffing when Anos touches his shoulder and tells him he quite didn't forget him at all from all he said. Lord Ivis is shocked, but, well, killing Anos isn't enough to make him die. Lord Ivis quickly gets himself up in the air and says, "Stop, needle. Stop, clock, to stop time," but it only affects Sasha and Misha. He tells Anos that no one would ever believe him, and then he keeps striking his swords against Anos, but it has no effect. Anos says that him being him is what it means to be the Demon King. He flings Lord Ivis away. He tells the sisters to walk behind him, and that their wishes shall come true and obliterate every injustice that stands in their way. Starting immediately, they swear that they believe and understand him, and it all starts to happen. Lord Ivis is in a mess as Anos is going to show him what it means to take on the Demon King in his demon castle. Anos wields a demonic sword. Everyone who's ever seen it has been wiped out, so Lord Ivis is going to face the same fate. The magic sword of destruction, Venuznor, the demonic sword of the founding ancestor that annihilates everything, says Anos. Anos slashes him with the demonic sword and his body is not healing. Anos tells him to carve it into his skull, along with his fear, to ensure that he'll never forget it. He splashes him repeatedly till he blows off. Anos calls him the Demon King, Aos Delvia. The guardian god of time curses him and tells him that Providence cannot contain me, and then he fades away completely. Anos snaps his fingers to resurrect his subordinate with whom he shared his blood, then Lord Ivis. Anos tells him that the magic sword of destruction, Venuznor, has annihilated the sources of the demon and the guardian god, but it looks like there's still one more. Lord Ivis falls to his knees and asks for forgiveness from his venerable demon king, Aos Delvia. Anos then asks him what happened, but he can't because the majority of his memory is still gone. He says that it's most likely that he was murdered, and his source was fused and taken over. Anos returns his true memory that he knows of. They admit that it was someone working for Aos Delvia who took over Lord Ivis's body. Anos says he's going to make the enemies believe that Lord Ivis died in his castle, while Lord Ivis investigates them, and he should start with the other 7 elder demon emperors, and he agrees. The 2 sisters appear back, and it's all over. The scepter vanishes, and Anos says they need to get there before 9 to get a perfect score. Sasha asks why he cares about scores with all that he's capable of, and he tells them that he's changed the past several times, but he's never gotten a perfect score on a test. However, they find their way out, and Misha almost falls from being tired when her letter drops on the floor, but Sasha helps her up. Anos gladly picks up the letter because it's her good luck charm. Misha cries and says the people that raised her are so kind, but she was scared to read the letter because she thought yesterday was her last day. Sasha holds her from behind. They both want each other to live. Sasha apologizes to Misha for telling her she hated her. Anos turns and says, "Peace isn't a bad thing, is it? He loves the good era and wishes that it's the world he'd created." Anos puts the lily pad ice ring on Misha's finger and wishes her a happy birthday. Sasha also wishes for her too. Then, Lord Anos wishes Sasha too, and she thanks him. Lord Anos laughs and asks her where all the momentum she had when she kissed him is. Misha is surprised to hear this, but she claims that it was just a kiss between friends, nothing else. He invites them to his parents' house to have a meal like the usual. It's a new day in class. Sasha and Misha are about their performance in the dungeon test, so they're expecting a perfect score when the dungeon test result finally comes out. Then, Miss Amelia enters the class to announce that a transfer student will be joining them tomorrow. The transfer student is a member of the Generation of Chaos, and a prodigy known as the Master of the Magic Sword. He's royalty. Miss Amelia warns those in white uniform not to forget their standing when they interact with him. Then she mentions that the scepter team Anos brought back during the dungeon exam the other day seems to have been stolen by an unknown party before they could appraise it. She says Team Anos will be awarded a score of 70 as a temporary measure until the culprit is found. Sasha disagrees with Miss Amelia that it's the Academy's fault that it got stolen, so the temporary score should be 100. One of the students says it could be Team Anos that stole it themselves so no one would find out it's fake since he's a misfit. Another student, Misa Ilorwagu, asks Miss Amelia if the same measures would have been taken with royalty. She says it's like discriminating against them because they're hybrids. Miss Amelia tells her that Unitarian campaigns are prohibited on campus, so she should take her seat immediately, or else she gets punished. Aos says that all they have to do is smoke out the culprit. Then he moves close to a suspected student, drags out the scepter, and hands it over to Miss Amelia. He then whispers to Miss Amelia that she should do a better job when making a guy like that pilfer something. Miss Amelia announces that they'll be undergoing great magic sword training by Sir Gaios and Sir Idol of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors tomorrow. Misa finds Aos and his crew to thank him for standing up for her. Aos remembers Miss Amelia saying something about Unitarians, and Misa explains the purpose of the Unitarians, which is to unify the demon race as it ought to be regardless of whether one is royalty or hybrid. Then she asks if Aos would like to come see them, and she tells him that the Unitarians believe that he's the demon king of tyranny. She added that they have a long way to go to reach their goals, but they have many comrades in arms. Sir Melheis Boran of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors is one of them, says Misa. She says both Sasha and Misha could join the Unitarians too. Misa shows all around their majors, including the Union Tower, the headquarters for their Anos Fan Union. They decide to go into the headquarters for their Anos Fan Union, and all the members are surprised and happy to see Sir Anos. Sasha finds a book where she sees Sir Anos' naked art and screams. Misa says they could call these items evidence for when the fan union falls under suspicion, but Anos tells her that the fact that they can't carry on openly is evidence of their lack of power. She shows a gift from her father that Sir Anos may have already caught on to before. Her father is a demon while her mother is a spirit, so Misa is a half-spirit, half-demon. Her mother passed away soon after Misa was born, and she's never met her father because of her father's royalty. A royal has to leave behind pureblood descendants. If any other strain is introduced, even those relatives are excluded from royalty, meaning he can't let it be known that he has a hybrid daughter, but the only thing he sent Misa was her 10th birthday, the magic sword. Her father is with the other half of the magic sword, so she believes that a day will come when royalty and hybrids can all join hands. All the members of the Unitarians want to join Team Anos' team. Sir Anos requests he see them prove the depth of their resolve. All the students are put to the test to pull out swords from the ground, as the magic sword tournament that determines Dilhade's top swordsman is coming up. Anyone who manages to pull out the swords will be trained in person by Gaios Anzem or Idol Anzeo. Anos confesses that it's only one sword that he can't pull out. During the mythical age, there was a holy sword wielded by a hero, a demonic instrument forged by a renowned human swordsmith, to annihilate Anos, inhabited by a sword spirit and blessed by all of the gods. A sword pulls out of the ground and heads towards Anos, but he handles it and says, even if he couldn't pull that one out, he can pull this out. Gaios Anzem congratulates Anos and decides to take him on. Idol Anzo asks if anyone has pulled out any. Immediately, the transfer student pulls out a sword, which most of the students are talking about. Idol Anzo recognizes him and tells him to show them how skilled he is instead of introducing himself, but he doesn't want to. Idol Anzio attempts to beat cowardice out of the transfer students, thinking he's afraid to fight. The transfer student dodges his attempt and hits him in the back. The transfer student says he means he has no business winning. Anos smashes Gaios Anzem and responds to the transfer student that he wouldn't say that because it's not all that uncommon for one of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors to lose. Anos tells the transfer student those are fine sword skills, but he is holding back, and he answers that it's not as much as Anos was. In the class, the transfer student, despite his abilities, refuses to become a team leader as said by Miss Amelia, so he decides to join Team Anos. He introduces him to Glanzudli and asks Anos if he can join his team. It suits him better to have a competent leader ordering him around, says Glanzudli. Miss Amelia tells him not to forget Anos' symbol. Glanzudli wonders what those aptitude tests are for if a demon like Anos ends up as a misfit. Then Miss Amelia cries out and says what Glanzudli just said amounts to criticism of the royalty. Then he apologizes and tells her to pretend like she never heard it. Anos finds it interesting. Glanzudli puts forward a hand and says he looks forward to working with Anos. Anos didn't shake him but said, pass. Anos tells him to join any other team if he wants to have an easy time of it, but if he insists on becoming his subordinate, then he should show that he has the proper amount to resolve. Then, he asks if he should kneel and kiss his shoes. Glanzudli is a gung-ho if he's so ready to take a kick to the face, says Anos. Anos asks Misha when the next team competition exam is, and she says, tomorrow. Anos tells Misa and her mates to join Lei's team and to work together to challenge him. He says he'll allow them to become his subordinates if they can acquit themselves accordingly. Lei agrees and confesses that he wants to go up against Anos too. What a coincidence. The next day, the team competition exam between Team Anos and Team Lei begins. Lei turns to his members and tells them to all help out, although he may be a flaky leader. Lei confesses that Lei is not like most people. addressing them the way he does when they're in white uniforms. Lei claims that he's not a fan of any of that. He added that royalty is just so complicated, and he can't wrap his head around it, and besides, it makes him feel uncomfortable. He says that he keeps wondering if the founding ancestors say that royalty is so great. He also can't help feeling that his demon king of tyranny everyone talks about is someone else entirely. In Anos' team, Anos will take on Lei, Sasha will handle the other members, and Misha will build an ice castle. Misha builds them a castle, and Sasha asks her when she has been able to build a complete castle this fast. She can't tell if it's the power of the lily pad ice ring, and Anos tells her it's part of it. Anos appears to Lei, who has been waiting for his arrival, although he apologizes to him. Anos sees a blunt sword with Lei, and Lei says he lent Misa his magic sword. He added if they're linked by guys, he can make her the sword owner. Anos guess not. Anos sees an enormous object being manipulated by Gwyneth. Seems like Lei lends his members his magic power. Lei says he's not good with spells, and he's got all this extra magic power since he rarely has any use for them. Anos makes it clear to him that everything Lei has or has done still doesn't put them on equal footing. Anos picks up a piece of wood and says he will take Lei on with it. Anos tells Sasha to work with Misha and use the geograze. She says just the two of them can't produce enough magic power, and Anos tells her to trust him. Lei tells him to stop chatting, but Anos tells him to drill the sword into him if he wants to shut him up. Misha calls Sasha and tells her to discharge a 3-dimensional magic circle, activate siege spell, link magical lines, commence delivery of magic power, annihilation mortal, hellfire mortar, release all magic power gates, excitation of magic circle, complete, hellfire destruction baragi, requesting transfer of activation spell. Sasha accepts and chants geograze to release the fire. The fire hits the enormous object and it falls on the ground. They couldn't believe that their power was this potent, and then they remembered Anos told them to ask their sources, which amplified their power. Misa suddenly appears at Sasha's back and thinks she got her, but Sasha is aware to fight back. Misa slashes Sasha in the hand and Sasha stands to face her really with her phoenix robe. The enormous object stands back on its feet, and then Misha appears on the scene to help her sister. Sasha never thought she'd see the day when she and her sister would join hands together to fight their common enemy. They plan to show Misa and other members the secret techniques of the Nekrons. Misa and her members control the enormous object and attempt to hit Misha and Sasha. Misha and Sasha chant Fire Magic Grezde, Ice Magic Shade, Fusion Magic Jai Glade, and they hit Misa and her crew. They are happy that they're pretty much in sync for the first time. While Anos and Lei fight, the whole mountain begins to get blown away. The ladies in both teams are scared, and even the river dries up. Anos says they shouldn't bother themselves because everything will go back to normal overnight. At the end of the fight, Anos gets him, but he's able to slash Anos' weapon in two, so Anos considers it a loss for him. Lei asks if he could say something strange, and Anos tells him to go ahead. Lei says that the whole time they were crossing swords, he had this feeling that this wasn't the first time he'd meet Anos. Anos tells him they might have met 2,000 years ago. Besides, he knows a man who looks a lot like Lei. He asks Lei if he'd believe it if he told him that he was the demon king of tyranny. Lei isn't sure, but it wouldn't surprise him. He then asks Anos if it means that he won't be able to join his team since he lost to him. Anos puts forward his hand and tells him it's Anos, no need for honorifics. Lei shakes him and stands up, but he says he will beat Anos next time. Anos tells him that he's not going to snap his sword next time. Anos got new subordinates to his team, Lei and Misa, so he invites them to his parents' house as usual to have mushroom grates, which his mom prepares. Anos' mom is all over his son for winning yet another game. Anos accepts Misa as one of his subordinates because of her potential. The spell she used in the battle was Lineon's signature move, the Great Spirit of Water. Misa is linked to her in some way, but it will be intriguing to see if Misa can unleash her true worth. Misa gratefully thanks Anos. Anos' father praises Anos for doing great and making new friends at school, and he says Anos will make a fine demon lord someday. Anos' mother tells them that she needs to do some studying, so she visits the castle of the Midhaz demon lord, Sir Elio Ludowell, who happens to be Miss Amelia's father. Anos' mother tells Anos that she's going to cheer him on 100%, so that his dream will come true. And then his father cheers that he will be giving more than 100%. Lei eats the meal and he likes it. Lei and Misa step out to get some air while others are inside talking, listening to fascinating stories about before and after Anos was born. Anos' father says things got a little dicey before Anos was born. Anos almost died inside his mother's womb. Her mother prayed with all her might when that happened. Her mother promised to deliver herself to raise him so long as he could be born, no matter what kind of child he was. Eventually, all her prayers were answered. His father also says Aos may be a little bit different from other kids, but none of that matters to them because their Aos is alive and well. Misa thanks Lei for what he did for her earlier that day, and she's able to join Sir Anos's team. Lei says he should have avoided Aos and attacked the two Nekrons because if he'd defeated at least one of them, maybe the girls in the fan union could have joined the team too. Lei apologizes for putting his own emotions before their team's victory. Misa is surprised by the way Lei talks to her. A hybrid, not just during the test but even now. Lei doesn't seem to care about royalty or hybrids, and all he wants to focus on is his sword. Misa suggests that people like Lei might be optimal Unitarians, since their own goal is not to discriminate. Lei says she shouldn't talk him up like that. He asks if Misa ever feels run down, or anything, being a half-spirit, half-demon, and she replies yes, there are days she doesn't feel well, but she's fine. She asks her why he asked, and he says he heard that half-spirit, half-demons don't live long. Also, there are no half-spirit, half-demons who remain alive and kicking after using spirit magic. Then he admits that Misa must be something special. Well, Misa is not so sure of herself. They head back inside to meet others. On the next day in class, Miss Amelia reminds the class about the upcoming Magic Sword Tournament and announces the two students who have been selected from their class, Le Glanzudli and Aos Delvia. She tells them to equip themselves with a magic sword for the tournament. Le meets with Aos to tell him that their rematch seems to be sooner than thought, but Aos tells him that the last thing the royalty wants is for a hybrid like him to win the Magic Sword Tournament. He wonders why they'd pick him. There seems to be some kind of ulterior motive behind it. Misa comes to the scene to tell Sir Aos that Sir Melhace Boran of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors is here. Sir Melhace Boran sees Aos, tears run down his face, and he immediately falls to his knees and bows to Aos. He says he has waited so long for Aos to be resurrected. He calls him his master. Aos asks him if he remembers him. Sir Melhace is ashamed to tell his master that someone caught him off guard and erased his memories. That seems to be the same thing being done to Ivis. Sir Melhace tells Aos his source never forgot about him. If that much he's certain, now that he's seeing him in the flesh. Aos asks him how much he knows. He explains that it happened 2,000 years ago, right after Aos sacrificed himself to build the wall. The next thing he knew, he was in the Forest of Great Spirit Aharthurn, robbed of his memories. Presumably, he'd gone there to flee his unknown attackers. He climbed over the wall separating Dilhade and Aharthurn, but it took him 100 years to restore enough magic power to go back over the wall to Dilhad. And by the time he returned here, the name of the Demon King of Tyranny had changed. The new name is Aos Delvia. Aos asks Sir Melhace if he has any idea what Aos Delvia is plotting, but he says nothing in particular that he knows. Aos says the person who chose him to compete in the Magic Sword Tournament is in Delsgade, so he asks Sir Melhace if he knows why would do that. Sir Melhace guesses that the royal supremacists are behind that one. Misa says the royalist. Sir Melhace tells Sir Aos that he is the Unitarian's light of hope, and the enemies must be intent on defeating him to crush that hope. Sir Melhace then speaks with all due respect. He begs Aos to consider dropping out of the Magic Sword Tournament. If he refuses to take their bait, Aos Delvia might give himself away. Sir Aos says he'd think about it. Aos gets home and Misha has prepared mushroom grates. Misha confesses his mom showed her how. Anos's mom says Misha mentioned that she wanted to cook a delicious meal for him, so she invited her to drop by when she had time. While eating, his mother says she hears that Anos is taking part in the Magic Sword Tournament. She also says Miss Amelia came visiting too. Anos asks her if that's only what she told her. His mother says yes. She also said the whole academy would throw its support behind him. Anos can tell now that Miss Amelia wants him to take part in the tournament. His mother asks if they should make him a big banner, but Anos says he doesn't know if he's competing or not. In her mother's opinion, if her son performs well in the tournament, it will give him a better chance of becoming the Demon Lord. Misha added that he needs a good track record to become the Demon Lord. Anos agrees, but he says he'd need a good magic sword. His mother tells him not to worry about the sword. His dad heard about the tournament, and he's probably up to something, but his mother doesn't want to say it, so she closes up the conversation and tells them to eat before it gets cold. Misha feeds Anos the mushroom gratin she cooked. Anos tastes it and commends her. Anos's mother tells them to bring Sasha when next they're coming, but Misha answers that Sasha's been busy with the Magic Sword Tournament. Anos's mother suggests that they have an after-party with everyone when the tournament's over. Anos asks Misha if she'd like him to thank her for the dinner, but Misha says she's the one who should be thanking him. He asks her if there's something she desires. She picks an outing, an excursion. Anos says they'll do it tomorrow. Anos says there's somewhere he'd like to go as well. They manage to find their way to where Misha would love to visit, Magic Model Shop, homeland of the Dragon of Creation. They enter the shop, and a woman sees Misha and asks her if she'd be making something today. The woman tells her that she's found a buyer for the one Misha made the other day. Anos sees one and asks if it is a magic model. Misha says the smaller and more precise one can make it, the better. The woman tells them to make themselves at home in her workshop. Misha and Anos enter the magic model workshop. Misha performs her magic there, and Anos asks her if this is what she likes to do. She answers yes, that it's a souvenir for Sasha. She then asks Anos if he wants to try it. Anos tells her that if he does it, it will produce a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. Misha is so ready to see it. Anos did a hold down stuff, and the woman comes back from where she went to see the beautiful work they've made. She's so happy to see it. The woman faces Anos and tells him to allow her to take it off his hands, and she's ready as much as they want. They can even have the whole shop. Anos apologizes that he has another thing he wants to use it for. The woman says she'd be waiting for them. Misha likes it, and to make it even better, Anos changes it into a ring with the whole town inside it, so that Mish can get to look at it whenever she wants to. She thanks him. She becomes moody, and Anos asks her what the problem is. Misha tells him that Anos is always helping her out. He became his friend, and he gives her a lot of memories. She wants to pay back, but Anos doesn't need her since he can do everything. Anos disagrees and tells her that she has good eyes and is also adept at creation magic. He says she might surpass him one day strictly in those two areas. He confesses that the only thing he has that is superior to anyone in this world is the power to destroy something, but Misha's creation magic is the opposite of his. He tells her that if she wants to help him, she should get closer to the abyss of her magic. Then she promises to get stronger. They see a cat cafe, Silvervine restaurant, in front of them. Anos turns Ivis into a cat to have him look into Melhace. Cat says Unitarians are not led by Melhace, but rather by someone pulling the strings behind the scenes. But he hasn't been able to uncover that person yet, and it seems like none of the Unitarians even know his identity. The cat also discovered that there was one more person here in Midhaze of an unknown identity. This person is affiliated with the Log North Magic Clinic. The clinic is built by Demon Lord Elio of Midhaze, but he's just a ceremonial figurehead. There seems to be someone else behind the scenes, and no amount of digging can unmask him. The cat says he doesn't have enough information to link those two yet. Anos tells the animal to keep looking into Melhaze as well as the Magic Sword Tournament. Anos and Misha find Log North Magic Clinic, the top clinic in Dilhade. Anos says there's nothing particularly suspicious about the clinic. They meet Lay in the building, and he asks them what they're doing here. Well, they say that they're just passing by. Lay tells them that he's here to visit his mother. Anos tells him if there's nothing the doctors can do for her, he can take care of it, regardless of how intense or critical it may be. Lay thanks him and sets to leave, when Anos tells him that he might not take part in the Magic Sword Tournament. Lay tells him that they'll settle the score another time if they don't get to fight in the Magic Sword Tournament, and then he leaves. Misha says Lay seems a little different than usual. Anos says he'll have Ivis look into him too. Finally, the Magic Sword Tournament commences today, and there are a lot of people hurrying here and there. The cat arrives to give Anos an update as usual. The cat says that Melhace has nothing to do with today's Magic Sword Tournament, but Gaios and Idor of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors seem to be involved behind the scenes. The cat added that they intend to have Anos fall into some kind of trap they've set up. Anos asks about Lay, and the cat says it has checked the Log North Magic Clinic records. Lay's mother is critically ill and close to death. She suffers from spirit disease. Anos knew there was nothing like spirit disease in the past 2,000 years ago. Ivis hasn't heard of it either, but it seems to be an extremely rare disease. Ivis asks Sir Anos if he's planning to withdraw from the Magic Sword Tournament, and Anos says it's not a bad way to find out how Aos Delvia would react. The first round of the Magic Sword Tournament will begin with Krut Ludowell of the Log North Magic Sword Association, the defending champion and most powerful swordsman in Dilhade, and Anos Voldegoad of the Demon King Academy Delshad. Anos is nowhere to be found, but his opponent is ready on stage waiting for him. The crowd starts to say a lot of rumors here and there. Amos is among the crowd, but can't take in everything she's hearing, so she talks at the top of her voice. She tells them that her son can become the Demon Lord, and she also says that her son is powerful, good-looking, and an amazing boy. She tells them not to laugh at her child's dream, so that Anos can hear her voice. Then, his dad comes to the scene to give him a magic sword that he forged himself from adamantine steel. He sees that his dad is hurt, and his dad tells him that the adamantine steel was on top of a cliff. It's just a scratch. His dad tells him that if he can win, it will mean that even hybrids can become the Demon Lord. Anos couldn't believe he was erring on the side of caution over a crowd who refused to show himself. He vows that he will find his way through any trap they've set for him. Anos says all he wants now is to see his mom and dad look overjoyed. He surprises everyone with his presence. Krut Ludowell tells him he's starting to think Anos will run off. Hero of Unitarians. Anos apologizes for wasting his time. Anos brings out the sword and sets to finish his opponent off in 1 minute. First round. Let match number 1 begin. Lei is shown sitting all alone in the upper room. First round, let match number 1 begin. The ladies in the Unitarian start to sing Sir Anos's fight song, chorus number 2. Crute Ludowell starts to make moves, but Anos dodges every single move. Crute uses secret move, Waterfang-linked Demon Thrust. Anos cuts it off in a single slash. Anos slashes both Kurt and his sword repeatedly. He knocks down at exactly 1 minute. Aos Voldigode is announced as the winner, and his parents and others praise him. Crute, on the other hand, wonders how a lowly sword like that could bring down. Anos tells him that there's something other than magic power in a sword forged so lovingly by a true craftsman. Then, he tells him not to underestimate his dad's sword. Misa commends Sir Anos for his performance, but Anos tells her it's just the first round. Just then, he watches the whole fight of match number 2, in which Lei Glanzudli of the Lognorth Magic Sword Association is announced as the winner. Anos and Misa seem confused when they hear Lognorth. They know him to be a royalist organization. Lei comes into the room where he meets Anos and Misa, but then he says he'd appreciate it if they keep their questions to themselves. Well, Anos doesn't mind doing that. Misa asks him why he joins the Lognorth Magic Sword Association, thinking the royalists are making some kind of pitch to him. Lei says the royalists did, like, enough money to live off for the rest of my life, plus the role of Demon Lord. Misa finds it hard to believe that Lei will go for something like that. Lei makes it clear to them that he's a royalist now, and he can't be friends with them anymore. He's about to open the door when he tells Anos that he forgot to tell him that he's going to kill him. Anos tells him to come prepared to die. He looks at Anos and says, "It's not much of a threat." He says that he's always risked his life for everything, and then Anos says he can put Lei's resolve to the test. Lei brings out his sword to slash Anos, but he blocks with his bare arm and grabs Lei's heart tightly. They both lose blood in the sight of contact. Misa is scared, and he calls both names. Lei says he is looking to slice off Anos's head and arms and all, while Anos says he was looking to crush Lei's heart between his fingers. Anos says Lei's body is quite durable. They both look forward to competing in the final. Lei leaves, and Anos tells Misa that Lei seems to be wearing a collar around his neck, and he can sense the presence of magical gear inside his body. Most likely it's a contractual magic sword, which is designed to destroy his source under certain conditions. Anos heals his arm and says Lei might be a hostage since he won't appeal to him directly for help. Aos Voldigode wins his second fight, and that has set through to the final. Some random men are seen saying Lei is advancing and most likely to take care of Anos. Anos's parents and the Unitarian ladies congratulate Sir Anos on reaching the finals. Anos's father leaves for work and promises to come to cheer Anos up the next day. Anos's mother asks if she can help Anos hold the sword because he has to get some rest for his next fight, and a lady says he wouldn't be allowed to use another word under the rules of the tournament. He gives his sword to his mom to keep for him, and the Unitarian ladies say they'd accompany her. Anos and Misa arrive at where Lei's mom's body is lying. She seems to have been affected with spirit disease, so her magic power is diminishing, and his source is getting sparse. Anos looks through her body and notices the effect looks like the ravages of old age. Lei's mom is half spirit, half demon, just like Misa. Misa says Lei is royal, so his mom should be a pure-blood demon, but Anos says it could be that he wasn't raised by his biological parents, so the spirit disease could be looked at as something related to half spirit, half demon. A few moments later, she opens her eyes and recognizes that she's been conscious all the time. She says Lei talked about him in the room and that he'd make a new friend. Then, Anos asks her if she knows about the contractual magic sword embedded inside Lei, and she replies yes, then says Lei is at the beck and call of the royalists in return for getting treatment for her. Anos tells her that Lei will no longer be shackled if he heals her. Anos asks her to say everything she knows about her spirit disease, and she explains thus: spirits are made up of one's emotions, desires, rumors, and traditions, and they're manifestations of such things, but a half-spirit, half-demon source tradition is a weak and newborn rumor. Anos says the rumor can be easily extinguished, each time reducing more and more of her source, so all he has to do is pass down the tradition. But she doesn't seem to know her tradition. She says she's feeling a bit stronger today because she can't remember how long it's been since she talked. Well, she tells Anos that Lei has always loved swordplay, and he swings his sword whenever he has a moment to spare, but he always seemed so bored. He has been feeling lonelier since she collapsed, but he came home to tell her he lost a fight and he looked thrilled talking about it. She says Lei desires to fight Anos. She begs Anos to free Lei and not to allow him to swing a cowardly sword. Aos asks her if she's sure about it because she'd end up perishing. She says she has no desire to live if it means standing in her child's way. Misa begs Aos to help Lei's mom, but it would be difficult to heal her completely if he doesn't know what her tradition is. Aos says spirits and demons have different sources. Misa suggests that Aos should link their sources since they're of the same kind. They begin with it. Miss Amelia meets Anos' mom and the ladies at their home, and tells them that the rule states that the steering committee is supposed to hold on to the contestants' swords, just for the finals. But none of the ladies can relate as they've not heard that before. Also, Anos' mother refuses to let go of the sword to her. She'd rather take it to the steering committee herself. Miss Amelia drags the sword with her, but she won't let go, and then she punishes them all with her magic. Anos' mother asks her why she'd do such a thing to her students. She says hybrids are just thieves, eavesdropping on her classes. Anos' mother asks her why she wants the sword, and she answers that she can never forgive Anos after humiliating the pure-blood Ludowell family. Anos' mother tells her that stealing Anos' sword so he won't compete is wrong. The ladies sing their usual farewell song, and they strive hard to protect Anos' mother and the sword from wicked Miss Amelia, but they can't. She burns them alive. She wants to try the same thing on Anos' mother, but Anos arrives at the right time to handle it. Miss Amelia starts bluffing, and Anos holds her still to shut her up. He heals the ladies and his mom. He thanks the ladies for holding up till he comes back, and then he turns to Miss Amelia. He grabs her in the neck and teleports her to somewhere where he has a sword in her from behind, so a fatal wound has been inflicted on her. Anos gives her a chance to live only when she acknowledges him as the demon king of tyranny and begs for her life, but she bluffs again. He tortures her until she says the word, but she doesn't mean, so he kills her, then reborns her as a hybrid. She tries to kill herself, but he's placed a curse on her that no matter how many times she dies, she'll always come back to life as a hybrid. He tells her to enjoy her new world because she might realize how biased her views were before. Lei comes to check up on his sick mother when he sees Misa doing some stuff. He walks gently and puts a knife towards her neck to ask her what's doing. She explains to him the reason they're doing this. He asks her if Anos knows about it, but she says no. Lei tells her not to get caught up in meaningless emotion. She joined the Unitarians so she could save many hybrids, so she'll have to put her life on the line for real someday. She claims that the day is already here because she wants to save Lei's mother from suffering at the moment. He thanked her and shook her with the knife. His mother finally wakes up and calls his name. He runs towards his mother and promises her he's going to win. His mother says she'd always be by his side and tells him to be himself and live the way he wants to. Then, she died. He leaves the room and Anos teleports to the room and watches Lei through the window as he walks away. The Dilhade Magic Sword Tournament final stage is finally here, and the crowds are seated to experience the final stage of the tournament, a fight between Lei and Anos. Some people watch it on TV, a fight between Lei and Anos. The crowds share their favorites. Special rules are being announced in which a bracelet is put in each player's left hand. It will count as a loss if these bracelets get destroyed. Anos' bracelet is set to exacerbate Lei's mother's spirit disease and extinguish her the moment the magic power being drained by that spirit drain ring is depleted. And if Lei is defeated, his source will be wiped out by the contractual magic sword. After the rules have been read out to both players, the match begins. They begin to show their various sword skills. Lei can't believe Anos is fighting despite his magic power being drained, but Anos tells him that it's not hindering him any less, so he shouldn't hold back. Lei starts to spit out the Royalists' plan, which is for him to buy time because the odds get better for him the longer it goes, but he activates the contractual magic sword. He believes he's going to die. He can't heal his mom, and there is no reason why Anos should go down with him. Then he challenges Anos. Anos believes there's no need to think about anything anymore after everything Lei's said. Anos says the fight is about him and Lei now, not about Unitarians, royalties, or Lei's mother. They continue the fight, which becomes too intense and fast. Lei cuts off Anos' left arm, while Anos has his sword through Lei's heart. Lei falls to his knees while he says he had a good time with him. All of a sudden, the stage is driven down to a dimensional prison. Then, a voice says, "I have waited so many years for this moment." Anos could tell that it was Melheis that is one who planted the contractual magic sword inside Lei, and the one who selected him for the magic sword tournament. Then, he appears and laughs, thinking he can get rid of Anos for good after a long time and claim victory. He thinks the spirit drained more than half of Anos' magic power. Also, he says the arm sliced off by Lei won't get healed anytime soon. Melheis comes along with Gaios and Idol to fight Anos, meaning that Anos is up against 3 of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors. Now, it seems like Anos and Lei are together in this game, and it looks like the 3 of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors give themselves away in front of them. Lei uses his sword to tear up both Gaios and Idol, and Anos immediately stands them still with the revived spell. Melhace is surprised to see Lei alive because he thought his source had been wiped out. Anos tells Melhace to peer closer into the abyss. He does and realizes that the contractual magic sword is gone. According to Lei, Anos' last strike on him breaks the contractual magic sword. Melhace has no idea that both of them are conspiring. Lei believes in Anos because he knows he'll transcend everything, although he went all out against him. To prove to them that he still wins, he shows them a gate where he holds Lei's mom captive. Then, he proposes a trade that he'd treat Lei's mom if he allied with him. Anos dares him to go ahead and kill the woman. Lei distracts him so he can enter the gate before he closes the gate. Melhace comes prepared for the fight. He attacks Anos with walls he used 2,000 years ago to divide the world when he sacrificed himself, but Anos blocks it, the walls. Absorb the magic power supplied to the spirit drain ring. Melhace hides in an absolute space where only he can enter, and he believes he'd win as long as he remains in the space he created. Melhace attempts to attack Lei, but Anos creates an anti-demonic spell to protect him from being by the walls. Anos is overusing his power, so he tells Lei to do something about it. Lei tells Anos to create a powerful sword, using the magic power for his anti-demonic spell. Lei fights the walls with the powerful sword, but he's nowhere near the walls. As he gets knocked down, even the sword gets broken. He assumes he can't find the walls, but his mother lends him a hand, which he uses to fight down the walls, and he could slash through the space where Melhace hides. His mother praises him and fades into the air. While Melhace bluffs, Anos finds his way into the absolute space and holds Melhace by his shoulder with his arm perfectly fixed back to its position. Melhace, who still has other options, captures Anos in a consummate spell, but Anos bursts out through the spell. Melhace repeats it, but to no effect. Anos uses Venu's door to create a magic sword of destruction with the help of the spirit drain ring and the walls, and his destruction source is given a rude awakening, which helps him regain the magic power he had before he was reincarnated. Anos slashes Melhace when he attempts to retreat and he falls to the ground. He thought he dodged it, but magic sword of destruction annihilates all laws. Melhace creates several gates to release gates, Beno Levun, but all do not affect Anos. Anos stabs Melhace in his forehead and reverses his senses so he recognizes him. He comes back to life with his senses and recognizes him as Sir Anos. Out of the dimension prison, back to the fighting stage, Melhace asks for forgiveness from his master and confesses that he was taken by surprise. Then, he explains how he was assaulted and manipulated by an unknown entity after he met with Anos. Anos orders him to summon Gaios and Idol to the stage. Anos says that the sources of Gaios and Idol have been fused and taken over, and the sources are most likely working for Aos Delvia. He tends to resurrect them, but an attack from an unknown man breaks the sources of Gaios and Idol. Anos asks the unknown man if he is Aos Delvia, but the unknown man says nothing and he leaves. Anos tells Melhace to revive Gaios and Idol. After the stage clears, the crowd can see Anos with his sword and Lei lying on the ground. Also, his magic sword has been broken. Anos Voldgod is announced as the winner of the Dilhade Magic Sword Tournament, and people hail and praise him. People ask him to tell them how he wins and how it feels to be a winner. Anos says he can win because of the sword his father gave him. He added that his dad forged the sword with all the love in his heart to make it compete and contain as much power as any magic sword. He directs all praise to the sword and his dad. Tears of joy ran down his father's face. Then, he resurrects Lei and uses an Ingol spell to resurrect Lei's mother. They both embrace each other. However, Anos can revive Sheila because he can trace down her tradition. Anos has presented a commemorative gift with Sasha as the gift presenter. Anos requests, she commends him well, and she does commend him with a kiss on his cheek, which got everyone off guard. It was quite an entertaining tournament, says Sir Anos. 2,000 years ago, Anos Voldgod alone visited Hero Canaan's town, Gyrodite, to discuss how to put an end to the war between humans and demons. Anos asks Canaan what exactly he wants. He's about to speak out when Jirga runs as his speed peaks to attack Anos, to avenge his family who have been killed by the demons, as well as humans. He ended up being killed by Anos. Anos, on the other hand, claims that his mother was killed by humans. Anos tells Canaan to find him in his castle, Delsgade, when he's ready to consider his requests to end the war. Then, he leaves. Canaan runs towards Jirga to help him. Jirga tells Canaan to find every way to defeat Anos because he has cost the human race a lot, and there's no way they can coexist. Sasha is seen walking a path wishing a cure for oversleeping exists, at the same wondering why Misha didn't wake her up. Anos and Masha, who are coming from Anos' house to have lunch, meet her on the road. Anos' mother was teaching her how to make lunch, Sasha asks why she didn't inform her when she was going to Anos's house, and she answers that she tried to wake her up but she wouldn't stand up. Aos tells her that he'll wake her up next time if she'd like to come over. While they talk, Lei and Misa meet them there. In the class, a woman named Manu Historia addresses herself as the homeroom teacher for Year 3, Class 1, and she'd be taking over the class temporarily for Miss Amelia. The class murmurs a bit, wondering if Miss Amelia has quit teaching. Miss Manu announced their upcoming schedule, which is that they'd be holding Interacademy classes in 3 weeks, and the school will be represented by the 3rd year. The venue will be Azatian's Hero Academy Arklaniska in the human realm, because there are members of the Generation of Chaos, the 1st-year class. A student asks why they're going to the human realm despite the fact they don't interact that often with them. Miss Menu says the plans to hold the Interacademy class have been in the works for a while. Another student asks what Hero Academy is, but Miss Minot says they won't be learning about heroes until the 3rd year. She explains what heroes is briefly, and she asks the class if anyone knows what they call the hero's troop magic, which is said to be similar to the demon's guise. Enos signifies and says Asla, and under the spell, the subordinates share their magic power with their leader, but that it's not enough to unleash Asla's true value. He added that Guise defends castles, while Asla was developed to attack and destroy castles. Miss Manu commends him and tells him to make sure to do his homework, because there will be a Guise versus Asla exam during the Interacademy classes. The Unitarian ladies praise him. Miss Manu could tell that Anos knows a lot about heroes. Anos claims that he did see more than his fill of them back in the day. After the class, Anos keeps wondering if the people forget about heroes considering that the world is now at peace. Then, Sasha suggests they go to study hall for the rest of the day. Anos trains them to fight him so he can point out what they need to work on to hold their ground while fighting enemies. He tells them he knew a hero who was so powerful and didn't seem human, but he couldn't tell if he's been reincarnated into their area. He tells them that their opponents in the exam will be those inheriting the names of the heroes, so they'd better get ready for what's against them. This motivates his crew to want to try their best again. And that's definitely what Anos likes to hear. Mehes reports to Anos that he was able to successfully resurrect Gaios and Idol, but their sources seem to have been taken over by someone 2,000 years ago. The remaining of the 7 Elder Demon Emperors are yet to be found, but they're most likely to have been taken over by Aos Delvia. Anos asks Melhais why he's the only one who wasn't taken, and he tells them they didn't have enough trusted subordinates to fuse with him. Anos claims that he might be a trap to make them think that's what happened. Mehias urges Anos to exercise the utmost caution during the Interacademy classes, because he's had his suspicions for a while. Anos asks him why it was built in the first place. Melhais says it was built in the first place to nurture those who could contribute to the country's expansion, but there seems to be an elite class for reincarnated heroes. He says hero used to mean a great war hero, but they gather and train only resurrected heroes now that the world is at peace. There are reasons behind it that they do not know. Anos shows Lei his swords and tells him to pick whatever he likes. Lei apologizes that he won't settle down without a sword. Lei picks the unique sword Sigshesta, which can transform at will, heart, and soul. Lei tries the Sigshesta blade on a statue, but it's blunt, meaning that one has to focus with their heart for it to slash anything. Lei reminds Anos of his right-hand man 2,000 years ago, who'd mastered every sword in existence. He was the only one who could control Sigshesta blade at will. Lei says he gets the sense that he used to live in another era, but he doesn't remember anything. Then he asks if Anos and his right-hand man promised to meet again. Anos says that he did. Lei insists he'd take the unique sword Sigshesta. A whispering bird directs the students to the capital of Ageshion, Gyrodite, for the Interacademy classes, and it's going to take them 10 days to get there. Students who fail to reach Gyrodite within the stipulated time won't be eligible to take part. The journey begins, but Anos uses his magic to get himself and his crew to Gyrodite in the blink of an eye. He tells them that he's been here before. Lei wants to use the opportunity of the time they have to explore the city. Misa says she will contact the fan union from their lodgings. Misha says she'd go with Misa, while Sasha tags along with Anos. Sasha finds Azishion almost the same as Dilhade. Anos sees some happy kids, and he admits that the Gyrodite is certainly peaceful. Anos wants to get a look at the Hero Academy, and Sasha warns him not to cause any uproars because they have the Interacademy classes ahead of them. Anos claims that he has common sense, and Sasha guesses not after he tried killing them over and over during study hall. He commends Sasha for not having succumbed. He says she's worthy of having the same demonic eyes as himself. Sasha says she's not falling for his compliments. He tells her that he wasn't lying when he told her before how beautiful her demonic eyes were. Her eyes turn, and everywhere begins to shake, and the people are exclaiming. Aos's eyes turn, and he tells her to look into his eyes. Upon looking, she says, beautiful, and Aos tells her her eyes are even more beautiful, so serene and innocent. Her eyes turn back and the shaking stops. Aos tells her to promise that you'll protect everyone with her own eyes in his stead if his eyes are ever exposed to an unreachable danger. Sasha asks if he'd stop treating her like a child if she fulfilled the promise. Aos agrees, and they make a deal. Aos and Sasha find their way to Hero Academy Arklaniska. Aos opens the gate, and they enter. A lady walks up to them from behind and tells them that Hero Academy is off limits to outsiders. Aos tells her that they just arrived from Dilhade. She seems fascinated and asks if they're from the Demon Academy, and they answer yes. She introduced herself as Eleanor Bianca, a third year at the Hero Academy, and they did introduce themselves too. She asks them what they're doing at the Hero Academy, because it's not yet the time for Interacademy classes. Aos says he's intrigued by the hero legends. She tells them to come with her as they'll be safe as long as they're with her. She tells them about her academy, and they see a picture of Hero Canon. She shows them where books on magic from all over Azishion are gathered. She recommends a book about the legend of Hero Canon defeating the Demon King of Tyranny for them, if they want to learn about heroes. Sasha asks her why they all believe that Hero Canon defeated the Demon King of Tyranny. Well, she says it's a fact. Sasha asks her who built the walls that divided the world into 4 areas 2,000 years ago, and she says that they were built by Hero Canon to protect humans from the remnants of the demon race. Sasha yells at her and says they were built by the Demon King of Tyranny at the cost of his life to achieve peace. Aos calms her and tells her they have to let them believe that Hero Canon killed the Demon King of Tyranny, or the humans from back then can never rest easy. Eleanor apologizes for saying it wrong. Aos asks her if she knows the name of the Demon King of Tyranny, and she answers Aos Delvia. Aos is surprised to know that they believe the same thing too. He asks Eleanor if she knows where the elite class for reincarnated heroes is. Eleanor knows it to be Jirga Kanon, and she takes them there. Aos asks if Hero Kanon is among them, and she says there are 4 reincarnations of Kanon. Aos explains to Sasha that Hero Kanon had 7 sources, a power he acquired to rise against demons. He can resurrect the other 6 if one source remains. Aos thinks each of them might have been reincarnated into different bodies. Aos asks Eleanor what the 4 say about the history of the heroes. Aos says they should be able to dispute this country's flawed history if they have Kanon's memories. A guy named Ledriano Kanon Azishen, the reincarnation of Hero Kanon's first heart, and a member of the elite class, Jirga Kanon, comes in and says he finds it unlikely that the Demon King, after running the gamut of tyranny, would build a wall to protect humans. He says Aos just can't accept defeat because of his blind worship of his founding ancestors. Another guy named Laos Kanon Jilfor, the reincarnation of Hero Kanon's third heart, and a Jirga Kanon member comes to the scene. Aos says he doubts that both of them are Kanon's reincarnation. He says Kanon has only one true source while the rest are duds. They say they'd be happy to show him by flexing their hero muscles a bit instead of greeting. Aos, on the other hand, would love them to enlighten him. Laos Kanon tells Aos not to blink and he throws a magic blow, but Aos blinks to stop both the blow and Laos Kanon. Ledriano Kanon tells Laos Kanon to accept his loss. He apologizes to Aos for Laos Kanon's rudeness. He then asks for Anos's name. Aos is introduced as Aos Voldegode. Then he and Sasha leave the scene, and Eleanor follows. Eleanor apologizes to Aos, but admits that Aos is strong. Aos says it wouldn't have ended like that if he'd been up against the real Canon. Sasha whispers in his ear that he still overdid it. Eleanor asks if Aos was reincarnated too, because she keeps wondering how he gets to know so much history about Hero Canon. Aos says yes, that they made an agreement before he was reincarnated, and he is hoping to get the chance to see him. Eleanor tells Aos that the Hero Canon he's looking for is gone, because he was murdered 2,000 years ago. She added that he's not the hero he used to be anymore, even with his source, so Aos will only get disappointed if he keeps looking for him. Then, he asks who murdered him, and she answers that it was a human. Some students manage to find their way to Gyrodite, and they are awarded an A for their effort. One of the students looks up and sees Aos and his crew entering the building. He's surprised, so he asks Miss Manu when they get there. Miss Manu says Aos and his crew have been in the city since 10 days ago, the day the students set out. While they walk into the building, Eleanor sees Aos, but Aos doesn't realize she's the one walking right in front of them, although Misha notices her face when she looks back. The set of canon reincarnations is seen upstairs, looking at Aos through a window. A third-year student, Revest Aini, addresses Aos as Misfit and asks him how he cheats to get to Gyrodite, and Aos tells him not to feel bad because he hears Revest made it in 2 days. Then, Revest quickly apologizes for his unfounded suspicions. He says he doesn't take Aos as the demon king of tyranny, which he calls himself, and he walks away. On the first day of the Interacademy classes, the headmaster of the Hero Academy, as well as one in charge of the elite Jirga Canon class, Diego Canon y Jessica, welcomes the Demon King Academy students. They start with a bit of recreation, in which a representative from each academy is called out to demonstrate some magic using the objects on the table. Ledriano, the Hero Academy's representative, and Revest Aini, the top-ranked third-year representative of the Demon King Academy, are called out. The recreation begins with Ledriano using hero magic, Lihid, to cast an object into a potion and increase its efficacy in the case of a sword, using the sword to break down a human object. Revest attempts to use demonization magic, Nedra, on a mouse in a cage, but it has no effect. Ledriano laughs and asks if that is the best the top-ranked third-year student at the Demon King Academy can do. The headmaster tells Ledriano not to laugh. It could be that Revest is nervous. Revest keeps trying but fails. Aos stands up and says, "Humans never stop setting people up." He announces that Ledriano casts not only Lihid, but also the Break Concealment, Delenos, a concealed barrier that seals the magic cast by a demon. Aos snaps his hand, and the little mouse in the cage grows into a large monster, which scares everyone. He then casts Lihid magic to generate a holy sword. The headmaster wonders how a demon could do that. Aos tells him that the power of holy magic is merely on a different wavelength. In that case, Ledriano admits that he's the reincarnation of the Demon King of Tyranny. A royal student from the same academy as Aos disagrees with what Ledriano has said. He says there's no way a hybrid could ever be the Demon King of Tyranny. Laos hits the table to shut the royal student up and says anyone who could do better than Aos should show themselves now. Revest turns to Laos and tells them not to criticize the royalty. The class murmurs, but the headmaster silences the class. Ivis is seen at the window side reporting to Aos about what he's found and seen. He looks through the legends of Azishion, and there's no mention of Hero Canon getting killed by a human. He also found an odd phrase in those legends handed down all by Hero Academy graduates. One day, this utter darkness will once again consume Azishion, but have no fear. Offer hope along with your prayers to the legendary hero, for then he shall appear. The spirit god, human sword, Evans Mana in hand, and illuminate the world. The spirit god, human sword, Evans Mana is a holy sword, forged to destroy him. The legendary hero will be Hero Canon, and the utter darkness consuming Azishion would be Aos' reincarnation. Sasha and Misha knock on the door to call on Aos to attend a festival to celebrate the birth of Hero Jirga. While they talk, Aos sees Lei and Misa where they're having their moment, and he wants to walk to them, but Sasha stops him so he won't intrude. Lei notices that Misa is moody and asks her if she's fine. Misa says that the Hero Academy students today all had a look in their eyes that she was scared. She asks Lei if he thinks there's going to be a lot of bad blood, and Lei touches her cheek and smiles a bit. He says, Misa never returns hostility even when someone's hostile to her. Misa says that she's not that kind of person. Well, Lei gives Misa a necklace as a token of gratitude. Unitarian ladies see the necklace in Misa's name and they ask her how she found it. She says that someone put it on her yesterday and she couldn't get it off. Sasha says the story behind the necklace is romantic. According to Aos, it's the story of Mehense necklace about two human lovers who broke a holy seashell in half to create two necklaces, and they each wore one to ensure that they'd be united again after they were reincarnated. The story was quite tragic. At first, it became customary to make a single necklace out of two and give it to one's lover. Misha added that if one breaks the single shell necklace they gave their lover into two, it means one is proposing. Then, the Unitarian ladies immediately turn to Lei to ask him when his marriage with Misa is when they get to know he's the one that gives it to her. The students are gathered at Lake Saime for their Interacademy exams. The headmaster says each academy is to use its respective form of troop magic, Asla, or guise. In the Lake Saime, there are underwater cities and caverns. The headmaster tells Miss Manu to pick a decent team of students and alters some words to belittle them. One of the royal students tells Miss Manu to pick their team so that they're going to rip the opponent to shreds. Aos tells them they can't even win winnable contests if they jump at such cheap taunts. Miss Manu agrees with Aos, but they'd have to make up enough numbers in his team before she can consider them. Aos adds the Unitarian ladies to make them 13 so a team is set. Revest complains that the honor of their academy is at stake in the battle, and it won't be fair to leave it in the hands of a misfit. Aos agrees with him and tells him to make sure he exposes the enemy's strategy, or he'll just be piling shame upon shame. It's settled now. The headmaster begins the Interacademy exams, and while it goes on, Aos asks Miss Minot who Revest is. She says Revest was an underachiever when he first enrolled, and also hated the founding ancestor at first, but now he's a royalist. Aos asks, what changed him? Miss Ross explains that Revest wasn't good with magic developed for combat, thinking it's magic to annihilate, but he doesn't want to hurt anybody. Miss Minot told him that the founding ancestor felt the same way as him, and that which guise is used for. After that, he gained respect for the founding ancestor far more intensely than anyone else, and was finally able to take pride in his lineage. Aos asks if the founding ancestor's beliefs can be found in the textbooks, but Miss tells him that if the founding ancestor's beliefs are all the students are to be taught, then they wouldn't need instructions. Revest's team in the water is finding it hard to make use of their magic, and Revest tells them to report to him on time via leaks as they search for the enemy. The heroes hit the team members off guard in the water and head to destroy the Demon King castle. The students outside could only see the Hero Academy students, and they began to wonder why it was like that. It seems like the Hero Academy students had something set up before the exam started. With his eyes, Aos could tell that there was holy water mixed in with the lake water. Holy water gives humans magic power, and it is toxic to demons. This is Aos experiencing the holy water being used this way, and he says the Hero Academy students are receiving an endless supply of holy water through their magical gear. Aos also suggests that there should be some kind of mechanism for controlling holy water, but Miss Manu says it's against the rules. Revest and his team in the Demon King castle fire at the heroes as they move toward them, but the heroes block all their attempts. The heroes cast magic upon the Demon King castle, which sucks away the team's magic power, and eventually hit Revest and his team. Miss Manu tells the headmaster to rescue her students in the water, else she will lodge a strong protest that the heroes will have to answer to. The headmaster claims to have his familiars summon people at the scene, so it might take a while for him to rescue the students. Aos rescues the royal students out of the water, and Miss Manu runs towards Revest to heal him, but it doesn't heal him. The headmaster says healing magic will no longer be effective on him because Revest develops stigma after being severely wounded by holy magic. The headmaster claims that he won't know that the Demon King Academy students are this spineless to tell his students not to use such dangerous magic in an Interacademy exam. He tells Miss Manu to blame her incompetence, not him. Aos wants to heal Revest's stigma, but he refuses to be treated by Aos. Aos asks him if he's so weak that he can't submit to something unpleasant for his mentor's sake. Revest can get the hero's school badge, the magical gear the heroes use to control the water that seals their magic power and hides the holy water. Revest confesses that he's always hated Aos with every bone in his body, but for the first time, he wishes he had Anos's power. He tells him that he has fulfilled his role and should leave the rest for him. Aos asks the heroes to let them proceed to round 2, and they agree. The heroes' only answer for the first win is that they make the most of home field advantage. The heroes tell them to drain the water if they're scared. Aos drains the lake, together with the holy water with his power. Then, he challenges the heroes to come down the drained lake for round 2. The heroes fly down, thinking they'd have the chance to beat him after all he did to them. The headmaster tries to stop his students, but they won't listen. Miss Manu takes over and begins round 2 of the Interacademy exams. She tells her students to ensure they don't tarnish their ancestors' honor and pride. Aos uses the guise to create protection for themselves. One of the heroes asks if Aos is the second in power to Hero Canon, and if he's the Demon King of Tyranny. The other person admits Aos won't be a problem since they can hear Hero Canon's voice speaking to them. The heroes use Asla to build a holy castle. Then they begin to hear a voice saying, "Kill, kill the demons." Aos throws a huge accumulation of fire at the heroes, but their barrier, Deagelia, is equipped enough to stop the threat, and a lady bursts the huge fireball with a sword. They need to find their way into the barrier, so Misha creates a topographical effect of a demon castle that will help them withstand the draining spell. It's going to take her 3 minutes to create a castle inside the barrier, and Aos is going to protect her. The heroes arrive at the scene and tell Aos that he thinks they'd just sit here and let them build a complete castle. The lady who breaks through the huge fireball joins them with the Holy Sword of Light Inhale. Aos commends her strike on the fireball and asks her for her name. She's unable to speak, so Ledriano answers in her place. He introduces her as Zeshia Kanon Ijaisica, the Hero Academy rank 1. The reincarnation of Hero Kanon's fourth source. The heroes create an anti-demonic barrier to stop Misha, but Aos blocks and holds the ice chains in place. Aos thwarts their threat with the Jurist spell to burn them. Aos notices that the barrier is still up even after he knocks down the 4 heroes, and then he can tell that someone else is supplying power to the barrier. Misha has completely built the castle. Laos heals, and now he has to face Sasha, the Witch of Destruction. Helliane faces Lei. Sasha picks Laos's magical gear, but he doesn't realize until he can't throw magic hits with his hand. He threatens Sasha with his sword, and she drops the magical gear back to him. Then, he creates Barrier Magic Burtis to hold Sasha still, and accumulates energy in his sword to slash Sasha, but he overheats, spits blood, and falls on the floor. Seems like his badge has been poisoned. she returned it to him. Laos thinks she's going since she can't break the Birdazd. Then she uses her demonic eyes to neutralize and break the Birdazd. Sasha burns him completely for being so arrogant towards her demon king. Helene creates an earthquake barrier in which Lei is fixed, and he casts Great Sacred Earth Sword, Zelio. He threatens to slash the wound he's inflicted with Zelio, to leave Lei with a stigma. And when this happens, healing magic won't work on Lei. He bluffs and he finds out that Lei cuts off his hand holding the Zele. Helene wonders how he gets to move inside his barrier. Lei tells him about the unique sword which transforms at will. He added that he's trying to see if it could take on sacred magic power. Helene's hand regenerates and he mocks Lei's sword and calls it a fake sword. Lei picks his holy sword Zelio to use on him. Maybe it could be an original one. He laughs because he doesn't think that a demon can wield his sword. Lei grabs the holy sword Zelio and hits it against the ground, which makes Helene stumble and fall on the floor. Lei grabs his second sword and moves closer to him. This time, he doesn't have the power to order Zeli. Lei tells him the same thing he told him when he was holding the holy sword Zelio. He screams as Lei slashes his with the holy sword Zeli. Anos finds Ledriano where he is lying, but he seems to be feigning death. He stands up, removes his glasses, and throws them on the floor. He casts Sacred Ocean Guardian Sword Bilamente to create a sword. Some seconds later, Zeshia attempts to slash Anos from behind, but Anos is alert to stop her. She comes with several threats, but has no aim to hit Anos. Anos grabs her sword and uses the sword to carry her and hit her against the ground. Ledriano tries his attempt from behind. Anos notices, and he quickly throws Zeshia at him, and they both hit the wall. Zeshia and Ledriano convert the souls of the people of Gyrodite, cheering them on into power. They both attack Anos with the great power of love that humans pride themselves on, but he thwarts away their attempts with Ask Magic Circle. The heroes had the support of 10 million people, but Anos says 8 is sufficient for them. Then, he calls on the fan union to sing and hand over their love to him. The fan union begins to sing and Anos can hit the heroes hard. Ledriano wonders how the love and emotions of 10 million people could be breached, but they couldn't breach the love and emotions of just 8 people. Anos tells them that the number doesn't matter, but the important thing is the urgency of the feelings and the ability to unify all the souls. He tells them that what they just showed him couldn't hold a candle to the emotions of the humans that Hero Canon shouldered alone 2,000 years ago. A brainstorming spell is being cast and it affects almost everyone, including Misha, but she quickly comes back to her senses. In no time, the spell goes off, and Misha tells him that it sounds like hatred. Ledriano makes Zeshia unleash a very dangerous spell of explosion against Anos, but Anos is alive and strong. Anos tells him that his life is not as cheap and can be exchanged for the future. Zeshia comes back the second time with the same spell, but the result doesn't come out as expected as Zeshia is being held in the air with Anos' hand. A voice inside Zeshia calls Anos and tells him to come to the shrine. The voice says no one can stop Zeshia except it. Anos tells Misha to go to the shrine while he takes care of what he started there. Misha gets to the shrine, but she can't find anyone. Sir Diego arrives at the shrine, casts Misha inside a barrier, and chants for Enhaley to grab a sword. Sir Diego threatens to show Misha how deeply humans resent the demons. He angrily chants, "Open, Sacred Gate," to release sacred light from a seal. The light hits Misha badly, and Diego stabs Misha from behind. Diego stabs her repeatedly, as he says he won't forget all that the demons have done to the human race. Misha tells him that he broke the rules. Diego shuns her and says he plans to kill a lot more. As he attempts to annihilate Misha's source so that she doesn't get resurrected, Anos stabs him from behind and throws him against the wall. He quickly heals Misha and turns to Diego. He makes him burn from inside to death as he asks him what he's up to. Anos resurrects him and asks him about the true objective of the Academy. Anos could tell that it was Diego who cast the brainstorming spell. Diego seems to still be acting like a hero. Anos chants Nidra, the demonization magic, to transform Diego into a huge monster. In the case of Diego, his true nature manifests in his appearance. The huge monster says, "He'll never forgive you, demons," and yells Jerga Kanon. He raises his hand and summons all the heroes to attack the demons, hoping that everywhere will explode, but nothing changes. Anos tells him that he stopped time throughout the entire lake before Gavwell could go off. He attempts to attack Anos for mocking him, but Anos rips off his heart. Anos says a wounded source is more painful than even death. No human on Earth could withstand it except for Hero Kanon. That is why Kanon can stand him over and over again. Anos punctures the monster's heart while the monster itself feels the pain. He says Kanon's sources were ripped out of him, burned, smashed, and yet he still fought for the sake of humans. Anos added that Kanon is a great hero who repulses demons time and again. The monster tells him to end it, and Anos bursts his heart. Then, Anos says they shouldn't dare assume his name. Anos carries Misha Sasha in his arms, and they head to the shrine to meet Eleanor. On getting there, Aos asks her who she is, and she says that she's magic. Eleanor is created with a taboo magic spell that changes humans into magic, and so she's human magic. Eleanor. Aos could tell that she did not let the blast on Ledriano and the others didn't affect De Galia, and she took on the task of healing the heroes' mortal wounds. Aos doesn't want to use the Reveed spell so that everyone's source will explode, so he tells her that they need to dispel the Gavuel spell that Diego cast on Jerga Canon. Eleanor tells him to let her out of the barrier first, then she'll find a way to take off the Gavuel spell. Aos believes her and unseals the barrier. She clears all the guys and barriers and helps maintain the hero's source. Eleanor sets out to tell Aos about the Academy, so she shows Aos all the source clones she created, and they were all created by force, by the source magic Eleanor. If these people are killed, source and all, there's always someone else to replace them. There was a human who implemented it 2,000 years ago, the commander who led the subjugation army with Canon, Jerga Canon. He had a deep-rooted grudge against the demon race, even long after the Great War has ended. His greatest fear was that the descendants would forget the grudge toward demons, and that's why he created the Hero Academy. Jerga Canon also twisted around the laws of magic to transform his source into 2 magic spells. One of them is Ask, and people believe that can gain guidance from Canon by using Ask, but in reality, it's Commander Jerga's thirst for revenge. The thirst for revenge gets implanted into those under the influence of Ask, and that's why Hero Canon is against it. She shows a video of where Hero Canon was killed because he was against Jerga's decision, and he never appears again. Eleanor guesses that he must have gotten tired of humans. Eleanor is the magic spell, but she was a bust. All the hatred was absorbed by Ask, and very little remains of the commander's Herga's memories. Eleanor's role is to create source clones. She asks Aos for a favor to destroy her. She said she's been killing all these. She has had children for the last 2,000 years, non-stop. She says if these children could talk, there's no way they'd never forgive her. All of a sudden, one of the clones says Mama, and Eleanor walks up to the clone and cries as the clone calls her. Aos commends her for enduring this for 2,000 years and says he will grant her wish. He asks her if she'll be satisfied if he makes them all happy at once. Eleanor answers yes, and Aos is about to promise her when a man with at least 4 guards enters the shrine. The man asks him what he's doing with Eleanor. Aos sees his face and asks Eleanor if he's another source clone. Eleanor answers yes and says Diego's the ringleader who spreads Ask. She says as long as she's around, he'll regenerate endlessly. The man and his guards step forward to attack Aos, and some intruders who happen to be the 7 elder demon emperors, which include Medion Garza, Zoro Angato, and Eldora Zaya, guide an unknown demon. An unknown demon draws Hero Canon's holy sword. Then, the man orders his guards to do whatever it takes to get back the Hero Canon's holy sword. The demons create a small fireball spell that swallows up the man and his guards. Aos observes the unknown demon's skills, so he thinks there can be no excuse for the unknown demon having the 7 elder demon emperors with him. Aos asks for his name, and he addresses himself as Aos Delvia, the demon king of tyranny, who will destroy all. Aos asks him what he intends to do under a false name, and throws a huge fireball at Aos, but he calls him a fool and uses the holy sword to destroy the huge fireball. He says he's going to change the world into the true world of demons, swallow it up by this deep darkness, and there's no going back for anyone. Aos Delvia and the 7 elder demon emperors disappear. A few days later, it's announced to everyone that history has repeated itself, and the deep darkness has returned. The deep darkness has assaulted the shrine and stolen the Azishian's guardian deity, Thunder God's sword, Evansmana. The legend turned out to be true. The demon king of tyranny has been revived after 2,000 years. He will lead the demon race in an invasion of their nation. However, the demon subjugation army will deliver the blow of justice so that the heroes can claim victory. The 7 elder demon emperors declare that their lord has awakened from his long slumber, and he's allowed to give his speech about his second coming. He says he made a mistake in the past in showing the human race mercy by sacrificing himself. Humans haven't changed over 2,000 years. He's back to correct his mistakes from 2,000 years ago. This time, he shall annihilate the foolish humans. The people hail him, Your Majesty. 4 of the 7 elder demon emperors report to Aos that most of the demon lords have gathered around Aos Delvia and are heading toward the border. The demon king's subjugation army is placing things to meet their attack. Aos admits that it's a battle he left unfinished 2,000 years ago. He tells them not to interfere in the fight, but to stand their ground, that they can't just sit and look while Scoundrel is assuming the name of their lord. Anos's crew comes in to tell him they're all ready to stand by him no matter what. Then, they all agree to leave at daybreak, but everyone should get enough before then. The next morning, Lei notices a worried face on Misa's face and asks her what's going on with her. Misa says she just keeps imagining the worst. Lei tells her that he's not nervous about this fight at all, because it seems like he fought in the fight 2,000 years ago. Lei unlaces her necklace and asks if he could have it. Misa has heard people saying it means he's proposing, so she quickly mentions it to him. Well, Lei is aware of this. Lei wears the necklace and gives Misa his word that he will come back to her no matter what. Aos and his crew are set for the day and ask them if they haven't forgotten what it is they need to do. They say to prevent any skirmishes between the Dilhade forces and the Demon King subjugation army and neutralize them both. Lei added that they'll have to find a way to remove the grudge from Ask. Then, Aos orders them not to die and not to kill because they can afford to lose anyone over a trivial fight. The Azishion forces, the Demon King subjugation army, have already positioned themselves to counterattack. The first to strike will be the Dilhade forces, but no one can tell Aos Delvia's way to survive. Misha and Sasha stop the troops gathering from the west in their attack. They tell them that their Demon King has no desire for war. Fan Union is positioned to focus on supporting the rearguard. Lei and Misa are to demolish the troops in the east to stop them from the border. Melhace and his men are to subdue the 7 elder demon emperors, and Anos will take out Aos Delvia. Anos sends a fire attack to the Dilhade forces and tells them to inform Aos Delvia that he is the true Demon King. Melhace tells Anos to leave False's king men for them, while Anos heads to Aos Delvia's castle. Anos gets to the entrance of Avos' castle, and the door opens. Misa calls on Sir Anos to tell him that she can't find Lei. Melhace reports to Anos that he has captured Meduin, Zoro, and Eldora, who were being manipulated by Avos, but it looks like the Sorsa has abandoned its hosts and fled. Melhace asks him if he'd deal with Avos later, but he says no. Avos is seen walking through a bush when Anos appears and creates a wall where anyone can't get in or out. They begin to hit on the attack. From there, Anos recognizes that it's Hero Kanan. Hero Kanan came earlier before Anos to fulfill his promise. Then, he shows the necklace. He finally puts off the mask and it happens to be Lei. He asks Anos how he finds out that he's the one. Anos shows him the necklace and reminds him of the night he was Miss. Lei recognizes the single-shelled. Only someone who knew about the Azashion myth would ever call it single-shelled. This means Hero Kanan does remember his past. Anos asks him who he is because he knows of no one who can wield both a unique sword and a holy sword, but maybe Hero Kanan can wield both, only if he is resurrected as a demon. He added, he doesn't want him to find out who he is, playing the role of fake Demon King, Aos Delvia. Another unforeseen circumstance is Misha being born through Dino Jixis. The fact that he cried when he lost his mother was genuine to Anos. So Anos admits that he must be trying to save something as he plays the fake Demon King. Anos asks him what happened 2,000 years ago, and he says it was just as Anos said. And he says he was murdered by Jirga's followers. And then they set up a plot to annihilate Anos 1,000 years later. He considered it an irrational mistake by the humans, and he had to rectify it. He mentions that Evan's mama has the power to nullify even destiny, so he made use of that to nullify Anos' destiny to become reincarnated as the Demon King of Tyranny. Anos asks him if that is why his name is forgotten. Hero Kanan says over time and little by little, history was rewritten. Then Aos Delvia was born. Kanan says humans will always kill demons, and that one's only option will be to slay humans. The source of it all is the hatred toward demons that Jirga suffused Ask with. If Aos Delvia is destroyed, then the curse should also vanish. Kanan says he still wants to believe. He claims that he's a hero, and he has to make amends for their mistakes. He then said, he's yet to show Anos human kindness and the true peace that he desired. Anos then says, human lovers on their way to death would split a holy seashell in half to create 2 necklaces, and they each wore one to ensure that they'd be reunited after they were reincarnated. He tells Kanan that he can only get the necklace by force from him. They're both in to protect each other, but in a bad way. The fight begins, and Anos attacks Kanan in every way to destroy his sources. He destroys all except one, but Karan believes that no matter how many times he loses, he will eventually win in the end. Kanan has always believed that the time hasn't come for him to risk his life for the peace that would come someday. But he was wrong, because there's someone he must save right in front of him. The fight continues, and he's able to find the source of Anos through his heart with his sword. Anan uses his power to transfer his outfit to Karan, and Karan's to himself. He also gave the mask on his head. Then the walls he created begin to fall off. The people exclaim when they see them. Kanan asks Anos why he decided to do this. Anos tells him that he's following Kanan's script, and it should extinguish human hatred. Anos turns to all of them and tells them to retreat until the day he's once again resurrected. He forbids them from seeking revenge on humans. He tells them to live until the day that the Demon King returns. Then Kanan tells Amos that both now and back then, he's the only one who reached out his hand to him in the end. Anos returns his necklace, and Kanan removes the Evan's mama from his heart, and he falls on the ground. Kanan announces that the king demon is dead and the war is over now. Melhace tells the forces to retreat, and they will wait for the demon king's return in Dilhad. All of a sudden, Diego screams that the people should not be deceived. The one who kills Anos is not hero Kanan, but a demon. He calls on his 10,000 Zishia troops to self-destruct and annihilate the demon race. He says a single death cannot assuage 2,000 years worth of hatred. He says until the demon race is wiped out of the world, the war will never stop. Diego creates Ask and uses the brainstorming spell to compel people to start saying kill them. The Ask transforms into Commander Yurga. Yurga is disappointed in Kanan because he reincarnates himself as a filthy demon. Kanan, on the other hand, is disappointed in Yurga because he has given up his existence as a human and transformed it into magic, whose only purpose is to wipe out demons. Kanon is going to nullify Jurga with his hatred. Jurga's body is true sacred magic and can't be destroyed with a holy sword. Misha and Sasha ask him why they should be judged by him. Jurga asks if they are Kanon's masterless subordinates. They tell him that they believe the Demon King will return. Ivis calls on his direct descendants for their time has come to unveil the Nekron family's secret technique. They join and return to their proper form, chanting Dino Jixes. They fight Jerikai at their magic power peaks, and he gives them a taste of greed or despair, but they don't retreat until the Demon King returns. Anos commends them for they're able to hold on this long. Jerga seems surprised to see Anos is back because he wouldn't expect him to resurrect after his source has been destroyed. Anos uses his enemy's attack as its origin to revive his source. It's fine by Jerga, as he thinks he'd be able to use his hands to kill Anos. Jerga calls on the people of Azishion and tells them that their land is about to be swallowed by deep darkness. He tells them to offer him their prayer and hope. If they do so, light shall extinguish the darkness. Anos tells him that if he drains the people's hope by force, their souls can never return. Well, Jerga says it's a noble call he's made to eliminate Anos, even if it costs him his life. He calls on the sacred power of justice to strike Anos, but Kanan blocks it with his sword. Kanon and Anos fight together to break the age-old chain of hatred so that they can bring peace to Azishion and Dilhade. He hit them hard at first, and he's got a body of world order. For that reason, he believes he can't be killed. Anos chants, asks, and calls on the fan union to sing so that they can overpower Jerga. Jerga sends to the land many magic swords. The Demon King's descendants and Eleanor join in the game in bringing down Jerga. They believe the founding ancestor fought for the demon race, and now they are ready to prove their loyalty to him. Jerga says the war will never end, not until he annihilates all demons. He claims that human hatred will never vanish from the world, but the demon race's fate is to be wiped out. In that case, Kanan's job as a hero is nullifying such destiny. Anos makes it clear to Harga that it's not that humans hated the demons, it was him who hated him. Kanon and Anos can take him down, and their body transforms back into royal students and misfits. The same thing goes for Sasha and Misha. They thought he was dead, but he tells them there's no way he'd die. Lei comes back to meet Misa. Anos fulfills his promise to Eleanor. He turns her into his magic, so she'd never be abused again. In the end, the forces bow to him. Anos and his crew arrive back home, including Eleanor. His parents are glad to see him again. Like usual, they thought he had come home with a new wife. Anos' mother prepares them. Mushroom gratin. 2,000 years ago in the Great Spirit Forest Aharthurn, Great Spirit Leno calls on her family to inform them she has decided to go to Delsgade, and she promises to come back. All of a sudden, the father of all gods, the Heavenly Father God, Nusgalia, comes to tell Great Spirit Leno that he'd like to create a new child of God, and her womb has been chosen for the child, but she declines. Great Spirit Leno tells him that he may be a member of the God clan, but she won't let him have his way in her territory. She controls some woods in the forest to attack Heavenly Father God, Nusgalia, but he tells her the God's order is absolute. He directs the woods back to her, and he begins the process of impregnating her with a divine child. Fortunately for her, Demon King Anos and his right-hand man, Shin, come to the scene to help her from the Heavenly Father God. Anos attacks him with the Geograze and punctures his heart from behind. Nusgalia tells Anos that God has decided on the destruction of the Demon King of Tyranny, so an order will soon be sent in, which he shall kill him. Anos replies that he will die before then. Then he laughs and says, a god cannot be killed. He begins to bluff, and Shin seizes Nusgalia's throat with a looting sword. Anos tells him the laws of the gods will be wiped out before him. Then, Anos squeezes his heart, and he fades away. Anos turns to Leno and asks her if she has decided, and she says she's going to place her trust in him. Anos orders Shin to protect her until she reaches Aharthurn. There's a barrier along the road to Delzagade, so Gotham can't be used to travel, and the gods might come for her again as they don't die easily. He protects her through the journey, gives her food, and watches over her all night. They get back to a hearthurn, but they find out that the spirits have been devoured by Divine Beast Gwen. Shin fights the Divine Beast Gwen. One of the beasts attempts to attack Leno from behind, but it is killed by an invincible young boy. The invincible young boy quickly hides behind a tree, but Leno knows somebody is there. The invincible young boy shows his true identity and addresses himself as Anoshu Poltikoal. Anos is walking towards the Demon King Academy Delsgade when some set of students see him and greet him. While he greets them, Sasha and Misha arrive and greet him as well. He senses Sasha's new hair ribbon, and she asks her how he finds out. He says his eyesight isn't so clouded that he wouldn't notice a subject's equipment. Sasha tells him to stop calling them equipment. Misha interrupts and says Sasha's embarrassed because he spots her hair. Sasha turns to Misha and tells her not to put ideas in his head. Anos points to Sasha's hair and says everything about the hair, thinking it will make her happy. But Misha tells him that he's too observant. Just in the moment, Lei and Misa meet them at the scene, and Sasha says both of them are finally showing together in broad daylight. Misa denies it and says they only happen to run into each other. The fan unions come to the scene, and they all tease Misa. In the class, some of the guys are talking about Anos as they see him entering the class. One of them says the hybrid should have gotten caught up in the war and died, and the other says they're not going to let the Misfit lord over them anymore. Miss Manu enters the class to announce before they start the day's agenda. She introduces exchange students from the Hero Academy. Their names are Eleanor Bianca and Zeshia Bianca. Well, that doesn't sit well with some students considering that the Hero Academy provoked a war with them recently. Miss Manu immediately addresses their displeasure and tells them that it was a plot devised by Diego. Miss Manu introduces to the class Erdemaid Ditti John as their homeroom teacher starting the same day. A student quietly says an incompetent instructor who's not even from royalty. Mr. Ditti John is a demon who was born before the 7 elder demon emperors and a member of the 4 evil royals, says Miss Manu. The 4 who commanded a force second only to the demon king of tyranny in the demon realm 2,000 years ago. They are the King of Curses, the Scarlet Monument King, the King of the Netherworld, and the Blaze Death King, Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John. Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John enlightens the ignorant ones who know nothing about 2,000 years ago. He's about to start with the fake Demon King, Aos Delvia, when a student challenges him for tarnishing the name of the Demon King of Tyranny. Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John tells them that they all blindly believe in the name of a false Demon King, even though he's seated right in the class. Reincarnated, Demon King Anos Voldigode, the class exclaims. And then a female student tells him to stop teaching them random lies. He tells them that Aos Delvia is a spurious name concocted to mislead Azishion, which tried to annihilate the Demon King after he'd reincarnated. Now that the ringleader Diego is no more, there's no need to hide the true Demon King. He shows them the signers, 7 elder demon emperors, of the Zect that validated it as fact. Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John calls on Anos to step up to the front of the class. Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John chants in the name of the Demon King, and all the seats in the class disappear. Those who believe in him bow, while the ones who don't have their body moving on their own. Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John requests an order from Anos to revert the action. He agrees and he does it. Anos tells them that Dilhadi is now at peace and there's no longer any need for a demon king of tyranny. He says they could acknowledge him if they want, and if otherwise, it's fine by him. He added that he's no different than any ordinary demon. There's nothing noble about power, nor about blood. If anything, they'd find it within their soul, and that's what they need to polish. Lastly, he says, nobility isn't some cheap thing they can attain by resting on their laurels. Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John sets to begin the main agenda of the class. Anos observes that Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John happens to be the heavenly father god Nuskalia, and he wonders what a god who's taken over a demon's body is doing in Delhade. Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John tells Anos to take his seat because he wants to instruct him personally, and Anos, on the other hand, is ready to hear what he has to say. He mentions a few orders of the world, and he says the gods are the entities that maintain the order. He also talks about the destruction caused by the goddess of destruction, Abernu. To stop the devastation, the demon king of tyranny battled Abernu and seized her power of annihilation. Abernu was transformed into a spell called the Magic Sword of Destruction Venuzdnor. As a result of this, those who should have perished ended up living, and without destruction, there was no creation, and neither was there the creation of any new order. At this point, he says the order of the world would only be disrupted. Therefore, the gods decided to create a new order to destroy the demon king of tyranny. Then, Mr. Erdemaid Ditti John properly introduces himself as the heavenly father god, Nuskalia, the order that creates gods. He shackles the necks of students who take him for play with fire to the extent that they seek help. Anos says nothing will happen to them as long as they have no intention of harming him. Heavenly Father, God Nusgalia says the order that will destroy Anos is the new child of God, and they're here in the academy. Anos asks him what he is scheming, and he says to restore absolute order to the world. Anos tells him to let the students he shackled go because it's not like he'd benefit from killing them, and he replies that it's logical that they die. In that case, Anos brings out the magic sword of destruction which is capable of destroying him, and asks him if he wishes to try. Heavenly Father God, Nusgalia tells him the world will fall apart if he kills him. Then, he starts to bluff when Anos hooks him against the wall with the magic sword of destruction. Anos tells him he thinks he'll get off the hook if he uses the world as his shield. He fades away. Anos chants Agronemt to resurrect him, but with 10% of his divine source, since it would wipe out the world if he left him unable to revive. Anos tells him he could have done it 2,000 years ago, but now he has reincarnated himself into the peaceful era and has learned restraint. Anos tells him to behave well as he continues with the class while watching over him. Sasha wonders how the Heavenly Father God goes on teaching like nothing happened after Anos slashed him. Eleanor tells her the gods have different values than they do because their actions are based on order. Misa asks how teaching at their academy helps maintain order, and Lei tells her the gods always keep their promises with humans and demons. Anos says he doesn't know what the Heavenly Father God is after, but he might have promised someone to teach a class here. Lei remembers him saying the new child of God is at the school. This means that the vessel of the child of God is here and is about to awaken. Eleanor tells Anos that if the Heavenly Father God is talking about a god that will destroy him, it means he'll be born with much magical power. Anos admits that he has to find the child of God and put him in his place. Lei suggests Anos finds him with his demonic eyes, and Anos says it won't work if the child of God doesn't exist yet. Sasha suggests they dig into the backgrounds of all students and teachers. Eleanor says they should split up to carry out the plan. Anos leaves amongst them to talk to Melhis to have him look into the child of God. Eleanor hears a voice and tells them to get started without her. Sasha and Misha are together, and Lei and Misa are together. Then, Lei asks Misa where they can start their research, and she says the transfer students and anyone who just arrived at the academy. It is Ledriano's voice Eleanor heard, so she goes somewhere to heed the call. Ledriano and his crew are in Delhade, and it seems like they discover a troublesome spell, probably something Jerga left behind. While doing the research, Misa asks Lei if the child of God has something to do with what happened 2,000 years ago, but Lei says he's not sure, but he sure knows that Nusgalia is a god who helped Jerga to transform his source into magic. Misa asks Lei if he thinks there will be danger of some kind again, but Lei tells her not to worry that his mission is protecting the people of this peaceful era. Misa says she'd protect Lei's peace by fighting by his side. She says all she seeks is a path that she can walk down with Lei. She says the hero from 2,000 years ago, and who he is now, is the same Lei to her. Lei vows to help her no matter what and where she is. He'll come to her rescue. Finally, they kiss each other. Lei notices someone peeping on them and says it's not classy to do that. A young guy comes out from the corner, apologizes, and introduces himself as Jarad Azrema. He turns to Misa and says, Lady Misa Ilyoroagu, I have come here on orders from your father. Anos plans to hold a ceremony for the second coming of the Demon King, to spread the word across Dilhade that the Demon King has been reincarnated, so he requests the fan unions to sing when the ceremony happens. Anos says the ceremony will be all about the start of a new Dilhad, in which the royals and the hybrids stand hand in hand. They agree, and they set to start rehearsal. All of a sudden, Sasha calls on Anos to inform him that Revest and the others have been attacked, and Misha is healing them at the moment. Revest wakes up and tells them that Miss Manu has been kidnapped by the Age of Chaos, Rinka Theornis. Revest says he cast an Enoi spell on her that will help them track her. Anos says they might be a trap, but it could be a diversionary tactic. Sasha and Misha want to go looking for her, but Anos tells them to be careful, because they're likely facing a demon from 2,000 years ago. Anos senses something is going on in Melhi's house, so he appears there to find out, only for him to find him killed by a guy. The guy laughs and tells Anos that he is a step too late. Anos wants to use the Ingal spell to revive him, but the guy stops it. Therefore, Anos uses the Revive spell to freeze Melhis. Anos turns to the guy and asks him if he is a demon from 2,000 years ago, and the guy says he serves Erdamade, the Blaze Death King. Then, he calls himself Zake Ozma, the Blaze Death King's military advisor. Anos asks him if he's aware that Erdomade has been possessed. Zake says he knows, and says his lord has deliberately entrusted his body to the gods to create Anos's enemy. Anos is not surprised because it does sound like something he would do. Zeke boasts that his powers are no match against Anos's, so he'd like to challenge Anos's wits. He shows Anos how his allies have been captured. Misa and Lei follow Gerard to a place where he shows them the half of a magic sword. She is asking if it's the same one her father gave her when Gerard picks up the sword and slashes her heart. He says he has been ordered by the King of Curses, Kaihilam Jitsa, to take her source. While searching, Eleanor and Zeshia find students lying on the ground with blue faces. Then, they hear a guy laugh as she appears before them. He says she had ingested the student's bit of poison. He addresses himself as Zabro Gaze, the Scarlet Monument King Gilasiris Delo's lieutenant. Sasha and Misha run after a lady with Miss Manu on her shoulder to ask her what she's going to do with her, but she says Miss Manu is a tool for luring them in. She drops Miss Manu on the floor and tells them that she serves the king of the netherworld, Aegis Code. She introduces herself as Rinka Theorns. Following her lord's order, she kills both of them. After Anos sees everything Zake showed him, he can tell that the 4 Eevee royals have allied. Zake tells Anos that he will soon realize the true identity of the one who has the potential to become the child of God. In other words, there's a divine vessel among Anos' subordinates. Zeke says his bargaining chip is the information he possesses, so he asks Anos if he'd be so kind as to take him on. And Anos says yes, and says he hopes Zeke is as prepared as he should be. Still, at Melheis's place, Zeke says Melheis stopped time 1 second after his death, so he could be revived so long as that state continues. He asks if Anos is prepared to use the magical power as his chip, and Anos asks him if he's sure about it. Then, Zake says, if Anos is assuming that's a cheap chip, then he's already under his spell. Anos finds it interesting, and he says he's going to strip Zeke bare. Zeke explains the rule. Anos can make up to 18 guesses of who he believes to be the child of God, and he will confirm whether it's or not. But he can be untruthful with Anos just once. If Anos guesses right, he wins. Zeke's magical power will then be sealed for 5 seconds, but if Zeke wins, Anos won't be able to use his magical power for 5 seconds. And it goes without saying, but 1. Anos cannot ask the same question twice. 2. They cannot attack each other during the match. 3. If Anos forfeits, he loses. Anos changes one of the rules to allow him to make just 9 guesses so he'd make it as fair a fight as possible. Anos tells Zeke that no amount of artificial advantages can ever be enough for him, so Anos takes Zeke on. Zeke agrees, and he chants Zekt, and then the game begins. Gerard sees the necklace on Misa's neck and throws the half-sword away. Lei asks him why he needs Misa's source, and Gerard says because she's the child born by the great spirit Leno. He added that her source contains the power to control all spirits. Lei then asks Gerard to tell them how he came across the half of the magic sword. Zabro laughs while the lying students stand and begin to snarl. He asks Eleanor if the spells he used resemble Ask and Jurga, but Eleanor uses magic to clear the room, and the snarling students fall on the floor. Eleanor happens to hate that magic. Then, Zabro asks her if she's aware that the gods had a hand in her birth, and Eleanor asks him if he's asking about the gods who helped Jerga. Zabro replies yes, to create a vessel. He added that they'd been waiting all this time for a vessel strong enough to carry the power of the gods. Zabro asks them to guess who was born. Misha asks Rinka what she wants with both of them, and she answers that both were brought forth by a god's intentions. Sasha asks her what exactly it means. Misha tells Sasha that when her source was split into 2, a personality was born, one that never should have come into existence, and that's her. Rinka tells them it was the gods who rewrote the magic circle, but there's no need for divine intervention in the infernal realm. Rinka says she'll dispose of her when she awakens. Sasha thanks her for letting them know, but says she is wrong. She says the one who brought them to life wasn't any god. Anos provides 4 among his subordinates who could be the child of God, and those are his guesses. His first guess, the child of God is one of my subordinates, and Zeke says it is correct with a red mark. His second guess is Misha, but he says wrong. The third guess is Sasha, he says wrong. The fourth guess is Zeshia, and he says wrong. The fifth guess is Misa, and he says it is correct. Anos says Zeke seems to have given him the answer to his guess. Zeke says it wouldn't be a battle of wits if it were predictable. Gerard wears a magic shield Genius that curses those who wound its owner and inflicts twice the pain. Lei hit the shield countless times while trying to hit Gerard. Unfortunately, Lei gets slashed. The curse can never be lifted, nor can Lei ever recover unless he destroys this shield. Lei stands in anger and slashes the shield, but Gerard lies. According to Gerard, Lei's source has been destroyed and won't be getting up ever again. Zabro wakes the people from the castle to snarl, and he calls them ghouls. With the help of the Scarlet Monument King, she modifies the Egrams that Aos created. Zabro says they're so powerful that Eleanor and Zashia's sources will rot to the core. Eleanor laments that the magic is deplorable. Eleanor and Zashia find it, and no more ghouls will ever be born if they can destroy it. Both have been surrounded by snarling ghouls and students like Laus, Hein, and Ledriano. Zabro chants Genogleanus, and their magical powers are being sucked away. Once their magical powers are all sucked up, it will be the end for them. Rinka shows her boundless sword, Garmist, and she's using Najira to hide its magical power. She strikes, and it slashes Sasha in the chest, despite her jumping. Misha creates an ice castle. Sasha chants Geo Graze to send fireballs, but Rinka finds her through the fireballs and slashes Sasha from behind. Sasha falls to the ground, and still tries to use her demonic eyes of destruction, but Rinka has sealed her demonic eyes of destruction. Misha holds Rinka with ice chains from behind, but she breaks them and stabs Misha too. Aos has picked all his guesses, but none of his subordinates is the child of God. Aos says Zeke has planted a fake memory into his brain. Aos has been searching for an answer that doesn't exist, meaning that Aos is onto him. Then, he teleports some of his men and creates anti-magic barriers. Zeke says, the moment Aos agrees to the Battle of Wits, he knows he already lost. He says they're Zect bars, Aos from attacking his anti-magic barriers. But if Aos forfeits this match, his magical power will be sealed for 5 seconds. Well, Aos forfeits the match. Aos breaks the Zect. Zeke begins the counting of the 5 seconds. He destroys Melhi's source and faces Aos in the 5th seconds, but all his have been beaten down by Aos. Aos asks him why he thinks he could defeat him just because he sealed his magical power. Aos tells him that those memories were implanted in Zeke with his genuine memories. Zeke didn't hesitate to destroy Melhace's source instead of Aos. Aos tells him he might have told him that killing Melhace was his top priority. It can be said that Melhace isn't worth much to the Blaze Death King. Zeke tells Aos to annihilate him. He also says it may have been a mere battle of wits, but he can die having defeated the Demon King of Tyranny. If so, no regrets. Melhace opens the door and he says, game or not. Simply deluding oneself that he'd defeated his lord is nothing short of disrespectful. Misha is trying to get up while he crawls towards Rinka. Rinka says she'll make sure Misha doesn't suffer. Then she attempts to slash Misha's head with the boundless sword, but it gets broken. Misha stands and creates Delsgate, which is a god itself. Gerard tells Lei that if he smashes one of Janias's magic jewels, the curse will destroy Lei's source. Lei angrily stands up and smashes all the jewels in the magic shield Janias. Lei heals and says Gerard should watch his back around people with more than 2 sources. Gerard finds it hard to believe until he looks through Lei and sees 7 sources and the spirit god sword Evan's mama. He recognizes that only Hirokano has 7 sources, but before Gerard knows it, the sword has driven deep in his heart. Eleanor reminds Zabro that she says she'd never forgive her. She chants ask, but Zabro tells her it's useless, since the emotions that she'd convert into magical power can't be brought in here. Eleanor proves her wrong because truly emotions reside in the source. She creates a huge water storm with just the desire inside her source. Zabro goes down while she yells. Rinka finds it hard to believe that Misha could create God itself. Misha chants ice crystals and ice covers up Rinka till she fades away. Lei removes the sword from Gerard and asks him for the last time where he gets the half of the magic sword. Gerard says he can't answer that and shook himself in the head through the neck. He died but looks like he's being reincarnated. After the barrier walls are off, Eleanor chants Theo Ingal to heal the snarling students. Zabro finds it hard to believe that the Blaze Death King's powers are defeated by human magic. Eleanor tells Zabro that the Blaze Death King may be incredible, but she's the Demon King's magic. Misha heals Sasha and falls on Sasha's leg for she uses her energy at the peak stage to fight Rinka. Zeke finds it hard to believe that Melhice is resurrected. Aos tells him he annihilated the fake, but he'd switched out. He claims that he saw with his 2 eyes that the source was genuine. Aos tells him it's a spell that he just learned recently. The womb of origination magic, Eleanor, was created by the gods. Aos created a pseudo-source without studying magic that much, but Zeke didn't see that, because he didn't do his research on Aos. Aos says, the moment he thought about battling him, he'd already lost. Zeke wants to commit suicide so as not to talk, but Aos turns him into a talking bird. Aos asks the bird its purpose for coming here. The bird says its purpose was to reduce even a little of the Demon King of Tyranny's combat power, and that's why it came for Melhice. It's clear to say that the people of Azeshion still believe in and fear Aos Delvia. They seem to believe that Jerga's acts of brutality in the recent war were the Demon King of Tyranny's doing. although they're set to punish Diego, who led the armed forces. Unless they act, it could trigger another conflict. Melhe says he believes it'd be wise to announce that Avos is a fake during the ceremony of the second coming of the Demon King, so that their story will be that Canon and Anos forces to annihilate Avos. Although the hero Canon is thought to have gone missing after the war, Canon should consider attending the ceremony. Anos gathers them all and says the child of God that they're searching for might very well be one of you. Eleanor says the Scarlet Monument King's subordinate said that she was created out of God's intent. Zeshia replies that she doesn't know any gods, but Eleanor is her mommy. Anos says nothing has been settled yet, which means the enemies may be plotting to secretly awaken the true child of God while his eyes are on them. Regarding this matter, Melhis received word from the head of the Unitarians. Anos asks who he is because he was told no one knew his identity. Melhis answers that it's the Demon King of Tyranny's right-hand man, Shin Reglia. Anos asks why he won't show himself, and Melhis says Shin must have a good reason. According to the sent word, Shin awaits Anos in the forest of Great Spirit Aharthurn. Lay becomes surprised and says the King of Curse's subordinate had half of the looting sword on him. Anos collects and joins it with the other half. It's the looting sword Gilionoyes. Lay says he hasn't seen it since that day 2,000 years ago, so it belongs to Shin Reglia. Melhe says he wanted to inform Lord Anos, but he was unable to detect him or his magical power. Anos says he has been really into renovating the underground dungeon. Sasha asks him why, and he says he built a city where 10,000 Zeshia can live. Anos will be heading to Aharthurn. The great spirit Leno should be there too. Lay says they can't take their eyes off Nusgalia. Anos says they're all going to go together, including Nusgalia. He says God always keeps their promises to humans, so Nusgalia won't disobey an order. Their next class will be a field trip to Aharthurn. Anos and his updated crew get to Aharthurn, and the fan unions are glad to have their first indirect transfer, and it happens to be with Sir Anos. Nusgalia tells them to settle down. It's just that God's word is absolute. He tells them that they'll be administering an Aharthurn expedition exam. He says the forest is a spirit, and the way to it depends on the rumors of the time. He says the task for the expedition exam is that the students will search for the rumors and reach the forest within 10 days. He says that when the Lisha meadows surrounding Zayenberg are covered in a mysterious fog, they'll find mischievous spirits lurking there. But all they have to do is make them smile, and they'll show them the way. He says that the rumor is their clue, and then he tells them to offer the gods their gratitude and highest praise, and the exam shall begin. They split up into 4 groups. Sasha and Misha are with Sir Anos, so Sasha asks if being with Sir Anos means that one of them may be the child of God. Anos says the odds are about the same. He says Misha did create a pseudo-god, but she is his descendant. All of a sudden, they hear the voice of a young lady being tortured by some men. One of the men says he heard how the young lady is always talking up a storm about a forest that doesn't exist, but she insists that Aharthurn exists. They attempt to beat her down when Anos tries to stop them gently, but they won't let go, so he forces them to stop. He rescues the young lady, and she thanks him. Anos asks her if she knows the way to Aharthurn, and she's surprised to finally get to see someone who believes it exists. Anos tells her that he's been there before, but one needs to know about its rumors before they can enter the forest. Anos promises to give her whatever she wants if she agrees to tell him what the rumors are. She asks if she could go along with them. Anos agrees, but asks her what she wants to do there. She confesses that she lost her memory, and she knew that there was something she needed to do when she came to the town, but then she heard the rumor about Aharthurn, and she wanted to go there. While she talks, Anos looks through her and can tell that she's not a demon. He tells her that he'll take her with them. She introduces her as an information broker, and she's gathered all kinds of rumors about Aharthurn. Anos asks if there's a rumor about a mysterious fog, and she replies yes. Then explains that fog covers the meadows during an eclipse, and there will be one 9 days from now. She says about 3 minutes past noon, which means that they don't have a lot of time to make the spirits smile. Anos tells Misha to inform Lay and the others. Then, he chants Ikunias to move the moon to cover the sun. Then Anos teleports them to where the fog is rising. The young lady is happy, and Sasha says Anos' magic doesn't seem to surprise her. The young lady doesn't seem to be because it feels familiar. Sasha asks her if she remembers her name, and she says Lena, she thinks. Anos asks Lena if she knows any rumors about the spirits luring in the fog. She says the spirits, Tithi, love anything new. so he suggests that they can get them to smile if they show them something cutting edge. Misha suggests a plan, but Sasha finds it ridiculous. Lei and his group find them, and they say there was an eclipse that gave them a start. Lei tells everyone to use their hidden abilities because they've just begun. They tried several means to make the spirits come out and smile until the fan unions arrived with the club of Anasu they bought in town, but Anos told them to be careful, so they began to yell, "It's the real thing." Fortunately, the spirits show up, mimic them, and smile eventually. Anos calls on the Tithi, and they recognize him. He tells them to show him the way to a Harthurn, and they gladly agree to take them to the Great Spirit Forest. Enos turns to Nangalia and tells him to see it up close so that he can keep an eye on him better. Newsgalia tells him not to be so wary, that he's only going to lead the class since it's an order. The spirits, Tithi, finally lead them to the Great Spirit Forest, and then Anos asks them if they know a demon in the forest named Shin Reglia, but they don't seem to know him. Just in a moment, Tithi sniffed and looked through Lena, and they say she looked like Leno, the Great Spirit Leno, the mother of all spirits, but Leno passed away a few years ago. Misa remembers what Garad said to her, and she becomes sad. The Tithi sniffs Misa, and they can tell that she smells like Leno. She quickly says she was told that she's the Great Spirit Leno's child by birth. She tells her name, and then asks them who the father is, but the Tithi sigh and say the Spirit King does not allow them to tell. Lei says the Spirit King didn't exist 2,000 years ago. The Tithi direct them to a classroom, almost beneath a gigantic rock. According to the Tithi, some demons are always in the classroom. They think no one's there. Then, a man shows up, and Anos can tell who he is. The Scarlet Monument King Gilesisris. Eleanor becomes angry, but he says he didn't intend to that suck, but there is so much pressure from above. Anos says he never thought Gilesisris would serve another demon. He says Anos should judge things by outdated, shallow criteria. He says he has surpassed Anos by far. The Tithi refer to the other 4 evil royals as the bad kids. They say they'll be there soon. They come into the scene. Igris says unless the necessary sacrifices are made, there will only be more additional sacrifices. Anos asks Igris when he allies himself with the Scarlet Monument King and the King of Curses, and he says it's the spirit's handiwork. A bell rings, and Lena can tell that it is an union. The door through which they enter seals off, and they're trapped in there. A head forms from a tree in front of them, and he identifies himself as Enunian and also describes the place as the spirit's school building. Everyone's seated to hear what Enunians got for them. It says they teach about various spirits and their histories. He says to enter means they've matriculated, and they cannot leave until they've graduated. And himself, Great Tree Spirit of Education, will be teaching the class. He says that those who fail will be spirited away, thanks to the hidden wolf Genel. Also, they have a zero-tolerance policy regarding violence, and anyone who defies the policy will be forced to traverse the back of the long serpent, Ibeteo. Anos asks what they have to do to graduate, and he says they must pass its trials. Those who take 3 tests and get an average of 80 are eligible to undergo the Spirit's trial. Pass that, and they'll be granted an audience with the Spirit King, and those who succeed can then graduate. Anos asks about this that has been spirited away. Enunian says if they plead their case to the Spirit King, maybe he'll return it to them. Anos requests they just take the 3 tests in one go, and Enunian says to pass, they must score at least 90, and he disappears. Scarlet Monument King tells Anos that the test will be quite difficult. Anos tells him to bet on it. He and his crew will pass the tests. Anos says if he wins, the Scarlet Monument King will have to tell him about the one above from whom he receives his orders. Scarlet Monument King says he wins, he shall claim Anos' source. They seal it with Zect. Sasha asks if they have a chance of winning considering it's a spirit test. Anos says they can start learning now, and there's someone amongst them who is well informed. He turns to Lena and asks her if she knows she's a spirit, and she replies, yes. She says she got a vague sense of it when they got there, and now she's certain. She spoke to Enunian before he arrived, so Anos doesn't believe it was due to hearsay. She claims that she remembered that all of a sudden. Anos tells her to find the trigger so that she may find a way to restore her memories. Anos helps her to empty her mind and remembers a lot of things about the spirits, and she says he has to, the Spirit King, but she can't remember. Misa asks if there are things people can't remember under his spells, and he says Lena's case might not be ordinary amnesia, but there are other ways of recovering those memories. She appreciates Anos and says she thinks she might have met Anos before. Lena takes them to the Forest of Books, where they can study hard against their test. Lena says the green books are all about spirits, and the questions will come from there. Anos brings down all the books at once and reads everything in a blink of an eye. Others begin to study as much as they can. Anos tells Lena that he can't find anything that talks about her in the books, but there's a page that catches Anos' eyes. Love Fairy Fan. The spirit that gives shape to unrequited love and brings people together. But the page has been ripped out, so Aos could tell that the page has been torn out for a long time. It's the test day, and Union says the test questions can be found in the book Fairy Leland and the time limit is 1 hour. The test begins. While Aos attempts his test, he figures Lena is finding it hard to do hers. And Union has demonic eyes which he can use to see all foul play, and is bolstered by stone monuments. While Scarlet Monument King bluffs, Aos stands up from his seat to check others' tests, and finds out that the questions are the same. Scarlet Monument King calls Union's attention to tell him to fail Aos for cheating, but Union says he can't. He couldn't, because he had received Anos's answers. Scarlet Monument King didn't see him writing. The time is up, and all answers for each student are submitted to 3 to scan through so that Union can announce the result. Igid Code, 85, Kihylum, 81, Giliciris, 80, Zacia Bianca scores 150 points out of a perfect score of 100, and other new students score a perfect score of 100. Scarlet Monument King stands up to go against the result, because he feels there must have been some kind of foul play. Union tells him that his eyes were wide open during the test, so no foul play occurred. He requests for the answers to be checked, and he sees wrong answers being ticked right for Aos and his crew. Aos tells him that even a blank page becomes a score of 100 before the magic sword of destruction. Aos picks Giliciris' book and uses Ravid to check through, and finds out that the questions were rewritten only during the actual test. This means Giliciris must have spoken directly to the book spirits, and gone behind both Mai and Union's backs. However, Aos wins, and Giliciris needs to answer to honor their contract. Aos asks if his superior is the Spirit King, and Giliciris affirms it. Aos asks if he used the Spirit King to engage in foul play, but he says Aos has no proof that it was him. At the end of the first trial, Union grants everyone the right to undergo trial. That is, they all passed. Lord Aos and his crew managed to pass this level. All thanks to Lord Aos, they hope to pass their next trial, so that they'll get the Spirit King. This makes Zacia nervous. Melheis tells Aos that they are ready to hold the ceremony for the second coming of the Demon King. During this ceremony, they will announce the fact that Aos Delvia was a sham over today's magical broadcast. Aos tells him to leave the broadcast to Elio, and that he should stay out of sight. The next game is the Spirit's Trial, in which various spirits will be tasking the students with trials. To pass in this trial, they must overcome them all and reach Union's top. The first trial is the Staircases of Gunier. They are to choose one of the 20 staircases of Gunier and proceed to the upper floors. Only 5 of them lead to the top, where the Spirit King resides. Destroying the walls or the use of Gatom is not permitted. Stairs heading up when you open the door will lead to the top, but stairs heading down will only lead you back here. This is such a game of luck. They're bound to fail. Aos finds the trial amusing. Giliciris mocks Aos, but Aos tells him that he tampered with the first game. And now the Spirit Trial. Aos and his crew are 16 in number, so 4 of them will lead each child. But this will all depend on whatever the 4 royals guess, right? Aos says, judging by what the Scarlet Monument King had to say, they can assume that he's done some manipulating. Misha said they could win if they could give Lord Aos their winning ticket. He thinks it could be the way, so he splits his source together with his crew's sources and splits it equally, which causes his crew to appear as him. And Union asks him what he's trying to do, but he says he's trying to make sure there's no foul play. Amos says the Union could fail them on purpose if they are inclined, but he says he'd never do that. Aos tells him that the great spirit Leno's life was at stake upon knowing that spirits wouldn't shy away from doing anything if it was to protect his mother. Union sighs, and Aos tells him that he'll show him his true form when he opens the door. But it shouldn't matter to Union if he hasn't rigged this. Union agrees to humor Aos if that will satisfy him. Aos and 3 others pick the right door. Seems like his plan worked out better than he thought. Lena chose the wrong door, so she found herself right in front of Aos. She remembers that there's a hidden passageway in the staircase. Aos quickly conveys the message to others to find the hidden passageway that should lead to the path to the top. Aos asks Lena if she has gone through a spirit trial. She's not sure, but she has a feeling that she's been to the top before. Aos tells her to make sure to inform him if anything comes back to her. Then, they both walk through the staircase, then through a forest until they get to a path where Lena senses a door. They pass through the door and come out in another door, which leads to a flower garden. Lena feels like she's been to that top more than once. They saw a sward covered with growing plants, and she picked the flower, then she became Sade. She says there's something she should have to Spirit King. Jitsa, who I've been waiting for, Aos appears to him and recognizes him as the Demon King. She'd prefer to talk there because they can be free of the spirit's surveillance there. For him to wait for Aos means he's at odds with the spirits. He reports that Lord Kaihalam has been spirited away by the hidden wolf Genol, which means that only the King of Curses' source has vanished. Lena is lost because she can see the King of Curses, Kihilam Jitsa. Aos tells her that he has a split personality, Kihilam and his lover, Jitsa. He has both personalities and sources. Jitsi says they didn't fail their trials, but it was on the Spirit King's order. The Spirit King bullied Lord Jarad into doing his bidding if he wanted to get the King of Curses back. That's why he went to Delsgade. Aos asks where Jarad got half of a magic sword. Jitsi says it's most likely from the Spirit King. He told him to use it as bait. Aos asks if Aegez is involved too, and she says Aegez is also held hostage, and that's why he's in the school building. Aos asks who the Spirit King is, and Jitsa says she was being told he's been protecting the spirits in place of the great spirit Leno, who vanished after Aos was reincarnated. She shows Aos what the Spirit King looks like. The man who appeared at the Magic Sword Tournament is the Spirit King who is disguised as Aos Delvia. Aos wonders what he is after. Jitsa begs Aos to save Lord Kaihilam even though they don't get along. Aos says his subordinates have also vanished, so he'll have Kaihilam along with them. Lei calls Aos to tell him that he was able to join Misa so they'd be moving together. Lei carries Misa in his arm and he hops higher, and they land in an unknown place, but they find a door. All of a sudden, the hidden wolf, Genol, appears right in front of them. It tells them to pass, and he won't task them with a trial as they pass. The door opens, and they go through it. They see a large building ahead of them. They enter, and as they walk through, they hear a voice that says, "They've got this far." It's the Spirit King sitting on his throne. Lei asks the Spirit King if he bears grudges against the Demon King. Unfortunately, the man said they'd have to undergo a trial to speak with His Majesty. The trial is for Lei to battle the Spirit King, and if he can split his mask, he will pass. Lei is allowed to only use his own body and spirit as his weapons. The spirits are swords, and he can only use them if he's capable of wielding them. Then, the fight begins. Genol tells Aegis that he will be tasked with the Hidden Wolf trial. Only the one who captures it first will be allowed to pass. In the Hidden Wolf, Genol asks Aos if they should force it to rescue the ones who were spirited away. Aos asks the wolf if it knows how to go about rescuing them. Then it says it wouldn't propose joining forces if it knows it. Aos creates a barrier to cover Lena and tells her to stay right there. Then, the trial begins. In the Hidden Wolf, Genol shows its body of illusion, so Aegis doesn't get a hit. But when Aegis finds out that it's an illusion, he tells it to show its true form. It calls itself the spirit of vanishment, and it shows itself to no one. Aos chants Riga Shrade to fight the wolf. Unfortunately, Lena vanished. The voice said it would capture the Hidden Wolf, Genol, and the voice says those who vanished must be inside his body. It also says they can create an entrance with their magic spear. After Aos attempts, both Aegis and Aos are allowed to pass through the door. The fight between the Spirit King and Lei is getting heated, but he overpowers Lei. Misa, being a half-spirit, can combat the Spirit King. She uses spirit magic. Then she shows up to Lei in her true form to deliver him a sword. With the sword, Spirit King is still a little to slash Lei's sword. Lei begins to think it's someone he knows from before. He knows Lei couldn't use Theo Aska, layering true love into one, then converting it into magical power. Lei chants Theotoriaros using the hero's secret technique to slash the Spirit King's sword and mask. The Spirit King's body heals, and his sword renews. As the spirit attempts to stab Lei, Misa comes through for him. Lord Aos enters the huge building, but he meets Scarlet Monument King on the throne, who welcomes him to his research lab. Aos tells him he doesn't have time to fool around with him. He tells Aos that it's a spirit trial, but he'll never reach the Spirit King's castle if he ignores it. The trial is that both of them will vie for supremacy. They can only use the magical power of those monuments which form around them. Then, they'll see whose magical technology reigns supreme in a fair fight, says Scarlet Monument King. Scarlet Monument King boasts of his doubled magical power, and he attacks Aos with it, and announces that Aos failed. Then Aos appears behind him and tells him that he can't make up for the gap in their abilities because he has twice the magical power. Aos strikes him with the same magic power. Aos tells him ancient magic is for the weak since it focuses on efficiency. Far from being unlimited, it reaches its limits faster. However, the bottom of the abyss that Scarlet Monument King strove for us was nothing but a shallow stream that Lord Aos long since passed 2,000 years ago. Aos finds one Canaan source in the building, and he chants Ryelwente to bring Lei back to life. Aos tells Lei that he never thought he'd lose with his holy sword sealed. Aos heals him, and Misa is what he asks first. But Aos tells him that it's safe to assume that the Spirit King took her with him. Lei describes the way the Spirit King fights, and his swordsmanship style is similar to that of Shin. He added that his head and shoulders are stronger than he was 2,000 years ago. Sasha and others come to the scene to show Aos the Delvia's magical broadcast. It's the Spirit King announcing himself as the Aos Delvia, Demon King of Tyranny during the ceremony. He calls on the 7 Elder Demon Emperor and says to the people who are, and they bow before him, and address him as the Aos Delvia, Demon King of Tyranny, the one who rules all over. They pledge to him. He informs all royals to kill the Misfit, Aos Voldegoed. Aos tells his crew that that's not the Spirit King. He shows his crew that he met Aos Delvia. Aos meets with Aos Delvia, who happens to be Misa. Aos tells her he knew about everything from the start, but just wanted to get to the root of it all. Gerard and the Spirit King's goal was to put Misa in danger, to forcibly awaken her true form. She makes it clear to Aos that demons all over Delvia now believe that she's the Demon King of Tyranny. He also mentions why she hasn't killed him yet, which is because she needs more time to get her hands on the magic sword of destruction. The 7 Elder Demon Emperor attempts to shut him up with attacks by fire, but he laughs that they can never take away who he is, no matter how hard they try. Lastly, he tells her to go on and wallow in her dreams of glory until the real Demon King returns. Aos makes it clear to the fan unions that it's not like Misa turns into him. What it means is that from the start, half of Misa was created from Aos Delvia's rumors and lore. Lei says he was the one who spread the lore because he created that false Demon King. Aos tells him that there's no time to dwell on the past, but they have to defeat Aos Delvia sooner rather than later. Aos added that the radical royalists will likely follow her, and as it stands now, the hybrid demons are in danger. So she tells Aos that part of Misa from Aos Delvia is gone, then she won't be able to survive, and she'll get spirit disease. Aos says all they have to do is find a way to have Misa and destroy only Aos. Lei used to give up 2,000 years ago, but this time, he's not giving up on anything. All of a sudden, Union locks everywhere up. Union says he can't allow them to attack Lady Leno's child. He tells them that they have to take the extra class cocoon. He says they'll never get out of there unless they take this class to the end. Aos tells him that he can't comply. Aos attempts to use his violent magic, but Union tells him that all violence is strictly forbidden in this world, so he shouldn't waste his time. Aos tells him that his violence is no joke. He breaks through a path that leads outside, and they move out of the sealed room. Aos' subordinate from 2,000 years ago, Nigit, who had supposedly vanished, comes to the scene with 2 guards. As Nigit attempts to attack Aos, Aegis handles the attempts. Aegis says Lena is safe, and he has rescued the other from the vanishment spell. But things have gotten complicated now. Seems like that child of God has seized Amos's subordinates from 2,000 years ago. Aegis added that half of them are headed to Dellsgate at this moment. He tells Aos to let him handle it from here, and he won't destroy them out of respect for Aos' leniency. Aos says after 2,000 years, Aegis seems to have mellowed, and Aegis replies that they just happen to share the same goal. That's all. Aos and his crew find Lena, and he asks her if she knows the way out. Lena says she doesn't think they can exit the normal way right now. Well, she calls on the Tethi and asks them to get them out of the place, but they seem to be told not to let the Demon King and his friends out. Besides, Aos Delvia has awakened, and they need to protect Leno's child. Lena begs them to help her because she has to see someone no matter what, and they agree, but it has to be kept secret from everyone. They help out of the place and hope to see Lena again. The next thing to do is to get to the outside of the barrier by using direct transfer. Then they head to Dellsgate from there. Lena asks if she can follow them, and Aos allows it. Although, Aos still feels like she's involved in the incident. They get to the gate of the castle, but they have to hide when they hear footsteps approaching from inside. It's Elio Ludowel, a royal who led the Mid-Haze forces in the war between Azishion Cabs Dilhad. Elio tells his men to split up and smoke out the enemy. Aos appears to Elio and tells him that his defense is quite lax. Aos says he might as well be inviting him to invade. Immediately, Elio and his men bow to Aos. Elio says most members of their forces are now followers of Aos, except for him and some others. He says those who are unaware that Aos is the true Demon Kong are the most vulnerable. But Eleanor says they need to be convinced that Aos Delvia is a fake. Sasha asks Elio about the 7 Elder Demon Emperors and his other subordinates. Aos says, according to lore, the demons from 2,000 years ago are still serving the Demon King, and that must make Avis's authority that much stronger. Aos asks Elio, what is going on in the city? And he says, the city has been enveloped by Damara, a spell that implants the will of Aos Delvia, and the demon royalty, who have proclaimed her as the Demon King of Tyranny, is particularly susceptible to the spell, since Aos Delvia orders they kill the hybrids and the Misfit, just like the Ask of old. It has the effect of absorbing magic power from hybrid demons. Already, some royalists in the city have gone berserk, and it could soon escalate into a riot. Anos's parents are sad, but they know better than anyone else that Aos hasn't done anything wrong. They believe he'll come back home, safe and sound. Miss Amelia's not settled since she has been turned into a hybrid by Aos, even now that hybrids are being killed. She's seen peeping while Avos's men are taking out some hybrids like her. She runs for her life, but she eventually gets it. She claims to be a royal, but they torture her even before they start to take her soul. Being tortured, she remembers how worst it can be when being tortured like a low-life hybrid. After heavy torture, they begin to absorb her magic power when Anos's mother comes to the scene and tells them to stop it and let the girl go. One of them recognizes her as Anos's mother, so they leave Miss Amelia and decide to make an example of her to teach Aos a lesson. Anos's father arrives at the scene to help his wife, but they all get in the mess as they can't handle the royals. One of the royals says they're going to tear Anos's father limb from limb and send the pieces off to that misfit. He keeps laughing until he realizes that Aos is already behind him. Aos picks the three of them and dismembers them into hundreds of pieces. His parents are glad to see their son again, at the same time sad that Aos Delvia is trying to kill him, but he says it's just a misunderstanding and it will be cleared up soon. Aos tells Lena the house is a barrier that he created, beyond even Aos Delvia's reach. Anos's mother thanks Miss Amelia for saving her, and tells her to make herself at home till the chaos in town settles in a few days. Anos's mother asks her what her name is, and she says, Emilia. Anos's mother tells her to come and have some delicious snacks. Aos and his crew begin to think of a way out, because Aos Delvia's aim is vivid enough. The first is to exhaust Anos's magic power, and the second is to stall for time so they can steal the magic sword of destruction. They wonder why she can't steal it right away, since she's a demon king of tyranny. Aos says it's because there are no rumors or legends surrounding the magic sword of destruction. Aos rarely draws it, and everyone who's seen it has perished. But still there is a legend that Delsgate is the demon king of tyranny's castle. Aos must devise a way to obtain Venusnor by using both Delsgate's and her own magic power, which means that Aos Delvia can't avail herself of any place not in the lore. Eleanor seems to know the place, and she quickly says the basement where Zeshia and the others live. Aos says he added that part of Delsgate after he was reincarnated, so it's beyond their reach. Sasha asks if Melhis knows about it, but Aos says he never told him about the structure of the underground city. Aos creates the path which they're going to pass to the underground. Aos tells the fan union to stay with his parents. Then he turns to Emilia. Aos asks her if she'd want to live a royal life and fight alongside Aos Delvia to eliminate hybrids, considering that she already had the taste of both sides. Aos asks her if she would believe that she's a noble, if only her royal status could be restored. Aos says if she can feel that way, he will turn her back now and allow her to go to Aos Delvia. She doesn't know what to say, so she starts crying. Aos thanks her for protecting her mother, and then he leaves. In the underground city, it seems to be filled with happy people. Aos has recreated the townscape from 2,000 years ago. Aos takes them to a place that leads to the underground dungeon in the original demon castle. Aos says he's sure that the enemy is also prepared for him to show up from here. Through the path that leads to the underground dungeon, Sasha says they need to hurry before Aos Delvia gets her hand on the magic sword of destruction and how they can get Misa back. Aos hears a footstep ahead of them, so he holds Sasha still. It's Lady Luch and her guard, Revest and Miss Menu. Lady Luch tells the guards not to let their guards down because they might have already gotten it. She chants with Shua to trace anybody in the direction she blows, but Aos and his crew remain invincible, so the magic passes them. While they walk past them, Aos is surprised to see Revest and Miss Menu. He also sees the Misfit symbol on Revest's uniform. He holds Revest on the shoulder, and he looks back. Lady Luch moves towards Revest to ask him what the problem is, and Revest says she should let him sweep the area a little longer because the enemies may have left some traces. Miss Manu added that they would have left footprints here, and she thinks it would be worthwhile to investigate. Lady Luch leaves it to both of them to do, and she tells the other guards to search down below. After they leave, Aos and his crew show themselves. Miss Manu and Revest are glad to see him alive. Revest says he knew Aos would notice his badge. They tell him that most of the royals are under Demera's spell, even Lord Melhis. The children in white have been locked up as magic power nourishment. Miss Manu says they've to do something about Aos Delvia right away. Aos says he needs to take care of two things first. The masked demon called the Spirit King, Nausgalia, took over Erdemaid's body, along with Aos Delvia. He wants to know where those three are. He added that he's going to use the ultimate time magic, Revaulon, in the treasure house ahead. Sasha asks him what exactly he wants to investigate using time magic, and he replies to the great spirit Leno to know why she ends up dying. The other is the Spirit King. He's most likely Shin, but he wants to know what happened to him. And finally, Misa. He wants to know how she was created. When a half-spirit, half-demon is born, half of her source is made up of brand new rumors and legends. Misa's source is based on Aos Delvia's rumors. Those were generated 2,000 years ago, spread by the hero Kanan after he was reincarnated, meaning that Misa must have been born 2,000 years ago, but she only has 15 years worth of memories. Lei says she doesn't know a thing about the mythical age. Well, there has to be a reason for that. The same thing goes for Shin. Aos wonders why Shin becomes the Spirit King and grows hostile towards him. Misha says he might be protecting Misa. Aos says if the rumors and legends surrounding the Demon King of Tyranny cease to exist, Misa will come down with Spirit Plague and eventually vanish. That's why Aos Delvia appeared at the Magic Sword tournament in disguise and concealed Lei's plan. Aos says the strong link between Shin and Misa is the great spirit Leno. It was likely her death that everything was in motion. Aos says he's going to go back in time 2,000 years and find out for sure. Lei says, even if adds the spirit god's sword, it won't be enough to send him back 2,000 years. Aos says, that is why he is heading to the treasure house. Aos acquired a scythe when he defeated the guardian god of time, and combining that and their power might be enough to send him back 2,000 years. But as Revellon requires massive amounts of magic power, it can't be hidden with Najira. To ensure that the demons don't catch on, they'll have to separate them as much as possible. Revest suggests a way to separate them. He tells Aos to use attack magic on me, something that can't be healed. Aos agrees, but he says it will be more painful than anything that he's ever felt before. Miss Manu doesn't want that to happen to her students, but Revest says they'll never deceive them otherwise. Then, she agrees. Aos places a strong curse that can't be healed with magic on Revest as planned. Lady Luch comes to the scene and meets Miss Manu trying to heal Revest. Miss Manu tells her that Aos and his subordinates are heading for the upper floors. Lady Luch tells her guards to head upstairs to check it. Lady Luch tells Miss Manu to come with her. They can revive him later. Aos says who knew Revest wouldn't fall for Demera, despite believing in the Demon King of Tyranny. Revest says that's why the Demon King of Tyranny that he believes in obtained his powers so that he could protect the weak. He says Aos Delvia, someone like him would stoop to such vile tactics, and there's no way that he could be their founding ancestor. Aos agrees that Aos Delvia doesn't stand a chance against even a misfit like himself, and he's going to prove it. Aos promises to make Revest's wishes come true. Aos is going to change history when he makes it back 2,000 years with Revellon, and then he's going to change history, even though it's not going to be that simple. Aos asks if there are any significant conflicts between the existing past and present, then history can't be modified. Aos is going to find out what happened to Shin and others, and that's the most he can do. They carry it out as planned, and he has existed for the back 2,000 years. Shin and Leno are walking by the roadside when he waits and looks up. Leno asks if anything is the problem, but Shin says he's fine. They continue their walk. Aos and his crew arrive in Gyrodite. Lei says from the looks of the city, it's almost certainly 2,000 years ago. Aos says it's right after he was reincarnated. Aos says Leno should be returning soon, and Shin is accompanying her under his orders. Sasha tells him to use his power to find out where they are. Aos says if he uses too much magic power, the people of this era might notice. Aos tells Lei to conceal him with his source, and he does it. Aos conceals himself using Lionel. They head to the city to find food stalls to do shopping. They manage to find a food stall to get holy light candy. A few moments later, Leno wanders around the food stall, and Shin with the mask on his face. Shin says she should stop wandering because if something happens, he might not be able to handle it. All the holy light candy has been sold out, and she blames him because it's Shin's fault. Shin says running makes it even more distracting for me. She runs towards him and tells him to keep his mask on so that he won't think that he's a demon. It will call for Trouble. Shin says all he'd have to do is slash them. She blames Shin for not meeting up for the holy light candy. Aos says they seem to have grown close along the way. Zixia walks up to her to give her 2 of their holy light candies. Then, Eleanor says they can have both. Leno collects it and thanks little Zishai. In return, Leno gives her cookies. They thank each other, and Leno and her Shin leave. Aos and his crew decide to follow them, not too close to avoid being sliced off by Shin. Aos tells Lena that the masked man is the spirit man. Then, he asks her if she remembers anything about him. Lena says there's nothing to say, but she has a feeling that something's about to open. The next morning, they throw sweets in the river and transfer them into the forest. When Leno and Shin get home, the Teethy quickly runs up to her to tell them that the spirits are going to get eaten up and the forest is going to dry up. They see the divine beast Gwen. Aos and his crew are watching them behind a long tree as they get attacked by the wolves. Shin tells Leno to stay back so he kills the animals and doesn't touch her. Aos makes use of Sasha's demonic eyes to fight some of the wolves, especially the one who wants to attack her. Leno knows somebody is behind the tree. Aos comes out from behind the tree and introduces himself as Anochu Poltikol. Then, His crew came out too. Anoshu says they're just traveling entertainers. Anoshi tells Sasha to show them some of the tricks. She decides to do her demonic eyes the way Anos does. This makes her happy. Leno looks like Anoshu, and she says he looks like the Demon King Anos. Anoshu says he is the Demon King of Tyranny as a young boy. Leno asks them what they are doing in the bush because no ordinary demon could have climbed over that wall. Anoshu says he breaks the wall. To survive in this era as a traveling entertainer, a certain amount of power is necessary. Misha says she's a traveling entertainer who's stronger than the 4 evil royals. Leno asks Shin what she thinks about them. Shin says Anos is Anoshu Poltikoal, a traveling entertainer. Leno seems surprised, so she asks Shin if he's met him before, and he answers yes. Leno says a troop of demons, humans, and spirits. Anoshu says laughter knows no borders. The gap between species is a trivial matter. Leno says she doesn't know Lena, but Lena, on the other hand, has memories of the place. Anosh asks Leno if they could stay there for a while. She even says they can stay as long as they like. Leno asks if she could talk to Anoshu. Leno tells Anoshu that Lena is the love fairy Fran. The love fairy wanders about seeking their memories, and when they realize it, they vanish. Leno tells Anos not to tell her who is. All of a sudden, a huge animal breaks into the house. Lei handles the animal's mouth, but he cannot draw out his sword. Anos tells Shin to produce the unique sword Sigshesta, but Shin says it's a sword he can't lend to a mere traveling entertainer. Leno, who is scared, orders Shin to give them the unique sword. Shin says he has never seen anyone that ever wields besides himself and his lord. Anoshi collects the sword and says Lei will be the third. He gently throws the sword to Lei, who chants as Sigshesta, and he slashes the monster. Upon seeing this, Shin asks Lei why he didn't take part in the Great War when he has such skills, and Lei says he likes swords, but he hates war. Shin says he'd lend Lei the sword for as long as they are here. The following morning in the forest, Leno wonders how the divine beasts got into the forest. Shin says it simply means that the wall is a powerful curse to the gods. Anos says they must have snuck in before the wall was built. Leno has this feeling that it could be Nangalia, and wonders if he is still inside the forest. Shin calms her and tells her that his mother has ordered him to protect her, and will remain by her side until the threat that it's all gone. Leno says Shin is stubborn, but can be sweet sometimes. Shin answers that if she feels that way toward him, then it's due to his master's mercy. Just in a moment, the Teethi come to the scene to report Grandma's current issue to Lenu. They say Grandma is going to vanish soon. Leno says they should all see her off. The Grandma recognizes Anoshu Poltikol and introduces herself as Great Tree Spirit Megalonov, a spirit who bestows the wisdom to survive great wars upon humans. She sheds off leaves to Anoshu Poltikol and his crew to grant them wisdom to fight, but looks like Anoshu doesn't need it. Anoshu asks her if her rumors and lore expired since she'll soon vanish, and she says there is something she can teach Anoshu other than fighting. She says there's another situation that calls for a spirit to expire, and that is when the spirit has betrayed her rumor and lore. She says her lore about her granting humans the wisdom to battle demons, but she focuses on the wisdom for humans and demons to coexist. Then, her leaves start to shed off like it's her dying time. Leno apologizes for being selfish to Grandma, and Grandma says the great tree for a great war is bound to be forgotten after it's all over. She pats Leno and tells her that the day will come when she'll have to make that choice herself. Lastly, she tells her that every spirit's fate is to either protect her rumors and lore or betray them, and protect what's precious to her, and she vanishes. Leno cries that her tears fall on the floor and bears the great tree. Shin feels sorry for Leno and wants to stop her tears, but he doesn't know what to say. Leno asks Shin if the Demon King orders him to comfort her, and then she says she doesn't cry when she's sad because her tears become spirit. She takes them to a school owned by a new member of the family, Great Tree Teacher, Inyunyan. She says that violence is forbidden inside the tree, so they don't need to be worried about divine beast attack. Anoshu asks Leno if she's able to give birth to spirits at will, and she answers that she may be the Great Spirit Mother, but she can't do it at will. She says her condition is more like her emotions spill out. She says some spirits are born without having anything to do with her, which is the same thing for Lena. Leno asks Anoshu if he'll be staying in Aharthurn for a while, and Anoshu says they're trying to impose on her if she doesn't mind. She grants it joyfully and says they don't get many traveling entertainers here, so she thinks everyone will be thrilled. Then she calls Shin to let them exit the classroom. Anoshu tells Lei and Misha to keep an eye on both Leno and Shin because there's something he needs to check out. Anoshu tells Zixia to search for a green book that contains a passage about Fran, the love fairy. Now that they're in this era, they could see the book before the page was torn out, Leno asks Shin what he'll be doing when he's done protecting her, and he says there's no point living in an era where he has no master to serve, so he says he might follow his master and be reincarnated 2,000 years from now. They both pass through the invincible door to the other flower garden where Leno shows Shin tear flowers, flowers that have absorbed her tears. Shin asks if the flowers are the ones that bore the great tree when she cried earlier. She added that if tear flowers bear fruit without withering, they can transform rumors and lore into spirits, and that's why they need to be suffused with love so that they don't dry up. She drops the flowers on the floor and drops a few tears on them, and they grow. She gives Shin to try it out, and he waters the flowers with no smile on his face, and the flowers start to dry up. Leno tells him to show the flowers some love, like smiling. She tells him to feel the love for the Demon King as he waters the flowers. He tells Leno that it's the Demon King who saved his life. Shin served him not out of love, but out of gratitude. His body has always been and always will be a sword and nothing more. While they talk, the Teethy come to the scene calling Shin Old Man Sword and to pay together with them. He saved them not long ago, so they've grown attached to him. All the other spirits show up as well, and Leno tells him to play tag with the spirits. He agrees to play the game, and he catches them all. After the game, Leno says he's like a spirit because he's the sword spirit who's forgotten what love is. They want to play the game again when they hear a voice say they have a guest, who calls himself the Blaze Death King Erdemaid. He says he has something to tell them about the gods. The Blaze Death King Erdemaid says he has brought them some good news. He says he knows where the Heavenly Father god Nusgalia is. He says Nusgalia came to him with a proposal the other day, and what he is after is Leno. He says Nusgalia is determined to use her womb to give birth to the child of God to kill the demon. Anos 2,000 years from now. Shin quickly points his sword at the Blaze Death King Erdemaid and asks him for his answer to the request from Nusgalia, and he says he expresses his interest, but Shin injures him with his sword. The Blaze Death King Erdemaid laughs and says that the Demon King is itself flawed. Anoshu and the Nekron sisters are somewhere around the forest, listening to everything the Blaze Death King Erdemaid has said. He keeps provoking Anoshi since he has some inexplicable hopes for him. The Blaze Death King Erdemaid says he's always been the Demon King's enemy, no matter what. He then mentions that being the Demon King's enemy doesn't make him an ally of the gods either. He says he doubts that the child of God can become a worthy opponent of the Demon King, and that's why he's informing Leno and Shin about Nusgalia's scheme. He says they need to go all out and stop the child of God from being born. He says if its birth can't be stopped by Shin and Leno, then the child of God must be an opponent worthy of taking on the Demon King. He then says he'll be their ally until that moment arrives. Shin tells Leno that if they can prevent the birth of the child of God, Blaze Death King Erdemaid will be disappointed and lose interest. Shin tells him to take him to where Nusgalia is. He takes them somewhere near a spring where he says the gods conform to the rules of order when Shin says he couldn't feel the presence of Nusgalia. He tells them that a condition must be met for Nusgalia to appear. He asks Leno to come to the center of the spring, and she does. Then, he says the Heavenly Father god Nangalia is the order that produces gods, and he creates the Blaze Death Hourglass to put a curse on Leno. He says the life of the Cursed One ends when every grain of sand has fallen from the Blaze Death Hourglasses. Shin destroys all the Blaze Death Hourglasses and asks him what he's trying to do. Blaze Death King Erdemaid says again that Leno is the womb that will give birth to the child of God. Shin doubts that Blaze Death King Erdemaid can trick Nusgalia into appearing. The Blaze Death King Erdemaid says he's going to try his best to kill her, and if she ends up perishing, so be it. He creates more Blaze Death Hourglasses, and the pain for Leno increases. He also says that since she's the womb of the child of God, there should be no reason to risk so much to protect this threat to your master. Shin destroys the Blaze Death Hourglasses and stabs Blaze Death King Erdemaid in his heart. Shin says his lord isn't weak and that he must expose her life to danger to protect himself. Blaze Death King Erdemaid falls and comes back to life potent, powerful, and a juggernaut. As he awakens, it seems like he's now powered by the power of the gods. He confesses that he lent his body to the wounded Nangalia. According to Blaze Death King Erdemaid, he thought that he'd be forced to emerge once his host died, but looks like he's spot on. Blaze Death King Erdemaid says he planned all this. He says whether it was Leno that nearly died, or himself being killed by Shin, the god would emerge either way. He then summons the Nangalia to come out and show them what divine power looks like. The Blaze Death King will take over his power. Lock, stock, and all. Then he tells Shin to bow before him, but Shin tells him that the only person he'll ever bow down for is his lord, and no one else. He knows Shin's wish is to be reincarnated, but no matter how hard he tries, it will all come out negative. And even if acquires a body, love is something he can never possess. A magic sword created to fight can't harbor love, which means that a magic sword is always a magic sword, says Blaze Death King. He says the gods who manipulate order can grant Shin what he has sought eternally, but can never acquire. But he has to raise the child of God who will be born from the womb of the great spirit Leno. Then, the order of the world will destroy the Demon King. Unfortunately, Shin chops off his head and says he does not need love. The head still says a god's word is absolute. Shin stabs his neck and says he will serve his lord for all eternity, along with the emptiness in his heart. The head fades into the air. Leno says to teach Shin what love is because he could have gained love if he hadn't protected her. Shin tells her not to brood over it because there's no love in his source, as said by the god. However, Leno says she's going to give it all to teach Shin what love is. Anoshu and Leno are seen taking a walk through the forest to the flower garden. Then Anoshu says he's got a question for her. He says if she changes the rumors and lore of a spirit who's already been born, can she turn her into a spirit of the same name, but she's not sure. She says that it is the rumors and lore from when she was first born that make up a spirit's spiritual essence. In Leno's case, that would be the mother of all spirits. But if rumors spread that Leno isn't the spirit's mother, then it would mean that I'd cease to exist. Anoshu asks that if there are conflicts between the spiritual essence and the lore, it would just reduce the spirit's lifespan, and she answers yes. As long as the rumors and Iore remain, spirits generally don't get wiped out, but since they don't get reincarnated like demons and humans, they would never become a completely different spirit. Anoshu's hope is draining, but Leno brings it alive when she says that if the rumors that were created later match the spirit, they could have some sway. She explains further using tear flower that a rumor that her tears spawned spirit children was created. And since it doesn't contradict her love as the great spirit mother, it's given her that much love. She asks Anoshu if it's something that has to do with Lena, but he says he's still investigating. Lei and Shin are having their daily sword training when Leno calls Shin to let them water the flowers, but Shin tells her to wait a bit and that he needs to take Lei on first. Leno becomes vexed and says he's always sparring with Lei. Shin says the flowers are only going to dry even if he waters them, and Leno becomes angry. While she calls Shin all sort of names, Lei gives Shin a piece of advice that he could tell her that he'll take care of him right away for her sake to cheer her up. Then, Shin turns to Leno and tells her that, for her sake, he will dispatch Lei right away. Immediately, she becomes happy and hails Shin. Shin turns to Lei and says he's quite taken aback, but Lei thinks Shin is talking about what he asked him to do, so he says the important thing is how he tells her. Shin says he's talking about the rapid strides Lei's made. Lei seems to be using the moves Shin taught him the previous day in their present fight. He simply has been absorbing Shin's sword skills with each match. Lei is like a different swordsman compared to when they first met. Lei says it's about time that he gives Shin back the sword, so they continue the fight. Shin then shows him bladeless sword, Firsty hidden art, moment which Lei thinks he blocked but blood gushes out of his shoulder after. Lei asks if the move works on the hero cannon, but he says no. At the flowering garden, Shin wants to water the flowers with great love, but they seem to be drying up because Leno's still having that bit of anger from earlier, so she tries to correct it. Anoshu asks Misha if anything out of the ordinary happened while he was out. Misha says it's the same as always. The Tethi interrupt them and say they saw a headless demon walking through the forest the other day. Anoshu quickly concludes that it must be the Blaze Death King, whose head got chopped off by Shin. He asks the Tethi where the demon went, and they say he left a Harthurn. Anoshu says they should head over there. Anos and Misha arrive at an era in Delsgate on a rainy day. Then Misha asks Anos what the Blaze Death King is up to, but he doesn't know either. Anos says, according to Blaze Death King, it's all so that he can see him advance even farther. Anos then says, if that's the case, he should stop searching for enemies and serve him. Misha calls it a twisted admiration, and says what the Blaze Death King is seeing is an idol. Through the Demon King, he's gazing at the object of his admiration in his head. He just wants to force his ideals on others. Anos asks if it means that in his eyes, it doesn't even have to be him. Misha asks, as long he's as strong as Anos, and Anos says no person like that. In other words, Anos is just going to have to live up to Blaze Death King's expectations. Anos says during this era in Delsgate, there was someone who knew all about the world. He says he's sure that she could locate the Blaze Death King for him. Misha asks who, and Anos says the goddess of creation Militia, the order of creation who made the world, and the goddess who built the wall with him. Throughout the last 2,000 years, she's been one of Anos's few allies. Anos says while he tends to disrupt the divine order, there's a handful of gods that he gets along with. Above all, the goddess of creation Militia loved the world. While they walk, they hear the voice of a boy being held captive by some soldiers. According to Anos, the boy was a hostage, but he released him, and he thought that he'd gone back to Garadite by now. The soldiers take the boy to a fight stage, and a man whose name is Debidora claims to be avenging his child, who was murdered by the hero Jerga, tortures the boy without the Demon King's permission. Anos couldn't do anything to help him because even if he does, it will revert to the real past once they're back 2,000 years in the future. Debidora sets fire to burn to the boy, and the boy screams, "Demon King!" Anos comes to his rescue and says, not that it will do any good to save you, but if he doesn't at least save him in this dream, it will be a lie. Debidora asks him where he comes from, and Anos snaps to lay the boy to sleep. Debidora asks Anos why he'd want to save a human if he's a fellow demon. Anos says if the boy was the one who killed his son, he'd be fine with him seeking revenge, but the boy, Igareth, never laid a hand on their brethren, let alone murdered them. Anos asks him if the Demon King permitted him to kill the innocent. Anos says killing innocent children out of hatred for Azeshion makes Debidora no different than those humans that he despises so much. Debidora attacks Anos with magic, but Anos doesn't use an anti-magic spell to defend against the attack. After trying to convince Debidora to work on his hatred, he insists that he can't be like the Demon King, and he doesn't care if it means that he falls from grace. He attempts to attack the second time, but Anos uses his eyes to disperse the attack. Debidora could see the ease and ask it if he, the Demon King, was still alive. Anos claims that he's Anoshupoltikol, a traveling entertainer passing through. Debidora bows before him and says the Demon King was fond of traveling entertainers. Then he cries and says to their lord, in all his body, what he commanded them to do. They just couldn't carry it out. They can't forget the hatred they feel. The humans who murdered their comrades are on the other side of that wall, living their lives. Anos says he has a message from the Demon King of tyranny, which is, let us meet again 2,000 years from now. A wonderful world awaits you all there. He saved the boy. They lay the boy to rest for a while, and they notice on the wall that Venuznor has activated. Onoshu says, there's no one in this era able to wield the magic sword of destruction, since he'd already reincarnated himself, and Aos Delvia has yet to be born. He said he didn't know how it was done, but someone from this era predicted that he'd be coming from 2,000 years in the future, but that could be their salvation. He tries to draw the Venuznor from the wall, and he says normally, the moment he tried to draw it, the Order of Time would be activated, and Revellon would end. But if Venuznor has already shown up in the past, it's a different story. He said if he can take up Venuznor in his hands, then he can change the past. His body transforms to the present Anos, and the boy wakes up and hails his name, Demon King. The boy says as the third unit of the subjugation battalion was retreating to Azeshion, it came under attack by monsters, and was wiped out so that he could escape, so he got to Delsgade on his own. They're settled now, and Anos asks Igareth if the monsters are demons. He says, no, he's never seen that kind before. Then he shows what they look like. Like dragons, they're a rare species that rarely appear. Anos tells Igareth that he's returned from 2,000 years in the future. He tells him that he hasn't been truly saved yet. He says to save him, he'll have to kill Igareth once, then resurrect him again to this point in time. When he's been reborn, thanks to the magic sword of destruction, he'll have become an entity that even the gods of time can't detect. Igareth asks bravely if there's something he can do, because he was taught that a hero must repay the one he owes his life. Anos wants Igareth to spread a rumor about when he's reborn. A rumor about the Demon King of Tyranny, Aos Delvia, will endure 2,000 years from now. Anos imprints it on Igareth's memory so he won't forget. Igareth promises to live up to the Demon King's expectations. Igareth and Venuznor fade away. Looks like it's run out of Delsgade's magic. Then, they see a written text on the wall which says, to my Demon King, let us meet again 2,000 years from now. The three of us, next time. Surely, no matter what, I shall fall in love once again. Anos says no one ever fell in love in the mythical age, and even if one had such feelings, it wasn't peaceful enough to express them. Anos says, whoever wrote this must have been in such a situation. The written text is under a spell, so they may have to wait until night. Misha asks Anos if Shin will ever find love, and Anos says if it's something that he wants with all his heart, it should be possible. Misha asks if Shin would be alright, because Shin's source is a magic sword. Anos says yes, Shin will be alright. He added that a world where one can never gain his heart's desires should be wiped off the face of the earth by the goddess of creation Militia. Aos says he made Militia a certain promise that if the gods were causing hopeless tragedies and injustices, then he'd destroy them. He says he wanted to make sure Militia knew that this world that she'd created wouldn't succumb to something like injustice. Misha asks Aos if the world will become a peaceful place, and he says yes, more than before, but seems like they're not quite there yet. There's another written text which says to the Demon King, Aos, the Blaze Death King is in the cemetery, which honors the war dead. Also, I hope that the future of the kind-hearted Demon King, who fought to the point that he was known as a tyrant, will be filled with peace. I will always be nearby, watching over you, until I draw my last breath forever. Misha doesn't understand, so she says Aos couldn't have written the words unless he knew he was coming there. Aos says it must be the Militia. She has her eyes on the world. Misha asks if on the Venusnor too, and he says it could be, although she's not capable of wielding it. Misha asks if the goddess of creation is here, and Aos says it would have been nice to see an old friend, but the souvenir she's left him is more than enough. Aos says he'd like to make a stop somewhere, the cemetery. Aos tells Misha that all the people in the cemetery, he couldn't protect them. They were drawn to his dream of peace and fought for me until they were wiped out. The more loyal they were, the sooner they perished. Then he had to become stronger so that he could live up to their hope, even if that tyrant meant being called a tyrant or having to do cruel things. And then he reigned over the land as the Demon King, but no matter how much power he gains, he'll never regain the lives of those he's lost. Then he tells all the dead people in the cemetery that he has good news for them. He says they've achieved peace, and they should be proud, and they've won. He says he'd have liked to have gazed upon that tranquil town with them all from here. Misha creates a peaceful flower ground for the cemetery and tells Aos to smile for them because their souls are still there. Aos thanks Misha for all she's done to thy point in time. He vows to see that all effort doesn't go in vain. In a house close to the cemetery, Aos and Misha hear a man telling Zeke that Nigeria is still a hearthurn, although he's on the brink of death. Also, that divine power is absolute, so the Blaze Death King can simply assume the Heavenly Father God's identity. He says Aos Delvia should be able to complete the spell to usurp the divine power, using hero Canaan's plan. He says Nosgalia is attempting to produce an entity that's both the child of God and a great spirit, meaning that he's going to borrow the fake Demon King's power to possess Nangalia instead. He says the hero is about to come face to face with the Great Spirit Mother and the Demon King's right-hand man. From what Misha and Aos heard, it seems like Canon has started spreading rumors about Aos Delvia, considering it's a half-spirit, half-demon life form. Misha asks him about Leno, and he says Misha shouldn't avert her gaze, as it's probably what they've come all this way to see through. At the Great Spirit Forest of Hearthurn, Canon meets with Shin to discuss his idea on how they can save the Demon King, Aos. According to Canon, the humans are preparing to kill Aos when he reincarnates 2,000 years from now, and knowing him, he'll handle them with contemptuous ease. Canon says he wants the world that he sees to be a peaceful one when he reincarnates. To make sure that happens, he'll play the role of the Demon King with Shin as his right-hand man. Shin says no matter the condition, he'd never kneel before a fake Demon King. Canon says with Shin by his side, everyone will believe Aos Delvia to be the true Demon King. Shin almost chops off his neck, and he says to Canon that it doesn't matter who schemes against his lord, he will overcome them all, and he will lose nothing. Canon says they shouldn't leave him just because he transcended them all. He says Shin doesn't want to do this because he's not strong enough to stop the hatred. Canon says he'll make amends for it all 2,000 years from now, with his death at the hands of the humans. Surely that should stop this chain of enmity. He says he promised the Demon King they'd be friends next time they are reborn, and he wants to be worthy of calling himself his friend the next time he stands before him. Shin insists that he won't do it. Shin says he'll reincarnate himself, and he will follow his lord 2,000 years into the future. Leno says it means that Shin can't help Canon, but he won't thwart him either. Leno turns to Canon and says he has changed a little. She says he used to always have an anguished look on his face, but now it looks like he's gotten over it. Canon says, if that is true, then it must be thanks to Aos. Canon says he came here expecting to be slashed, but he's never seen him so devoid of murderous intent. Leno says it could be that the love she's teaching him is paying off. Canon smiles and says he didn't think that the Great Spirit Mother would ever fall in love. Seems like Canon geared her up. She quickly runs to meet Shin to tell him that she's fallen in love with him and to express her feelings to him. She says she smiles when he watered the flowers, and he does make her feel like a new person. Shin tells her that there's no love in him, but she's filled the emptiness inside him just a bit. He says he has spent time with her like he was given a scabbard, and he appreciates it. He says Hero Canon will soon start spreading rumors about the fake Demon King, and before that happens, he will be heading to Dilhade. He tells Leno to forgive him, but his lord awaits him 2,000 years in the future. As a token of his gratitude and to keep it fair, Shin says he shall give Leno whatever she wishes to take to the place of those days. Then, she asks if he's going to marry him, and Shin agrees. Leno says she'll be waiting for 2,000 years until he returns. Shin kneels before her and asks her the style of wedding she prefers, and she says the Aharthurn style. They have their wedding in the Aharthurn style, in which other spirits, Anoshu, and his crew attended. Shin wished his lord could have been there, but he believes that he may be watching from 2,000 years in the future. Enyunyen blesses their marriage, and Shin, the Spirit King, husband of the Great Spirit Mother, has now been created. Enyunyen asks them to kiss each other to seal the promises they've made to each other. They kiss, and the attendees applaud them. Later at night, Shin confesses that he's not averse to love, but he is grateful to Leno for allowing him to dream like this. Leno says it's not as if he knows nothing about love. She says there's a tiny, tiny bud inside his heart, and one day, it will boom. He says he only wished that he would have continued to dream like this forever. The Tithi visits them to remind them that it's their wedding night, and it's not over yet. Instead of sleeping, Shin decides to tell Leno how he met Aos. During a great war, Shin was testing his skills against some eminent demons. Every one of them felt like a weakling to him. Maybe he may have wielded such power because he had no love in his heart. Each victory felt empty to him, and he constantly felt parched. Then one day, he found himself facing off against the Demon King. He unleashed 100 swords, but he never got close to slashing Demon King. For the first time, he found himself interested in his enemy. Shin asks the Demon King what makes him strong, and the Demon King says he has to be strong to save everyone. But for him, no reason at all. The Demon King tells him to come serve him, and he will give him an opportunity worthy of being slashed by his sword. He realized for the time that he had been seeking a master worthy of owning him, the evil god-killing sword. He says his lord gave him a reason to fight and welcomed him into the clan as a demon, and he says to repay him for that kindness, he became the Demon King's right-hand man. Leno can tell reasons why he has always wanted to go after the Demon King and reincarnate himself. Leno holds his hand and tells him that she doesn't want to just sleep tonight, and he says he may end up hurting her if it's love that she seeks. Shin is seen running toward Leno when he hears that she suddenly collapsed, and now, she's awake. She tells Shin that Enyunyen is looking after her now. Then, Enyunyen speaks out. He says Leno seems to be with a child. Enyunyen says he can sense a demon's magic power from her. He says it's her child with the Spirit King. Leno says she thought spirits and demons could never have children together. Enyunyen says he used to believe that too, but facts are facts. Enyunyen says the rumors and lore that make up the child's source are still tiny and weak, so her source is compensating for what the child lacks, and that must be why she collapsed. Enyunyen tells her that she must find and spread these rumors and lore within 10 months and 10 days, or else the child may expire soon after birth. Leno feels relieved. She thanks Shin because the child is the love he gave her. She says she wants Shin to name the child. Then, Shin says if it's a boy, Gord, if it's a girl, Misa. Leno believes in him as her husband, and as the Demon King's right-hand man. Also, he'd never stand by and let the fake Demon King's rumors spread, and they both hug each other. While they hug, a small animal brings a green book, and a page from the book is torn and given to them. The page is about the love fairy, Fran. Leno gives it to Shin, and she says it's a spirit spell so they can be reunited in 2,000 years. She tells him not to lose in whatever he does, and he promises not to lose it. She says she'd be waiting for the child, and Shin says he will return without fail. Enyunyen tells Leno that her lore states that she's ever and always solely the mother of all spirits, but her child is a half-demon. He tells her that if she gives birth to it, it will contradict her rumors and lore, and she'll die as a result. Leno says she's going to have the child no matter what. She remembers what Grandma said, which is to protect whomever it is that she wishes to protect. Enyunyen says that 2,000 years from now, when Shin hears of her demise, it may cause the Spirit King much sorrow. She says they can just let Shin cry, and if he does, then it'll hit him that he did love her as a way of letting him love her too. She says if she's going to make that big lunk look her way, then the least she can do is risk her life. While she talks, the door to the flower garden suddenly closes. Nuskalia appears to tell her that Shin seems to think that he slashed his words, but a god's words are absolute. Tells her that it's not that causes miracles to happen. He says the love Shin yearned for, the love that the great spirit mother Leno came to know, not to mention the miraculous seed that she's carrying, all exists, thanks to the heavenly God Father's order. He tells her that the child is not Shin's, but his body was just used as a medium. Then he shows her the page that was added. It's Aos Delvia spirit. The child's source is made up of the fake Demon King's rumors and lore. He says the child of God, who will destroy the Demon King Aos, is about to be born. Then he forcefully births the child from Leno. Leno calls on the spring of time. As I say, that can save the child, and take her with it because the Demon King will save her 2,000 years from now. Aos Delvia says the child is neither the love she speaks of, nor Shin's child. Shin, who was informed about the situation by the teeth he runs to his peak, arrives there and chops Aos Delvia's mouth from behind, but he says it's no use killing him. He runs to Leno to save her. Leno thanks him for protecting her, and she's sorry for lying to Shin. She says it wasn't love, it wasn't a miracle at all. She wasn't his child. She's sorry that she couldn't teach Shin love. She says the child will be going 2,000 years into the future, and if she ever poses a threat to the peace of the world, Shin should kill the child himself. Shin says he will protect the child, no matter what, and he says he will create a world in which she can survive, even 2,000 years from now. She says the child's rumor and lore are Aos Delvia's, so she can't let him do that. Shin says he won't let the child die. Even if she betrays his lord, he will spread the fictional Demon King's rumors and lore, and protect the child. He stands up and signs the child's name, Misa, in her basket. Leno feels sorry for not being able to protect Shin's pride, and she confesses that he was the one thing she prized more than anything. Shin feels sorry for causing her grief. She says that they were only married for 3 days, but she was happier than anyone else in the world. Eventually, she dies. 2,000 years later, in the present day, Aos and his crew arrive back at the underground dungeon, but most of his crew find themselves crying when they get to see the tragedy that happened 2,000 years ago. Aos stands on his feet and says the tragedy is all over and they're gonna get it all back. So they get on their toes out of the underground when they hear a voice that says, "Traitor, Aos Voldigode. I will now start executing one white uniformed student at a time. If you wish to save them, come to the arena alone." Aos turns to his crew and says, "It seems like the magic sword of destruction will have to wait." Lei says, if he was confident about taking him on, he wouldn't need hostages. Eleanor says he's most definitely doing this to buy time. Misha and Sasha volunteer to go, so Aos creates magical tools that will thwart perception, and they'll be able to infiltrate the execution site. Misha chants Iris, and her uniform changes to red. Aos tells them to ensure they rescue the other students. Lena will come with Aos because the Spirit King awaits them. Misha and Sasha get to the arena, where they see the white uniformed students gathered right in front of Melheis. They think it's just Melheis and the teacher that is in the arena, until they look up to see the other 7 elder demon emperors who are waiting for them to make moves. Melheis calls on Nihid to pick one of the white uniformed female students. Then a guy named Aramis Eltimo, a 3rd year, tells them to rather pick and execute him instead of the female student. Aramis tells Melheis that he's a hero, and he's far more his enemy than a hybrid demon. Melheis says he'd be happy to do as the Aramis wishes, and then he orders Nihid to take him to the scaffold. He speaks to him in a low voice. Manu is walking through a path when Aos, Lena, and Lei appear to her to ask her if she has found out where they are, and she says yes, and says Aos Delvia is in the ceremony room. The Spirit King is in the throne room, but she couldn't Nangalia. Aos asks her if she knows where the students are being held captive, and she says they are scattered across multiple sites. Aos tells her to show Eleanor and Zishia the way. Lei asks Aos why the Spirit King and Avos are in separate locations, and Aos says they must want to split them up. Aos says as she has the Demon King's lore, the Spirit God sword must not agree with her, meaning that the Avos in the ceremony room might be Aos Delvia in disguise. Lei says they don't have much time, so splitting up might be their best bet. While they talk, Lady Luch and her guards find them, and they attempt to kill them. Lei slashes Lady Luch with Lord Shin's magic sword, but she recognizes him as Hero Kanan and the sword as Shin's. Just as Aos thought, the demons from 2,000 years ago are highly susceptible to brainwashing. Aos binds all the enemies with Demera. Aos tells Lei to take the ceremony room, while he takes the throne room. Aos tells Lena to wait outside till the time comes. Aos appears in the ceremony room. Aos Delvia shows her face, and she says she's impressed that Aos can recognize her. Aos tells her she will always end up showing herself to him no matter where he goes. Lei appears and says, in other words, Aos Delvia should have stayed hidden until she appeared. Aos Delvia says she supposes the one who goes to the ceremony room is fake. Lei says he divides 3 of his sources, so she could say they're somewhat real. She laughs and says she already knows everything, so it doesn't matter what he does. She drops a big red balloon and tells them to take a look at it. In the balloon is Igareth Ijeska being held captive. Aos Delvia says she's going to have him executed. Aos asks her if she's afraid of taking him in. Aos tells her that if she's buying time so that she can seize the magic sword of destruction, she'd say. She says Aos is certainly adept at provocation, so she calls on Nihid to carry out the execution. The crew at the arena are thinking they'll have to neutralize them all at once, or the hostages won't be safe. Sasha says the demonic eyes of destruction could do it, but it will take too much time. Misha says she'll go on a no-holds-barred rampage to divert them. So in the meantime, I'll time it to you. Nihid asks Igorets if he has any last words, which is the least they can do for him. Igoret says Aos Delvia is a fake, and he knows the true Demon King, and he is both kind and strong. He would never discriminate. He asks why they all forget that. Nihid asks if those are his last words, and he replies that he has fulfilled his mission. He says he believes that the true Demon King will bring about genuine peace. Nihid creates a huge fireball, like he's going to burn down Igoret, but suddenly he says he agrees and directs the fire toward Melhis. Melhis calls Nihid and says he hopes he hasn't forgotten that revolting against the Demon King means death. Nihid says his name is Davidra, and says for 2,000 years, his king has always been none other than Lord Anos Voldagoad. Melhis says all the demons from 2,000 years ago should have pledged their loyalty to Aos Delvia, and asks why they'd betray such a beloved figure. Davidra says all the brainwashing seems to have sprung leaks everywhere. He also asks if Melhis has even switched their sense of obligation to Lord Anos over to Avos. Melhis says just because Davidra has gained a single-day ally doesn't make it any less futile. Melhis gets angry and calls Gaios to execute those white uniforms. Gaios steps up to attack them with his weapon, when one of the students attacks him more than he could ever imagine the Geograze spell. The student says that 2,000 years ago, he wouldn't have given her the time of day, and she addresses herself as Neon Armelka. Other female students at the arena attack the other 7 Elder Demon Emperors with Geograze. Davidra faces Melhis. Melhis says Davidra is only struggling in vain even if he's a demon from 2,000 years. Melhis' attack overpowers Davidra, but Igoreth thwarts the attack. Igoreth asks Davidra if has the magic sword, and he throws it to him. Davidra is surprised because he never thought Igoreth would save him. Igoreth says he saved him too. They both fight Melhis until Misha and Sasha use the Ice Cat to turn the 7 Elder Demon Emperors into Ice Cats. Anos tells Avos that it seems like this is the extent of her control, but she says she'd advise Anos not to get carried away after winning just 1 round. Then, she brings 5 red balloons with girls from different buildings, and she says they have just 5 minutes before they draw their last breaths. She's taken Eleanor, Zacia, and Menu. She says Anos won't have enough time to save time all in different places. Anos asks if she has already forgotten what she saw just now. He might have even more reincarnated subordinates. Avos tells Anos not to bluff here, and she says his reincarnated subordinates were only able to coordinate their actions thanks to a series of coincidences. But she says it won't happen. Then, she tells Anos to rescue them. She says when Anos returns, she'll be happy to take him on. Anos says she's right. Under these circumstances, it would be difficult to coordinate, but there is one good way to do so. He moves one of the balloons towards her, and Davidra shows up to say, the fraudulent Demon King, if she knows Anoshu Poltakwal. While she thinks about what could have gone wrong, the other balloons sound, and all she can see are people rescuing their people. Anos tells her that that's their code word. Only their allies know. And that's how they were able to signal to each other without being noticed. Anos says there were far too many of the reincarnated, who conveniently regained their memories and powers at this time. Anos orders those under his rule to join Eleanor, because she'd be able to protect those without stamina from the Demera spell. The balloons burst and Lei quickly runs through to slash Avos, but she dodges it. Avos could tell that Anos changed the past. Anos says now that she knows. She might be serious about it, or else she will meet her demise without it ever becoming a battle. Anos makes her body pulsate. She claims that she still knows everything that's going to happen. She turns to Hero Canon and tells him to slash her with the Spirit God Sword. Anos tells Lei to finish it off once and for all, along with her sorrowful destiny. Lei tries to attack her, but she uses Genel to cover up. Shin welcomes his lord Anos, then tells him that he has betrayed him, and he draws out the Sword of Severance, Del Toros. Anos says he wouldn't draw that sword unless he is dead serious. Anos asks him his reason for fighting. Shin says Anos knows everything, but Anos says what he doesn't understand is why he points a blade at him. Shin says he's going to destroy Aos Delvia, but he's going to save Misa, no matter what. Anos says if he had been there that day, he would have ordered Shim to do the same thing. Anos says he hasn't changed at all in the last 2,000 years. He's his right-hand man. Shin says he'd like to receive Anos's mercy in his last moments. He says they should pick up where they left off that night, both putting our lives on the line. He wishes to challenge Anos. Anos asks if he wants to do it, and Shin says he's the Demon King's right-hand man, now and forever. Shin says he cannot allow himself to be killed by anyone but Anos. Shin says he protected Misa from the shadows 2,000 years ago, and he pointed his sword at Aos, so that the lore about the demon king of tyranny would never fade away. And now, her true self has awakened, and as long as Aos is here, Misa will surely be saved. Shin has been on a journey and been to various places, and then he heard how they took his child. He bows before Aos and says this is his final request. He tells Aos to bring an end to these empty days by his own hands. Aos collects the sword and says, Shin, his loyal subordinate. He thanks him for living through hell for 2,000 years, and he's proud of him. Aos hits the sword against the ground and asks Shin if he remembers their promises. Aos puts forward his right arm and says Shin should have his right hand with him. Aos says if this is the end, then take back your dignity and rest in peace. Aos says he'll send him to where she is. Shin is deeply grateful to Aos for his mercy. Shin picks up the sword and chants, third hidden art, end. He slashes Aos' hand but can't slice it off. Aos touches the sword and breaks it into pieces. He bows again and says, some things are just beyond him, and Aos says no, that he couldn't sever it because he tried to be a demon rather than a sword. Aos says that 2,000 years ago, Shin went through hell. Aos tells Shin to live, to not rob Misa of a father. Lei never stopped his hit paces against Aos Delvia. She attacks back with the Geo Graze. Lei is on guard to block her attempt too. Aos asks Lei if he thinks he can destroy it, and Lei says he's to blame for creating Aos. She uses magic to hold Lei hanging in the air and tells him not to overdo it. Besides, his heart wants no part of it. Lei admits he was wrong for creating a fake demon king, taking his place, and dying. He says there's no way that such a plan could have worked, and the price of his twisted justice is Aos Delvia. He says a sad being like Aos Delvia shouldn't have been born. Aos says Misa wouldn't have been born if not for her. Aos notices Lei has feelings for her. She tries to manipulate Kanon, telling him to become her possession since she's both Misa and Aos Delvia. Then, Lei tells her that she's not the Misa that he knows. Well, she says she has feelings for Lei, and he says she may have affection for him, but those aren't Aos' feelings. Lei could see the necklace in her illuminating, so it makes it easier for Lei to tell that Misa is still inside Aos. Aos laughs and says she's sorry to tell him that Misa is only temporary. She added that at that instance, there's no longer any trace of the personality called Misa in her, so she tells Lei to resign to the fact. Lei opens his eyes, and both his eyes and the necklace on Aos illuminate together to prove to her Misa is inside her, battling with him. She stops the illumination and attacks Kanon hard this time to destroy his sources, and she immediately chants Degzegd on him. Lei tells her that he's going to sever her fate and take it back. She calls Misa's name to help her out, and he chants Theo Toriaros to slash Aos with his divine sword, but Aos creates a barrier to block it. Nausgalia comes in and calms the divine sword. Then, Lei realizes that he has no control over the divine sword anymore. Before he'd know, Aos chants Zolya dipped to hang him with fire chains against the roof. Aos says Evan's mama is a holy sword that's been blessed by the gods, meaning that one word from the heavenly godfather can render it powerless. Lei says Nausgalia is late to the party. Nausgalia says it's all proceeding according to the divine word. He says he has destroyed every last one of the sources Kanon shared with the fake. Nausgalia says having completed the mission of spreading rumors about the fake demon king, Kanon will be slain by his lover and vanish. He says that's the narrative written by the gods. Aos turns to Lei and says all Lei had to do was submit and become hers like a good boy. She attempts to finish it by burning Lei alive, but Aos and Shin kill the fire. Aos calls Nausgalia's narrative a boring one. Nausgalia says the fun is just getting started, and he's going to take everything from Aos. Immediately, Aos hits Nausgalia's jaw with his fist, and says, lower your head, servant. Aos tells Nausgalia to prostrate himself on the ground if he wishes to speak. Aos interrupts him by asking where he thinks he's going. She shows her demonic eyes and tells Aos to play with her. Aos tells her to have Lei with her for a while. She looks up, but Lei is not where she put him, and Lei attempts an attack on her from nowhere, but she blocks it. Aos tells Nausgalia that he should know what it means to feel fear, and Nangalia laughs because he can't sense a reason why a god should fear. He says Aos spewed such senseless and worthless words. Then he says gods are ordered. They are nobody. They have neither rage nor sorrow. They're invincible. Hence, they have no fear and only continue to exist as the world's laws. Aos tells Nausgalia that he doesn't even have the brains to comprehend his words. He reminds that he said he wouldn't allow Nausgalia to do that. Nangalia laughs and calls Aos a fool to dare spit at heathen. Then, he calls on the sight of a god, and he says most of the spells engraved on Delsgate have been overwritten by Aos Delvia. He finally says it's impossible to destroy a god with the power of the god of destruction. He says even if Aos were to once again seize the power of the god of destruction, annihilating the Heavenly Father, God's order would send the world down the path of destruction, so he says everything must follow his order. Aos, on the other hand, tells him not to let him repeat himself. Nangalia finds it ridiculous to see the one known as the Demon King of Tyranny, struggling to find a way to peer into his abyss and eliminate him. Aos tells him that it's not just that he has no chance against him, but neither can he hold his own against his right-hand man. Shin draws out his sword and commends his generous lord for granting him the chance to avenge his late wife with his own hands, and Nusgalia tells him to go ahead and destroy him to his heart's content. Nangalia tells them both that they will now know divine destruction, and he alters his usual speech. A god's words are absolute. He throws fire, but Shin thwarts it. Shin slashes his sword through his heart, and the blood that splashes on the ground generates flames. Nusgalia uses his demonic eyes to create divine flames and directs them to Shin, and he says when the flames have swallowed Shin's entire body, his source will be destroyed. Shin gets out of the divine flames and attempts to kill him. Nangalia creates a flame, and he draws out his flame sword. Nusgalia slashes Shin's armor, and the spirit spell given to him, Leno, falls on the floor. Shin attempts to pick it up, and Nangalia stabs his hand against the spell to the ground with his sword. Nusgalia wonders why Shin yearns so much for love when he knows his love was created by a divine miracle. He tells Shin that the moment Delvia was born, his job was long over. He creates the divine flames on him again. Lena rescues Shin from the flames. Seems like her eyes are opened and can tell that her husband is Shin, and she transforms into Leno. She realizes that their love was genuine and never corrupted by a divine miracle. Shin calls her name, Leno, and she feels she made Shin wait for 2,000 years. They agree to fight till the end until they get Misa back. Nusgalia uses the divine sword skill at will to fight Shin. Leno seeks help from her spirit crew, and they come through for her. Nusgalia sets a vast flame to burn the spirits, but Leno's grandma shows up from the ground and quenches the fire with water. Leno asks her grandma how she made it back, and she tells her that she borrowed Fran's body too, just as Leno did. Grandma sheds flowers to everyone to grant them wisdom to fight their enemies. Leno helps Shin to accumulate more energy in his swords to attack Nostalgia, but he shows his perfect dodging skills. Nangalia creates a more divine sword to attack Shin, but Shin finds his way through the sword and finally slashes through Nusgalia's heart. Nusgalia reminds him that he can't flee from his words, and then Shin calls Godslasher, third hidden art, to destroy Nusgalia's source. Shin defines hell as the hell of the blade, dividing Nusgalia's source. And this is the punishment unleashed by the Godslasher on a god. Shin draws out his sword and tells Nusgalia that he'll never fail to slash his worthless words, no matter how many he tries. Then, he slashes him. Lei tries throwing some hits with his holy sword, but Aos tells him that the holy sword has lost its power, so it's no longer her weakness. She attacks him and destroys another source of his, and now, Lei is left with just one source. Aos tells him that she can't be slashed by a power-sapped holy sword, so she tells him to give himself up. Lei says he did make a promise to come to Misa's aid, even if she's shouldering a heavy fate. Aos tells him if he destroys her, he'll never be able to attain his goal. Aos says the Misa inside her is trembling with fear. Lei tells her that she's only doing this to buy time, and even if she kills him, Aos will destroy her. Then, he dares her to finish him up if she thinks he's wrong, and Aos agrees to his wish to destroy Lei's last source. Lei tries to use the skill he learned from Misa's father, Spirit God's Sword, first hidden art, Heaven's Fang sword breaks, to split Aos and Misa. Now, Lei has Misa, and Aos Delvia is left with a half source that can't survive for long. Aos laughs and tells him the same fate goes for Misa, as she's a half source too. Misa says she has lived all this time, dreaming of a world in which hybrids and royals can coexist, and she won't let a fake demon king get away with destroying that dream. Aos tells her her life is temporary, because she was born into the world to live according to the demon king of tyrannies, rumors, and lore. Misa claims that it's not temporary, because she has friends with whom she's sworn to realize their ideas, the true demon king, who would never cave into injustice, her father who's been waiting to see her, and Lei whom she loves. However, Aos directs fireballs to them, and Lei runs the fire to slash her in two. Unbelievable. Aos is awakened, and this time she's acquired Venuznor. Lei strikes from behind, but she notices it, defends it, and slashes Lei. Aos says to her, "Whoever strikes first isn't the fastest." She turns to Misa and tells him to watch as the sight of her lover vanishes. Aos tries to attack Misa, but Anos shows up to save her from the attack. Anos tells Aos that she's finally decided to keep, but then she's too late. On getting to hear what Anos has said, Aos laughs and tells him that the biggest and most powerful magic sword that makes him the demon king of tyranny is in her hands. So Anos has lost his name, his subordinates, his castles, and even the symbol of his power. She asks him if he thinks he can defeat her now that he has been reduced to just Anos Voldegoad. Aos could see that acquiring a ragged stick has given her confidence a boost. Then, she dares him to use his power, not words, to show it. To begin with, they both show their demonic eyes. Aos is blue while Aos is red. They pull up different spells to attack each other, but they're finding their way to defend attacks from each path. She attempts to strike with Venuznor, but Aos has to defend with his hand as his demonic eyes can't block it. With Venuznor, Avon turns the spot where it is into soft ground, and Aos sinks into the ground completely. All of a sudden, Aos booms out of the ground and grabs her source. Avos wonders how it happens, despite having the Venuznor in her hand. Aos asks her why she thinks she could beat him with the magic sword of destruction, and she says when she's the demon king of tyranny. Aos tells her that she's nothing but rumors and traditions, and he destroys her source and calls her a fake. She screams in pain and she falls off the ground. She looks up and says this is not over yet. She claims to be the biological child of the great spirit mother Leno, as well as the demon king of tyranny, Aos Delvia, and also the child of God that will destroy Aos. She releases a red crystal into the air and the crystal bursts. Aos Delvia emerges from the crystal, faces Aos, and says the child of God has followed the prescribed plan and acquired the magic sword of destruction. It is time to awaken. Avos stands up and tells Aos that she still has everything in her grasp. Then she stabs herself with the magic sword of destruction, and everywhere in the city begins to shake. The Aos Delvia says in the past, the demon king of tyranny caused the goddess of destruction, Aberinu, to fall to the earth and remade her as the demon palace Delsgade. Moreover, her divine powers and order of destruction were concentrated into a miracle and renamed the magic sword of destruction, Venuznor. But the order will eventually recover its original reason. The gods ask Aos what he thinks will happen when that time comes. The Aos Delvia says the repercussions of the destruction that never happened will be upon them. For as long as they've been repressed over the years, their power will expand to unthinkable levels. Everywhere begins to stumble. Aos Delvia says, show me order, child of God, Aos Delvia. Use your massive magic power to awaken the goddess of destruction. As the law decrees, annihilate the two demon kings of tyranny, along with every living being in existence. The magic sword of destruction is removed from Aos Delvia, and she falls to the ground. Nangalia tells them to look to the heavens to see the miracle of the goddess of destruction, who brought on all death and destruction during the mythical age. The son of ruin, Sir Guldenave, will now be resurrected. Aos Delvia says gods are order. They have neither a will nor a soul. Tragedies are always caused by foolish living beings. This is retribution. Aos says just because it's an order of destruction doesn't mean he will all himself with the gods. Assuming the role of a bystander and laying the blame for all the tragedies of the past 2,000 years, then this work doesn't need a god of such. Aos Delvia says the goddess of destruction is the order that destroys all things, so it can also destroy a single demon. Aos says he won't adhere to such a thing. Nangalia tells him that no matter how Aos may deviate, he can protect all the others. Then, Aos says order fears him, and Aos Delvia says gods fear nothing. Aos tells him to step back now, go on, and formulate some other new plan, and Aos Delvia agrees. Then he realizes and asks Aos what he did to him. Aos tells him that it's fear. Aos Delvia says if he kills the heavenly godfather, it will only set the world on the path to utter destruction. Aos tells him that if he does not have a soul, then he wouldn't fear being destroyed. Aos asks him if he's about to say he wishes to live, but Aos Delvia says he'd never do that, and claims that he is in order. Aos tells him that if he can laugh under these circumstances, then he is ordered. Aos says he'd deal with nostalgia accordingly, but he won't destroy him. But if he fears him, and cannot bring himself to laugh, then it will mean that he has a soul, and he won't discard him. Aos is going to count 3 seconds for Nangalia to show him the order in that time. Nangalia laughs, which means he wishes to live. Nostalgia feels like he's being manipulated by Aos, so he attempts to attack Aos, but Aos grabs his source. Aos calls Erdemaid for it's time for a contract. Aos says if he declares that he won't defy him, he'll give him whatever he wishes. Erdemaid laughs and says he's been expecting to hear those very words from him. They seal the contract with Zect. Aos tells Aos Delvia that he transfers all his power to the Blaze Death King. Aos Delvia still claims that divine power is absolute, and he can't give it to some diminutive demon. Seems like Aos Delvia doesn't know Erdemaid's plan in formulating magic spells to usurp divine powers with his source for 2,000 years. Aos suggests that he turns Aos Delvia into an insect eternally, no matter how many times he reincarnates himself. Moreover, Aos turns him into an insect. Aos meets Erdemaid's wish. Erdemaid finds Aos' lifestyle so impressive that he smashes Nangalia, which was just turned into an insect. Everything is over now. Misa is happy to finally meet her mother, Great Spirit Mother Leno, but unfortunately, she can't stay with her forever, so she fades into the air. Leno meets Shin to thank him. and Shin finally says to her that he loves her. Misa cries out and calls on Fran to let her see her mother one more time, but Aos tells her Fran doesn't have the power to do that. All she can do is bring an end to this tragedy. Misa thought she was the cause of everything because she was born and it violated her mother's rumors and traditions. Aos tells Misa that Leno hasn't disappeared, but he first needs to save her because now that she's been separated from Aos Delvia, her source is starting to disintegrate. Aos turns to Lei and tells him to use the spirit god's sword to kill Misa, just as the rumors and traditions say. Misa will be turned into another spirit who only shares her name, and she'll regain her original form. Aos says only spirits are produced naturally, or else generated by chaos. Great Spirit who was revived here, and then expired. The Great Spirit's mother died because by giving birth to a demon, she violated her rumors and traditions. But according to the next part of the tradition now being spread anew, Aos Delvia has become a spirit, meaning there's no longer any reason for Leno to have died. Finally, she comes back to Shin and Misa. At the ceremony venue in Midhaze, Misa is about to appear before the people as the fake demon king, and she's filled with anxiety. Shin hasn't spoken much to Misa because he doesn't know what to say to her. Shin needs to talk to her. Shin meets and confesses to Misa that he has been watching her all the time, and he says words that melt her heart. Aos Voldigod, the demon king of tyranny, announces Misa as the born from the demon king of tyranny's rumors and traditions, a great spirit as well as the child of God, Aos Delvia, reincarnated after being felled by the hero Canaan's holy sword and sheathed her blade. He declares that there's no longer any need for blades of hatred and issues a decree that all who live in Dilhade are equal. Also, people who are ever beset by a tragedy and cannot overcome it should come to him. He added the country will not tolerate hardship, malice, and tragedy. He promises that if any of these are violated, he, the demon king of tyranny, will rush his life to defeat and destroy it. The fan unions pour all their emotions into a song, Demonic Hymn No. 5 piece, dedicated to Aos Voldigod.